What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 12 Pi Chapter 246 The golden sun broke through the shackles of the sea and shot into the sky. Then after the refraction of the clouds, it sprinkles to the whole world. After a night of silence, the moment the sun came out, the whole street instantly regained its vitality. The sound of selling, making noise, shouting loudly, instantly filled the whole city. And on that street, last night's purgatory on earth was also like an illusion, with not a single trace left. If it weren't for the bloody smell of the dead still lingering in the air, no one would have believed it. There must have been corpses everywhere here last night. However, this is a port city, and the hotel is not far from the port, so the fishy smell is not too prominent, so it did not arouse the suspicion of people who passed by here. Only, what happened to the wild dog that usually likes to come here to look for food? On this street today, I can't see any of them. The sun was rising in the east, almost to the top of the head, so Sorata got out of bed with a yawn. He couldn't sleep last night, so he ran to the top of the fountain in the center of the island, admiring the moon, blowing the wind all night, and drinking wine all night. It wasn't until dawn broke in the east that he returned to the hotel to lie down and rest. Wash and dress neatly to go out. Looking at the eyes of everyone in the living room, Sorata paused, then stretched out his hands and circled his head, laughing. Everyone is watching what I am doing. We are going to stay here for 7 days, and I am not allowed to sleep in. Let me see what's for breakfast. As he said that, he walked to the table and stretched his head to look at the table. Why is it so rich? Rich, of course rich. Ahua pushed the frame of the mirror and glanced at Sorata, and said in a strange way, after all, it's lunch. Lunch? Sorata paused again with her outstretched head, then retracted her head like a normal person, slapped Ahua on the shoulder, then sat beside him, picked up the tableware in front of her, looked around in confusion and said, "What are you still watching me do? Eat." Oh. Everyone looked at Awa, who was grinning and gasping, and instantly came back to his senses. Eat, eat, eat. Eat all of them, haha. Are you okay last night? At this moment, Kuina, who was sitting next to Sorata, put her hands on the table, turned her head to look at Sorata, and asked gently. The others didn't know that they had enemies here last night, but with Kuina's awareness of danger, she knew at the moment Spandam showed up around the inn with people. But Sorata's breath was sensed from behind, so she didn't get up, but fell asleep peacefully. Advertisement, it's okay, it's just some young people. Sorata waved his hand, picked up a chicken leg and put it into the bowl in front of Kuina, and gave her a gentle smile. Let's eat. After eating, let's take a good tour of this beautiful city. Okay. Nodding, Kuina looked away and began to eat. There are some things that he knows as long as he knows, whether it is the huge eyes last time or the door he saw this time, he does not intend to tell everyone. Unless one day, they can become the world's top powerhouse, or he has the ability to protect everyone's safety, otherwise he will not tell them. Because it's useless to say. Those things are too far away from them. If it wasn't for his extremely special physique and strong spiritual perception, he wouldn't be able to sense these things. After eating, the partners dispersed and went to the island to play. Like Sorata said, they're going to be here for 7 days, so treat it like a vacation. Marine. Sengoku only received the news that the silver-haired gang had arrived in the capital of Seven Waters this morning. Strictly speaking, the people on the Eni's lobby are all directly under the world government, so no matter if it is someone from the Marine or the CP organization, when they report news, they are all contacted by the world government. In addition, Spandam did not report it immediately, but led the troops to capture Robin in the capital of Seven Waters, hoping to make meritorious service. That's why Sengoku got the news so late, and the information in his hands was sent by the world government. Looking at the paper in front of him, looking at the information on it, Sengoku's face became more serious than ever. You finally can't help but kill Marine. He thought about the last time Sorata spoke to him. Obviously this guy wasn't joking. Although I don't know why Sorata didn't kill Marine, it can be seen from the fact that this guy started to attack Marine. In the future, such things will probably increase. After all, this guy is completely different from other pirates. When Marine meets this guy, he can't even run away. And with the weapons Marine currently possesses, they are completely useless against this guy. Headache. Marine is too big. Even if he is a marshal, he cannot really manage the entire Marine system, especially the bottom Marine. As for the silver-haired group, he had said a long time ago during the meeting that they should try not to provoke them. He believed that after so many battles, the generals of naval headquarters would definitely listen to him. Advertisement, but those Marines that are not naval headquarters, he is a bit out of reach and out of control. Others don't know the horror of silver hair. As the marshal, as the person who directly faces the world government and the 5 elders, he certainly knows it. As the Marine, apart from Kuzan, the only one who knows the specific information about Light Island. He already knew from Kuzan that Sorata is not a demon fruit power at all. If it's not demon fruit power, then this guy won't have anything that can limit him in this world. Carteris, who was completely comparable to Admiral, and even surpassed Admiral, was instantly killed by this guy. Even if he didn't experience it personally, he only had Kuzan's dictation, but even with dictation, he could know the horror of this guy from Kuzan's horrified tone. So even if you know that the silver-haired gang is in the capital of Seven Waters, even if you know that Sorata has started to kill Marine, he can't do anything either. I hope you can uphold your own justice. Picking up the file on the desktop, Sengoku glanced again at Colonel Marine, who followed Spandam and reported to Marine alone, murmuring in his heart about the description of Marine killed by Sorata. Then he turned the seat, bent down, and handed the document in his hand to the white goat under the table. Although the Eni's lobby is directly under the world government, the Marines stationed above were dispatched by the Marines, so the Marine generals there have reasons and qualifications to report to the Marines separately. He has nothing to do with the silver-haired group now. He can only hope that Colonel Marine, the reported analysis of the silver-haired killing of Marine is true, right? Hey. Time passed quickly. Sorata always thought that the world government would send people to the capital of Seven Waters, not strong men, but intelligence personnel to find the whereabouts of CP9 and the others. Who knows, the world government is simply not sending anyone over. Does this mean that knowing that he is here, he dare not let others come to die? I have to say, pretty smart. He felt that even the secretary Khalifa who followed the iceberg disappeared that night. Because of the appearance of the weird door that night, he forgot Khalifa, the beauty in CP9, and when he remembered the next day, this woman had long since disappeared. But since it's gone, it's gone. He didn't think there was anything wrong with running away from an unimportant person. But the people from the world government didn't wait for it. They have waited for a lot of pirates and bounty hunters these days. These guys dare not aggressively attack the capital of Seven Waters. According to the pirates they caught, there are already many pirates forming an alliance waiting for them in the outer seas of the capital of Seven Waters. It's really courting death. Advertisement Chapter 247 Pirate Alliance. 7 days passed. Sorata and his group boarded the Liberty and set off from the port of the capital of Seven Waters to continue their journey. There is nothing to miss. After all, the capital of Seven Waters is just a shipbuilding island with a unique shape. It is really lively, but the scenery on the island is just like that. In fact, there is not much room for fun. After a group of them had been shopping for 2 days, they didn't want to go shopping anymore. After buying all the things they want to buy, for the rest of the time, they stayed on the Liberty, exercising, bored, and fighting pirates, and spent this time. During this time, Sorata went to meet Frankie alone. We didn't meet up close, just watched silently from a distance for a while. He was a little curious about the people who appeared in the original book, especially the protagonist group. After all, it is the team of Sons of the World, each one has its own characteristics. Especially Frankie, who is a rare reformer. Here I have to talk about the technology of this world. It can even transform people, and the power is still coke. I really can't figure out the reason. But so what if you can't figure it out? This is a magical world after all, and everything that is unreasonable cannot be explained by reality. It can only be attributed to special technology, a world of miracles. Captain, are we really going to follow these guys and provoke a group of silver-haired guys whose bounties exceed 5 billion berry? Off the coast of the capital of Seven Waters, a group of pirates formed an alliance, waiting lined up in this sea area. If you are familiar with the sea and pirates, you can see many familiar flags of pirates in the alliance. The total rewards offered by these pirate groups are no less than those of the silver-haired gang. On the bow of one of the pirate ships, several burly figures were standing there. One of them, a man with goggles on his head and a sniper rifle on his back, turned his head to the side, who was about the same height as him, but wearing a pirate hat and a one-eyed man with a western sword on his waist, and asked in a low voice. "Don't worry, Chelsea." The captain turned his head, looked at his subordinate with only one eye left, laughed loudly, and patted Shears on the shoulder. Advertisement. Although the silver-haired group is very strong, everyone who can come here knows this. But, he withdrew his hand, took a step forward, opened his hands, raised his head and laughed wildly. There are so many of us combined, it's not bad. Our shelling alone can easily destroy their ship. When the ship is destroyed, no matter how powerful they are on this sea, what can they use to fight us? Gia 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 Gia. Looking at the captain's back, all the companions beside him laughed, except Shears. The laughter is full of madness. Am I being too careful? Suppressing the unease that emerged from the bottom of his heart, Shears looked around. Looking at this huge fleet, looking at this fleet that is enough to attack Marine base, he slowly calmed down, and then agitation and madness emerged in his heart. Then he raised his head, looked at the rough sea ahead, grinned, and laughed with his companions. Sorata was right. After seeing the bounty offered by Sorata and his gang, these pirates really went crazy. They were exhausted, killing people and setting fires. They first wandered around the world for several years, and then came to the Grand Line to compete with countless pirate groups and overcome countless difficulties. Only in this way can they get hundreds of millions of rewards. Why? Why can a group of pirates who have only been out at sea for half a year have a bounty soaring to dozens of times theirs? Unfair, shady. The unsurprised feeling in their hearts and the pursuit of fame are like the temptation of the devil, forcing them to know that after Sorata and his gang came to the capital of Seven Waters, they immediately drove the pirate ship here. Isn't it just luck to kill a Shichibukai? As for tying Marine Admiral, seriously injuring 4 Marine Vice Admirals, or killing the legendary pirate Golden Lion of the previous generation, although they were a little apprehensive, it wasn't enough to scare them. Vice Admiral and the others also fought against each other. Although they lost, they can't do anything to them, can they? The Vice Admiral here is the first half of the Grand Line, the base chief in the Marine base. In fact, the base chiefs of these Marine bases basically don't go after pirates. They want to sit in the base, and only when they meet particularly powerful pirates, or pirates that Marine and the world government pays special attention to, they will go out in person. Even if it is dispatched, it will not chase the base very far. The general pirates are actually chased by some rear admirals in the base. The daily task of these rear admirals is to inspect the sea area where the marine base is located, so they can go after them with confidence, and they can also go far away from the base to chase down pirates. Advertisement as for the pirates who really met the naval headquarters vice admiral on the sea and were able to escape, either they were strong, or they were lucky, and the powerful pirates wanted to go to New World, because there is a big secret treasure they dream of. Good luck, of course, it is impossible to be lucky every time. The pirate group who came here to participate in the hunting of Sorata's group was all luck, and it was impossible. They killed here from among thousands of pirates, and after one more level, they could go to the Saboti archipelago, and thus to New Zealand. World, so there are really a few strong guys among them. But strength is useless. In the four seas and paradise, in this sea where ordinary people have no idea what hockey is. There can be one or two of them, relying on luck, and the pirate awakening primary hockey with good talent is not bad. The powerful devil fruit can indeed dominate the sea area, but they cannot become kings, let alone let them do whatever they want. Besides, they are just some low-level pirates, and they are far from being able to dominate the sea with their fruit ability. So, whoa 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 whoa. Click. The sound of electricity and thunder came across a long distance. What is that? I saw the sea that had just been calm, suddenly a gust of wind and waves blew from the front of the pirate alliance. This of course did not surprise everyone. To their surprise, a blue beam of light piercing the skies suddenly appeared on the distant sea surface. The beam of light was accompanied by thunder, stirring up the wind and setting off waves. Click. The beam of light rushed up to the sky, as if turning into a dragon, across the distant sky, stopped in the sky above the sea area of the pirate alliance, and then made a turn. Before all the pirates had time to react, it slammed into the sky on a pirate ship. Boom. A dazzling blue light shone across the sky, followed by a shocking explosion. Ah! Help! Amidst the flames and smoke, the shock waves sandwiched the broken boards, creating wind and waves, pushing the surrounding pirate ships away quickly. The wind followed the fire, and the high temperature brought by the thunder and lightning instantly ignited the ship, and then the fire followed the wind, filling the entire ship in an instant. The screams, the sound of diving, and the creaking of burning objects can be heard endlessly. So, these guys really don't know how to live or die. Chapter 248 The growth of pirates is often accompanied by life. After the impact passed, everyone raised their heads and looked at the fire-filled pirate ship in the middle of the alliance. Hearing the screams of the pirates engulfed by the fire coming from the ship, their heads froze for a while. What is this? Thinking of the cyan lightning that looked like a swimming dragon just now, all the pirates, including the captains of their respective pirate groups, shuddered when they came back to their senses, followed by nervousness, and unprecedented nervousness. The pirates who can sail here and are only one step away from the New World are not rookies who have just entered the Grand Line. They know a lot of information that ordinary people don't understand, and they don't know, including many powerful devil fruits. The unknown pirate captain is still wondering. Knowing what the blue thunder meant, the pirate captains swallowed together, a trace of fear appeared in the depths of their pupils, and they were already thinking about how to escape. Thunderfruit. The legendary strongest Logia. Although they haven't seen it before, they can be named the strongest. Just thinking about it, they know how powerful this fruit is. Although they could dodge the giant blue thunder that fell just now if they were prepared, even if they couldn't dodge, they probably wouldn't die. However, this does not prevent the fear rising in their hearts at this time. Pirates, pirates. Since they are pirates, they are basically a group of characters who are greedy for life and afraid of death, bullying the weak and fearing the hard. Because it is impossible for a truly ambitious and powerful pirate to come here to intercept Sorata and his gang, and it is impossible to form an alliance with other pirates, especially a group of pirates who look like a rabble. Therefore, the morale of the pirates who came here plummeted instantly after seeing Kuina's divine sanction. All the pirates were silent, waiting for their respective captains to name them. The captains are also in trouble. I don't know Thunderfruits is okay, they still have illusions in their hearts. After all, although Qinglei looks bluffing and powerful, he can't kill them instantly. And those captains who knew about Thunderfruit were really embarrassed. They wanted to retreat, but their subordinates didn't know about Thunderfruit. After all, there are too few Logias. To be honest, there are not many people who have actually seen Logias in the Pirate Alliance. Feeling the eyes of many subordinates behind them, they didn't know how to give orders. Escape? Or stay? I haven't seen the enemy face to face, so it's impossible to just retreat like this. Then how will they gain a foothold in front of their subordinates and other pirate groups in the future? Cheers kept adjusting the goggles on his eye sockets when Qinglei lifted off just now. There is actually a small telescope on the right frame of his goggles. He usually uses this telescope for shooting. Captain, I see. Advertisement, what did you see? Everyone looked at Chelsea in unison. I saw the silver-haired gang, the giant windmill on the bow, there is no mistake, it is them. Turning his head, the captain took a telescope from another man on the side, put it in front of his eyes, and looked at the huge sailboat in the distance, which was riding the wind and waves, and was sailing towards this side at a fast speed. His face was no longer the previous insolence. Because, he is one of the captains who knows Thunderfruit and has actually seen other Logia fruit-capable people take action. Are you going to escape? Just when he was hesitating, I saw a mass of fiery red, entwined with cyan thunderbolts suddenly bursting out of the sea in front of us. The shelling broke through the air, broke through the waves, and left a semicircular groove on the surface of the sea. Such a long distance, but like a teleportation, it actually appeared in front of the Pirate Alliance one step ahead of the sound. At this moment, it was as if time stopped, and everything around me slowed down. Under the light of the electromagnetic cannon shining thunderously, the surrounding beings revealed all kinds of life. Some screamed loudly, some were stunned and frightened, some turned around and ran away, and of course some closed their eyes and waited to die. Boom, as time went on, the electromagnetic gun fired directly at a pirate ship. Under the huge impact, the bow of the ship was directly shot through, followed by a much larger explosion than when the blue thunder fell just now, and shockwaves, as well as wind and waves. Boom. Rumbling. Only then did the sound of the electromagnetic gun reach the sea area of the Pirate Alliance and reach the ears of these pirates. But now they don't care about the sound of the electromagnetic gun anymore. The extremely strong shockwave formed an extremely strong wind pressure, which instantly caused the sea surface below the exploding ship to sink, and then rolled up several meters to 10 meters of waves under the hurricane, in a circular shape, and quickly impacted away. Under the impact, the formation of the Pirate Alliance was completely disrupted. Of course, it also frightened them out of their guts. What the hell is this? This is the common voice of all pirates, all pirate captains. Then the madness and greed in my heart disappeared, replaced by endless fear. Before they came, they thought that the silver-haired group was very strong, but because they had traveled this way, the most powerful person they had ever seen was Vice Admiral, and they hadn't seen the appearance of the top powerhouse when they really made a move, so they thought a top powerhouse might be stronger than Vice Admiral, but it's impossible to be much stronger. This is the main reason why they dared to come here to trouble Sorata and his gang. After all, what I saw with my own eyes is really the same concept as the few words in the newspaper. Advertisement, however, when they really saw the top powerhouse in this devastating attack, the last trace of luck and greed in their hearts disappeared. This is the growth of pirates, but the price of this growth is a bit high, that is their lives. If God gives them another chance, I believe they will not come to trouble Sorata and his gang. But still the same sentence, there are no ifs in this world. Escape. Before the sea calmed down, the alliance automatically collapsed. As for the previous blue thunder, they could still resist it a little bit, but this one, a single blow was the attack of a boat, they all went up together, lined up in a row, and they would all die. Regarding this point, the pirate captains are extremely clear in their hearts at the moment. So they did not hesitate to give the order to escape to their respective ships. Are you going to escape? On the bow of the Liberty, everyone looked at the collapsed pirate alliance in the distance, and the excitement in their eyes was replaced by disappointment. I told you not to use too much force, look, all escaped. Sorata leaned back against the guardrail, turned her head to look at Aluo, with a smile on the corner of her mouth. Hey, when did this guy dare to complain about Kuina? It's brave. Withdrawing his gaze, he looked at Kuina and smiled. You can't escape, just practice the accuracy of the Kuina electromagnetic gun. Kuina turned her head and gave Sorata a playful smile, then turned to look at Arlo. Aluo now also finds out that the object of the complaint is Kuina, and he is suddenly speechless. He also wants to shoot and fight pirates. There are also a Dao and a Wa, all of them are looking helplessly at the fleeing pirates in the distance, wanting to cry but not crying. I thought it was a thrilling encounter, and the three of them were ready to kill the quartet. Unexpectedly, Kuina's 2 hits caused such a big pirate alliance to collapse. Bah, what rubbish. Shichi complained about the many pirates in the distance in his heart, but they dared not show the slightest dissatisfaction with Kuina who caused all this. Under Kuina's gaze, Arlo obediently made Darkhound spit out bullets, and then became a ruthless bullet-handing machine, while he could only stand aside and look at Kuina enviously. Looking at her, one shot, and another shot, buried all the pirates fleeing in the distance under the sea. Chapter 249 Man. Not born a butcher, Sorata and others did not search for the pirates who fell into the water and survived under the Kuina electromagnetic gun. This sea area is so big, it is a waste of time to search. And they also know that with so many pirates, some will be lucky enough to survive. For these lucky guys, it can only be said that they are favored by the goddess of luck. It was also Sorata who deliberately let it go. In fact, there is still a distance from the capital of the Seven Waters. These guys dare not get too close, because the Eni's lobby is nearby. The sea area where we have been waiting for a long time is actually still very far away from the land. There are not many pirates who can survive, and even fewer are lucky enough to float to land, maybe none of them. He left these pirates to let these guys spread the record of this battle and spread the terror of their group. No matter how many ants there are, they cannot hunt and kill elephants. Once or twice, it can still be used as a boring sea to pass the time, but if it is too much, it is not a time pass, but annoying. So letting the pirates know the news of this battle can also block many people who don't know how to live or die. Hey, I don't know where that firebird went. Glancing behind him, Sorata turned his head to look at the distant sun, squinted his eyes, raised the wine gourd in his hand, and took a big sip. Didn't this guy say that he would wait for them in the capital of Seven Waters? He didn't deliberately look for Firebird, but that guy would definitely come to see him as soon as he knew he was on the island. If he didn't come, it proved that the guy was really not in the capital of Seven Waters. If you are not in the capital of Seven Waters, you may go to Sabo de Archipelago. Not to mention, I haven't seen him for a while, and I still miss that guy. Well, he wouldn't say that he thought of this guy mainly because he wanted to spread the news. Because this battle that showed personal force was actually handed over to the Firebird to report, and the effect was better. Riding on the rising sun, the Liberty gradually left this sea area, leaving behind countless broken limbs and broken arms, as well as countless wooden fragments. Color. Advertisement: the blood was scorched by the fire, so it was not bloody, and it did not attract carnivorous fish in the nearby sea area to come to this sea area to hunt. Of course that is now, after a while, it will be difficult to say. But that's enough for a while. On one part of the sea, Shears, whose body was burned extensively, was lying on the wooden plank with his whole body, until he saw through the thick smoke that Liberty had really moved away and left this sea area. He panted heavily, slowly draw out from the smoke. Looking at the miserable scene around him as if he had experienced the end of the world, he lay on the wooden plank, staring at the sky blankly, feeling a sense of rejoicing for the rest of his life in his heart. He clearly remembered his fear at the moment when the electromagnetic gun that fell like a comet approached. If it wasn't for his special induction that allowed him to escape the strike range of the electromagnetic gun before it came, then he might be at the same moment as him. Like the captain and his partners, they have all become corpses in this sea. However, although he escaped the main path of the electromagnetic gun, the shock wave of the electromagnetic gun explosion and the fire alone caused his body to be seriously injured. I can't wait any longer, I want to get out of here alive. He knew that there was something terrifying under this sea, and if he couldn't leave here for a short time, the sea kings from the deep sea would tear him apart in an instant. Clenching his fists and clenching his teeth, he endured the moaning from his internal organs and the burning pain on the surface of his body. He picked up the wood chip and slid it hard. I don't know if it's God's blessing. After this guy left this sea area, he didn't encounter any storms, nor did he meet sea kings. Instead, he was lucky enough to meet a merchant ship going to the capital of 7 waters. He knew that he was a pirate, and he was a pirate with a bounty, so he didn't dare to show his true face, so he slashed the remaining half of his face, and now no one would know who he was. Who? He pretended to be fishing in the sea, and accidentally met a pirate fisherman. The merchant ships that can do business in this sea area generally have a high force value on board, so seeing this guy in such a miserable state, he let him aboard. In the days that followed, Shears lived incognito in the capital of 7 waters. But I don't know when, the news of this naval battle gradually spread in the capital of 7 waters, and the more it spread, the more exaggerated it was. Before Sorata and others sailed to the Saboti archipelago, countless people on the sea knew the news that the silver-haired gang had wiped out the pirate alliance formed by 100 pirate groups in the outer seas of the capital of 7 waters. Of course, this is all for later, and there are not so many pirates at all, only 20 or so. After weathering storms, breaking waves, and a few days of sailing in fair weather, snow and ice, the Liberty came out of a huge thick fog that enveloped the entire sea area. In the past few days, they have seen the troubles caused by names. In just a few days, they encountered no less than 20 attacks from other pirates. Advertisement: not even at night. These guys are like moths who are not afraid of death, and they insist on moths rushing to the fire to seek death. I don't know where these guys got the news. In other words, they have been waiting here, not wanting to enter the huge triangular area shrouded in mist, which is why there are so many pirates here. Anyway, no matter what the reason was, gradually everyone became disgusted with these pirates. Just like what Sorata thought, everyone was very excited at first, but gradually lost interest when there were too many. Everyone would hate this kind of thing. As long as it is an ordinary person, there must be a process for spiritual growth. After all, they are not murderers. Not everyone is born with mental toughness. More than 99% of the people in this world are ordinary people. And if there are too many people killed, as long as he is still alone, he will definitely show numbness, hesitation, and more likely to retreat. This is not fear, but the reverence for life deep in the human heart. At this time, the 3 of Ahua are in the process. Step over and kill the damned without hesitation. This is the growth of the soul and everyone must. Can't get over it. Impossible. With Sorata here, how could it be impossible to pass? Even when I met the Pirate Alliance a few days ago, I complained in my heart that Kuina didn't let them stay. They have been killing pirates these days, and they don't want to kill them. You must know that they are all people who deserve to be killed, and they are not businessmen, marines, or civilians. This makes them feel no guilt in their hearts, even if they hesitate or hate them, but after the baptism of time, in the end, it will definitely make the heart stronger and stronger. So Sorata never said silly things like killing pirates. Of course, I will cherish this pure heart even more. There are many pirates in this world, more than all marines combined. So in the last day, as long as you meet a pirate ship, you will either be stabbed twice by Kuina, or the ship will be smashed and sunk by Alua with a few shots, and Ahua and Atau will never make a move again. He also didn't hunt down those pirates who fell into the sea. This kind of emotion often appears after killing people for the first time, and of course it will also appear after killing many people. As long as it is not psychological pervert, even bad guys are no exception. Chapter 250: Devil's Triangle. Devil's Triangle. A huge sea area shrouded in thick fog with low visibility. Legend has it that there are ghosts, ghost ships, talking skeletons, and a moving ghost island in this sea area. At this time, the Liberty stopped at the edge of the thick fog. Looking ahead, everyone's faces showed excitement. This excitement washed away the tiredness of killing pirates these days. Sorata, let's go in. I smell adventure. Ahua pushed the mirror frame and turned his head to look at Sorata standing at the bow. Obviously, he couldn't wait any longer. What interesting things are waiting for them this time? Seeing that Sorata didn't reply for a long time, everyone turned their heads to look at him. Looking at him, the excitement on their faces disappeared, revealing a trace of doubt. What's wrong? Kuina walked over, reached out to hold Sorata's drooping hand, looked at him and asked in doubt. Nothing. Sorata came back to her senses, looked away, and the surprise in the depths of her eyes disappeared. This is the third thing he has seen in this world that he cannot explain. Maybe no one in this world can feel it, including Kuina and others, Luffy and others in the original book, none of them can feel it. He doesn't know why. It may be because he is not a person in this world, or it may be his own space physique, which makes him especially sensitive to space and space fluctuations. The three towering black shadows in the dense fog in front, in the eyes of others, may be three projections, and they can't feel the slightest breath. But in his eyes, he seemed to see. He saw three pairs of red eyes staring at the world through the endless space. He didn't know what that thing was, but he could tell from this guy's eyes that this guy must be a very evil thing. But being isolated from the endless space by the world, ordinary people can't feel it at all. He could feel it because of the constantly fluctuating space in the void, and the malice that only he could sense that emanated from time to time. Interesting. Sorata tilted his head to glance at the crowd, the corners of his mouth turned up, and a smile appeared on his face, then turned his head to look forward, raised his hands and shouted loudly. Let's go, start a new adventure, brothers. Yo-hoo, advertisement. The three of Ahua yelled excitedly, turned around and set off for the boat, while Robin looked at Sorata's back with a gentle smile on his face, and then looked at the thick fog in the distance with anticipation in his eyes. Indigo also opened his mouth, showing an exaggerated smile, and even danced and performed mimes. And Kuina tightened Sorata's hand, didn't say anything, didn't ask, and turned her head to look at him tenderly. Sorata also tightened her hands, as a response to Kuina, and also said nothing. When Kuina can deal with these dangers, when he can protect Kuina, he will definitely not hide it from her, but not now. Speaking out will only add to Kuina's troubles. This world is not simple. Even if he is a time traveler, he knows the truth that many people in this world don't know, but he hasn't watched the finale, so there are still many things that he doesn't know like people in this world. So you have to explore and discover by yourself slowly. And isn't this process of exploration the adventure they are looking for? Don't look at Liberty as if it is on the edge of the thick fog, but the distance is not close. They sailed for nearly an hour before they really disappeared in this sea area and really entered the thick fog. It's strange to say that the sea outside is not so violent, but even if the sky is clear, it will not be really calm. But entering this sea area shrouded in dense fog made them feel as if they had returned to East Blue, except that the dark environment was different. The waves here and the wind here were exactly the same as East Blue. No more rage, no more madness. Look, ghost ship. Not long after he came in, Arlo excitedly pointed in one direction and shouted loudly. Everyone raised their eyes and saw a black shadow in the shape of a ship slowly approaching them in the depths of the dense fog. Before it approached, everyone vaguely felt a gust of cold wind blowing, making them involuntarily, a touch of goose skin appeared on the surface of their bodies, and they shivered. There can't really be ghosts. Ahua stared at the black shadow in the distance, and said in a voice that was both scared and excited. If there is a ghost, then we have to take a good look. As he spoke, his eyes nearly lit up. This is typical, the more scared the more excited. But he was disappointed. As the distance got closer, everyone could see clearly that what was coming was just a dilapidated and abandoned boat. Only the countless scratches on the hull and the broken flag on the top of the middle mast still tell the glory of this pirate ship. Advertisement. Sorata only took one look, then looked away. Because he didn't sense any aura on this ship, nor did he feel any ghost shadow in his mind. Really just a hulk. As early as entering the first stop of the Grand Line, Twin Gorges, he promised Laboon that he would find his partner, one of the four yellow skulls, Brook. He knew that Brook was in this sea area, but he didn't know exactly where this guy was. In the original book, Luffy can meet Brook because of the arrangement of the plot, and it may not be easy for him to meet him. However, if you are unlucky outside, it may be really difficult to find this guy, but as long as you find Moria's Thriller Bark, which is the legendary Ghost Island, then you will definitely find this guy. Because this guy, if he remembers correctly, the shadow of this guy should have been captured by Moria, and then put into the body of the legendary Wano Kuni swordsman Ryoma. So as long as they're on the Thriller Bark, and if Brook isn't too far away, they might be able to find him. A powerful pirate group is certainly not afraid, but ordinary pirate groups, as well as merchant ships, will not go here. When the two ships met, nothing superfluous happened. Since the thick fog shrouded this sea area, no one has been able to really explore this sea area. In fact, it is more likely that he will not meet other ships until he sinks into the deep sea. It has become a forbidden area for many ships. Because the shadow is lost, Brook can't leave this sea area. After leaving, he will die when he meets the sun. Liberty moved on. They are willing to go around and take other routes to Sabaody Archipelago. Even if you can't find him at that time, you can wait for Moria to be killed and follow the shadow emerging from Ryoma to find him. And the broken sailboat, also behind them, disappeared into the thick fog again, waiting for the next ship to enter here to meet it. This sea area is so large that it spans most of the Grand Line. And with Kuina's knowledge stronger than Enel's, coupled with electromagnetic waves, her sensing range is really round, farther than Enel's. But that's all for later. This is why they saw so many pirates outside the dense fog. So he's not far from the thriller bark at all. It may be a few days, it may be years, and it may be decades before it meets the next ship that enters here. After all, not everyone has the courage to challenge this unknown place, right? Chapter 251 Another fish takes the bait, and over the past countless years, countless pirate ships, merchant ships, and even marine warships have been buried in this sea area, so of course there are many ghost ships floating here. No, they didn't travel long before they encountered another broken pirate ship. However, this ship is different from the previous one. Although this ship is dilapidated, there are not many traces of time passing on it. Judging from the dust on the ship should have been abandoned in recent months. When they got on the boat, everyone was still in the kitchen of the boat. They saw the burnt pot, the kurozumi in the pot, and the rotten ingredients in the refrigerator that hadn't been powered off for a long time. From the rickety chairs in the kitchen, we can know that dinner was supposed to be being prepared here, but something suddenly happened and they were urgently summoned to the deck. Afterwards, there was no battle, and the people on this ship disappeared. Why do you say there was no fighting? Because there were no traces of fighting on the boat. There were traces on the side of the boat, but not many, and judging from the degree of decay of the scars, it was not caused when the boat was abandoned, but a long time ago. I searched the whole ship and found nothing useful except some treasure and berry. The people on the whole ship, as if they were suddenly controlled by something, left here in a hurry without taking anything. And the thing that attacked them was obviously not looking for treasure, so why? Can't figure it out. Everyone disembarked from the ship and boarded the Liberty. Then continued to sail forward. Gradually, the surrounding fog became thicker and thicker, and in the end it was even impossible to see the road ahead. Fortunately, although this sea area is on the Grand Line, except for the thick fog, the weather is different from the Grand Line. Sorata, there seems to be something in the water ahead. At the bow, Arlo pointed forward with his right hand and turned to look at Sorata. Fill it up and see if it's okay. Sorata picked up the juice on the coffee table, opened her mouth to bite on the straw, and took a sip. Oh, Arlo turned his head, picked up the usual fishing rod from the side shelf, and then threw it forward, precisely in front of the thing on the sea in front, then turned the pulley to retract the fishing line. Boom. It's a barrel. A Wa and a Dao surrounded the wooden barrel that Aluo caught. Oh, there are still words. Ahua tore off the flag stuck on the barrel, unfolded it and looked. It seems to be a treasure. Treasure? When everyone heard this, they immediately regained their spirits. Treasure? Sorata looked at the barrel, put down the fruit cup, touched her chin with her right hand, and pretended to be thinking. At this moment, a red light interrupted his thinking. I saw the wooden barrel surrounded by the crowd, and they opened it at some point. Advertisement. The moment the wooden barrel was opened, it expanded rapidly, and then a fiery red cannonball rushed out from inside. The shells dragged their red tails and rushed into the sky. With a bang, it exploded like fireworks. The loud sound and the bright red light are very dazzling in this dark sea. What the hell? Aluo kicked down the wooden barrel, raised his head, looked at the fireworks in the sky and said dissatisfiedly, "It turned out to be fireworks. I thought it was a real treasure. It's a joy for nothing." Yes. Awa threw away the small flag in his hand, nodded his head with a disappointed look on his face. It's like a flare. Flare. Everyone stopped in unison, then turned to look at Robin, who was speaking. Robin looked up at the dazzling red light in the sky even in the dense fog, and said in a serious tone, "I'm afraid this is a bait specially thrown into the sea by someone. Just wait for other people to pick it up and release the signal flare, so that the person who threw the bait people can quickly locate and find the person who sent the signal." Hi. Adao smoked a cigarette, looked away, and smiled faintly. I thought it was something. Isn't it just positioning? Just let them come. I want to see who is playing us. Apparently he didn't take the bait casters seriously. The partners didn't take it seriously. Seeing that everyone was not nervous at all, Robin didn't say anything. He glanced ahead, then withdrew his gaze, turned around and sat back on the recliner, and went to read a book. Also, with the strength of their group, how could they be afraid of this man-made trap? Looking at the fireworks that were still glowing red, Sorata put down his hands, with enlightenment in his eyes. It turned out to be this thing. It's been too long, so long that he has long forgotten that there is such a thing. This thing is nothing else. It is used by Moria to locate the location of the pirates entering the Devil's Triangle. The fireworks are going off, so the ghost should be coming soon. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look forward to it. He was just looking for this guy. Zombies, ghosts, titans. Actually that guy Moria is kind of interesting. That guy's talent is definitely not weak, otherwise he would not have competed with Kaido when he was young. Although he lost, he is not an existence that ordinary pirates can provoke. The only question is, why can't this guy hockey? Advertisement. If this product knows hockey, it is absolutely impossible to be the bottom of Shichibukai. Could it be that Kaido really broke his heart and lost hockey? This is impossible. Observation hockey can be said to disappear after losing heart energy, but armament hockey is the energy of the body. As long as the body is still strong, it is impossible to say that it disappears without heart energy. The only explanation is that this guy didn't practice hockey at all. What a waste of such a huge body. No wonder being abused by Kaido. Hey, another fish took the bait. In the depths of the dense fog, there is a huge sailing ship as large as an island. Let's call it an island. It's aka Ghost Island after all, isn't it? There are many castles on the island. However, I don't know whether these castles have been in this dense fog for a long time, or they are really too old. making the castle look like it came from ancient times, full of the breath of time. Of course, in this dark fog, the combination of the island and the castle also makes this place look extraordinarily gloomy. The doll respectfully saluted the girl, turned around and went out the door. Ignoring gravity and the surrounding walls, the ghost passed through directly, and then flew towards the direction where the dazzling red light burst out in the distance. All of this makes this castle, and this island, full of weirdness that can only be found in horror movies. The girl seemed to have sensed something, and was rolling on the bed excitedly, letting out a loud laugh between cute and weird. The little girl has pink hair tied into two ponytails on both sides, a crown on the top of her head, and black eyeshadow drawn around her big eyes. Hee 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 hee. At the same time, around her, several translucent balloon-like things floated up, and upon closer inspection, it turned out that they were all ghosts. The laughter stopped, she lay on the bed, and said to a strange doll full of stitching marks standing aside, "Go and tell Lord Moria, I found another prey, and tell him to sail over." And the sound came from here. Turning her head to look out of the window, the girl had an innocent yet slightly weird smile on her face. In the middle of the island, on the second floor of an old castle in a small house. While flying, he showed the same smile as the girl. This place is different from the outside walls, it is covered with all kinds of cute things, even the walls are pink. Who will be interesting this time? It looks like a girl's room. Alright, Mrs. Perona. At first glance, one can tell that it is a little princess who looks like a princess, but has a naughty personality. In the room, on a circular bed, sat a little girl in a white t-shirt and a red gown. Chapter 252 The Singing Skeleton. Yo, hoo-hoo. Yo, hoo-hoo. Not long after picking up the trap fireworks, everyone was suddenly attracted by the singing from the front right. Listen, it seems that someone is singing. Adao put down the cigarette in his hand, turned his head to look forward to the right, a trace of surprise flashed across his face. There can't really be ghosts. A ghost? Everyone got up, ran, except Sorata, all ran to the right guardrail, looked to the right, not afraid, but full of anticipation. Not even Kuina and Robin. The stuff of legends, before they entered here, they heard Robin tell the story here. Could it be a real ghost ship? Or is it just phantoms, or just tape recorders? Ever since he heard the singing, Sorata has been frozen in place, a red light appeared in his eyes, and his face was full of disbelief. No way. We really met. He's not King Luffy. It was so easy for them to meet the person he was looking for. God's will. Never mind. Shaking his head, Sorata sat up, put on his slippers, walked to Kuina's side, and looked forward to the right with his companions. Even if he knew who it was, he wouldn't disturb the curiosity of his friends. It's an adventure after all, knowing the ending, what's the point of that? It's like when watching a movie, no one likes a spoiler that suddenly pops up on the bullet screen, and you happen to see it. That kind of discomfort, many people feel the same. Even Kuina, the most powerful observation hockey on board at this time, did not perceive in advance. Instead, he looked expectantly at the direction of the dense fog in the distance, knowing everyone's expectations. If Sorata hadn't known it a long time ago, she wouldn't subconsciously perceive it with knowledge. After all, knowing the ending and not knowing the ending, the adventure experience is completely two levels. Advertisement, so his expectations at this time are not as strong as those of his companions. Binks whine. Send it over. As the singing gradually became clearer, a huge black shadow gradually appeared in the thick fog on the right front. Amidst the crunching and shaking of the kuchiki, the black shadow gradually emerged. It's really a ghost ship. Everyone looked at the huge dilapidated sailboat that kept sailing towards them, their eyes were full of excitement. After a while, the two ships met on the sea surface, and everyone stared wide-eyed, only to see a skeleton standing beside the giant ship shrouded in thick fog. And that singing sound seemed to come from this skeleton. Skeleton. Singing skeletons. Everyone looked at the skeleton and were all shocked. And the skeleton also seemed to see them. The singing stopped abruptly, and then the skeleton also showed a surprised expression. People? Living? At this moment, the two ships passed by, as if the fleeting skeleton was really everyone's fantasy. But everyone will not regard this as an illusion. Quick, catch up. Adao was the first to react. He flicked the cigarette holder in his hand, exhaled a puff of smoke, then turned around and walked quickly towards the cab. He is going to turn on the power system of the Liberty, follow the giant ship, and see what the singing skeleton is. Everyone also quickly came to their senses, and hurried to the bow of the ship, looking at the giant ship that was drifting away. Their eyes were shining, and their faces were blushing. See? Sorata. Kuina held Sorata's hand, narrowed his eyes into a crescent, and said excitedly, Skeleton, a singing skeleton. I saw it. Sorata looked down at Kuina, with the corners of his mouth raised, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. I won't let him run away. Isn't Adao going to sail? Okay. Kuina nodded, pulled Sorata to the bow, and stared ahead with the same excitement. In the final analysis, even though Kuina and Ahua are already very powerful, they're just a group of young girls and boys who have just turned 17 years old. It is understandable to be excited when encountering new things. Haven't you seen the well-informed big sister Robin and the Uncle Indigo all excited? Advertisement. They have seen a lot of strange things along the way, even the real soul, although they have not seen it with their own eyes. They have heard Sorata talk about it on Dengdao Island, so ordinary things cannot excite everyone. This is no ordinary thing, but a singing skeleton. This made everyone's hearts, which were already excited by the legend, even more excited when they saw what was actually in the legend. Under Adao's control, the Liberty turned quickly, then turned full power, and caught up with the huge sailing ship in an instant. Okay. The skeleton is still there. Seeing the skeleton on the side of the boat, which was taller than everyone on the boat, everyone jumped on the guardrail without waiting for Adao, and then jumped towards the giant boat together. The skeleton standing by the boat seemed to be taken aback. After everyone jumped on the huge boat, he quickly stepped back a few steps, and then stared at everyone excitedly. How do you know he's excited? You must know that he is full of bones. No matter so much, anyway, everyone just felt his excitement. Before everyone could stand still, he introduced himself. He was so excited that he knew that he hadn't seen anyone for a long time. As he said that, he turned around, trying to lead everyone into the cabin next to him. Seeing the dark cabin, he seemed to have reacted suddenly, and froze in place, revealing an ultimate loneliness, which was quickly hidden by him. Turning around, looking at Sorata and others, he smiled awkwardly. Guests, there is nothing to entertain, let's chat here. In his left hand, he held a coffee cup with a piece missing in a cracked wall. He hung a purple cane on his wrist. He picked up the black tall gentleman hat on top of the explosive head with his right hand, and gave a slight salute to everyone. Just like a gentleman. But, I was really shocked. I haven't seen a living person for decades. It's either a ghost ship or a ghost ship. I'm terrified. All of them show that the skeleton should be alone, on this ship, in this sea area. It must have been floating for many years. That's right, not to mention the skeletons, even a random person, if he stays in this dark sea surrounded by thick fog, will go crazy if he stays for a long time. The excitement on his face gradually subsided, obviously saw everyone, but didn't say hello. Yo ho ho ho, although this is a skeleton, it looks like a very lonely skeleton. It was really rude just now, and look at the surrounding environment, the torn clothes on the skeleton, the broken coffee cup in his hand, and the excitement of the skeleton after seeing everyone. Hi everyone, come on, you're welcome, go into the house, let's have a good chat. Everyone looked at the skeleton, watched his reaction after seeing everyone, saw the momentary pause when he turned to look at the cabin, and the loneliness that flashed from him. Chapter 253 The Fruit of the Underworld and Nearly 50 Years of Loneliness. Just when everyone didn't know how to strike up a conversation. As if discovering a new continent, the skeleton looked at Robin and Kuina among the crowd. Then he laughed and took a few steps forward, standing still a few steps away from the crowd. Said to Kuina and Robin, two beautiful ladies, beautiful. Robin covered his mouth and chuckled, while Kuina rolled his eyes. Seeing that Robin and Kuina were happy, the skeleton continued to say, when I see a beauty, I smile with joy, although the skeleton has no eyes. Yo ho ho ho, Sorata looked at the skeleton, the corners of his mouth twitched. This guy is worthy of being one of the four yellows. I don't know if he was like this when he was a human a few decades ago, or after he became a skeleton. He drifted in this thick fog for decades, and he had a mental problem, looks like. At this moment, the skeleton put down the coffee cup and the crutch on his wrist, took out a towel from his pocket, bent down to polish his shoes, then walked up to Kuina and Robin and spoke solemnly. Fat times, can I appreciate your fat times? As soon as these words came out, the smiles on everyone's faces stopped immediately, especially the three of Ahua, who retreated silently, looking at the skeleton with horror and admiration. Sure enough, the three of Ahua were not disappointed. Kuina stared at the skeleton, her smile froze, then her eyes were cold, she opened her mouth and shouted loudly, Dream. Then he kicked the skeleton directly on the head, and kicked the skeleton away with one kick. And Robin opened his mouth and laughed out loud, he. Although he knew that this guy was joking, it still made Sorata feel a little uncomfortable, but after thinking about it, this guy has been here alone for decades. It gradually faded away. Besides, this guy's real age is enough to be everyone's grandpa. So why bother so much? It's just a nonchalant joke. Although this guy is called Siwang, he is the most gentleman among the Siwang, and he has never done anything out of the ordinary. Even Siwang was actually just a joke. With a bang, the skeleton hit the ground, and a big red bulge emerged from the place Kuina kicked. Advertisement. Obviously Kuina didn't try hard, and the skeleton didn't dodge either. The skeleton fell to the ground, looked at Kuina, and laughed loudly. Yo ho ho, it's so rough, it hurts into my bones, even though I only have bones, yo ho ho. This guy is actually a master of cold jokes, every sentence seems to be telling cold jokes. Let everyone hear this, Chi laughed, ha 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 ha. The laughter dissipated, and the loneliness lingering on the ship brought a long-lost excitement here. The skeleton was lying on the ground, looking at the laughing crowd, with a hint of memory in its dark eyes. He looked at Sorata and the others, as if he had returned to decades ago, when his partners were still there. Before he knew it, 2 lines of hot tears flowed from his dark eye sockets. As if sensing something, everyone's laughter gradually stopped. Kuina took a step forward, stood in front of the skeleton, and said seriously, Stop joking, talk about it. What the hell are you? The skeleton looked at the crowd, and stood upright amidst the sound of clicking. He first went to the side table to pick up his coffee cup, then hung the cane back on his left wrist, then turned around and walked back, looked at the crowd, took a sip of the coffee cup in his hand slowly. Dozens of it's been a year, I don't know if it's coffee, it's still steaming coffee. Then he put down his hand and said to everyone, Have you heard of the fruit of Wangshan? Yellow spring fruit? Is it really a fruit ability? Robin took a step forward, stood beside Kuina, and said to the skeleton, "You mean, your current state is a special state endowed by the ability of the fruit of the underworld?" "Okay." The skeleton nodded, and continued. "Actually, I died decades ago, and now I am a resurrected person." "Resurrection man?" Resurrected. Actually, I was a pirate decades ago. I came to the Grand Line from West Blue with a group of partners. After entering this magical sea, we were attacked by a group of fellow pirates and were wiped out afterwards. Before I ate the fruit of Wangchen, it just turned me into a landlubber, but not long after I died, the fruit's ability was activated, and my soul was pulled out of the cold Wangchen again. And many more. Awa pushed the mirror frame, stepped forward and said, "Since your soul came out of the underworld not long after you died, how did you become the skeleton you are now?" The skeleton picked up the coffee and took a sip. "I'm going to blame this sea of demons. I did come out of Wangchen not long after my death, but after I came out, I found that I couldn't find my boat, and I was lost in this magical sea covered in thick fog." Advertisement, get lost. Everyone looked at the skeleton, their faces froze. I didn't expect it to be such a lame reason, but when I thought of the strange thick fog in this sea area and the visibility here, I felt relieved. It's really easy to get lost here. If there is no record pointer, no one will enter this sea area at all. Even if there is a record pointer, almost 100 ships are lost in this sea area every year, and they can never get out again. The boat they met along the way, the people on the second boat were captured by something, and the first boat was obviously lost here a long time ago, and it completely became a ghost ship in what others said. Okay. The skeleton nodded, shrugged and said helplessly, "I'm really lost." Then what's next? Aluo turned his head to glance at the skull on the tattered sail, looked at the horns on the skull, and thought flashed in his eyes. I seem to have seen this skull flag somewhere. It will drive people crazy? Next. I'm really lonely. At this moment, the skeleton suddenly looked up at the sky and laughed loudly. Yo ho ho ho, today is such a good day. I finally met someone. Then he lowered his head, and an inexplicable light flashed in the dark eyes. In this dark sea area filled with thick fog that doesn't know the alternation of day and night, all the companions have died, and they are alone on a big ship with a broken rudder. Float, float, wander for decades. Lonely and scared, sometimes I really want to die. And this class, decades have passed, and they have never seen anyone else. But day after day, year after year, the sea was too big, and the rudder of his ship broke down again, so he could only resign himself to fate. Shaking his head, maybe the pirates have seen a lot during this period, and they seem to have seen any skeletons they see. This kind of loneliness makes everyone shudder just thinking about it. Pity. 1 year is enough for a person to change from a corpse to a skeleton. The skeleton looked down at the skeleton protruding from his chest, and said in a low voice, "When I find the boat in my body, it will be a year later." Everyone looked at the skeleton, as if they had seen the skeleton for decades, walking around every corner of the ship, missing his dead partner, and waiting to see other people again. There was something extra in the eyes of everyone looking at the skeleton. Withdrawing his gaze and smiling, he turned his gaze back to the skeleton. Chapter 254 Brook, Thoughts spanning nearly 50 years. This guy has been floating in this dark sea for nearly 50 years, but he hasn't really gone crazy. I have to say that this guy is really optimistic. This guy is much worse than Laboon. Although Laboon is also waiting, there is always a partner by his side who will never leave him. As for Brook, after decades, probably the only time he saw other humans was at the Thriller Bark when Moria snatched his shadow. It's so pitiful. Sorata looked at Brook with a flash of admiration deep in her eyes. If he was left alone in this dark, dark sea, he might not be able to bear it long ago and committed suicide. The skeleton glanced at everyone, as if he could feel how pitiful they were for him. He opened his mouth and let out a faint smile, and his low tone became lighter along with the laughter. Yo ho ho ho, I didn't expect that I could live for such a long time. As he spoke, he raised his hand, looked up at the sky, and said loudly, "People can bring joy, but to me, you are my joy, yo ho 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 ho." Looking at the laughing skeleton, the pity for the skeleton disappeared from everyone's eyes, and a smile appeared on the corner of their mouth. The person involved can face 50 years of lonely life so indifferently, what can outsiders like them say? Apart from admiration for the skeleton, I can only laugh along with him. Laugh. This is his attitude towards life. No wonder, in the singing they heard for the first time, the first lines were these very personal laughter. 50 years? Arlo looked at Brook, focusing on his afro, then turned his head and looked again at the skull on the tattered sail. As he looked at it, his eye sockets opened wider and wider, and finally they directly released light. What's wrong? You be asterisk 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 D. Next to Aluo. Awa noticed Aluo's strangeness, and couldn't help but turn to look at him and asked in doubt. Arlo ignored Awa, but turned his head to look at Sorata, and when he saw Sorata looking at him, he nodded to him. He understood, the guy in front of him was the one Sorata was looking for. He just said that he seemed to have seen the skull on the ship before. It turned out that I saw it at the old man who just entered the Grand Line and guarded the Twin Gorges. Advertisement, Brook. Arlo withdrew his gaze, stared at the skeleton, and called out his name loudly. The laughter, like a bullet that suddenly jammed, stopped abruptly. Brook put down his hand, stared at Aluo, and said in an unbelievable tone, "This gentleman, do you know me?" Brook? Except for Robin, when they heard Arlo's cry, everyone glanced at Arlo quickly, then turned their heads, their eyes swept across the entire ship, and finally stopped at the skull on the tattered sail. If it was just the name Brook that Arlo called out, everyone couldn't be sure, but when they saw the somewhat familiar skull and thought of the huge whale they had just entered the Grand Line, they knew who the guy in front of them was. Up. It's really Brook. Ah Wah pushed the frame of the mirror, turned his head to stare at Brook. His eyes shone with the same light as Arlo. This afro, this skull flag, there's still time. No, it's not really Brook. Adao took a deep drag on the cigarette, and also stared at Brook with bright eyes. Seeing everyone's reaction, Brook said cautiously, you really know me? Okay. Everyone nodded in unison, and then their faces all showed excitement. My name is indeed Brook. Although I may have been famous in West Blue 50 years ago, it is impossible to stay famous until now. Are you mistaken? No, it's you. Arlo took a step forward, stood at the front of the crowd, and happily said to Brook, you know Gemini Gorge. Twin Gorges? Brook recalled it for a while, and then seemed to remember something. His body froze in place, the coffee cup in his hand seemed to suddenly lose strength, and quickly fell down, and with a touch, it fell to pieces. Ignoring the smashed coffee cup and the coffee splashed on the shoes, Brook came back to his senses in an instant, stepped forward, grabbed Arlo's shoulders, and held them firmly. You've seen Crocus, you've seen Laboon. His body trembled, and his tone trembled equally, showing his nervousness. I've seen it. Advertisement. Without keeping Brook waiting, Arlo nodded solemnly. As if he had discovered something, Brook let go of his hand, took a few steps back and said, sorry, sir, I was a little excited just now. After speaking, he stared at Arlo expectantly again, and asked, Laboon, is it okay? As soon as Aluo spoke, he was interrupted by Sorata, who stepped forward and patted his shoulder. Let me do the talking. Sorata stood beside Arlo, clapping the hands on his shoulders tightly. As for what he decides afterwards, that is his business. Agreement? As for the Laboon you care about, although that guy is sometimes irritable, but Crocus is here, don't worry, he is healthy, but occasionally misses you and the partner he made an appointment with, and screams at the red line. Because following them, this promise will definitely be fulfilled, and the time will not be long. But it was all his idea. Maybe it would be faster than letting him go back alone to find Laboon. Sorata nodded. I made an agreement with Laboon that we can find a person with an afro on the next voyage. Don't ask me where I found out that you are still alive, anyway, I just know. Okay. Sorata looked at Brook, and first introduced herself. Hi Brook, my name is Sorata, the leader of the Freedom Adventure Group, and now he is also a pirate who has been offered a bounty by the world government, although I don't agree, ha ha ha. Saying so, Sorata let go of his hand. Where does Mr. Crocus know about you and your pirate group? He also met Laboon in Twin Gorges and made a promise with it. And he is not King Luffy, and he doesn't know whether Brook will board his ship for his invitation. There are some things that don't need to be said, as long as Brook knows that Laboon is still waiting for him and he is in good health. I know you. It has always been in the Twin Gorges, waiting for you to go back. To be honest, sailing on the sea is indeed a bit boring. If there is an extra Dobby on board, a Dobby who likes to tell bad jokes, or a Dobby who is a musician, it will add a lot of fun to their next voyage. Brook looked at Sorata, reached out and shook his hand. Hi Sorata, my name is Brook, I'm also a pirate, and I'm also a musician. In fact, he wanted Brook to follow them to complete the promise of sailing the Grand Line. It is Brook himself who should decide the next journey, and no one else has the right to decide for him. Chapter 255 Cape of Constraint, Promised Cape, wait for us to go back? Tears. Tears flowed out of Brook's dark eyes and nostrils like a flood that burst a bank, and he cried while laughing and shouting loudly. Be healthy, be healthy, be healthy. I've never been happier than I am today. It's good that I'm alive. When everyone saw Brook who was crying, they all smiled from the bottom of their hearts. Happy for Brook, happy for Laboon, happy for this friendship that has been waiting for nearly 50 years. Although the waiting time may indeed be a bit long, it is really an unforgettable friendship. Sorata walked to the side of the boat, and an old piano flew out of the cabin and landed in front of him. Looking at the piano, a memory flashed in his eyes, then he lowered his head and took a breath. The air went from big to small, and finally turned into a whirlwind, blowing away all the dust on the surface of the piano, and then blowing into the sky and falling into the sea. Everyone looked at Sorata with doubts on their faces. Piano. Does Sorata still play the piano? Everyone looked at Kuina. Kuina shook her head and looked at Sorata. There was also doubt in her eyes, but more concern. At this moment, he seemed to feel the nostalgia he felt in Sorata when he first met Sorata when he was a child. Creak. When the lid of the piano is pulled open, steel bars will automatically pop up beside it to support the lid from falling. Stretching out his hand to slowly touch the black and white keys, the memories in his eyes became more intense. When he was young, he had no money, and he was in an orphanage, so it was impossible for him to enroll in any interest classes, but in the orphanage, there was a very old piano in the room of the old director. He still remembers the scratches of the years on that piano, the tunes that the old dean played for them every time they returned to the orphanage after school, and the old dean who taught them with his hands. The appearance of each syllable in black and white on his keys. So for music, he can't say he likes it very much, but for the only toy when he was a child, piano, he has never left behind. Later, when he went to university, he even joined a piano student union in the university specifically for the piano. Ding, sit down, press the pedals, and try out the scales. Not bad. Advertisement. Sorata nodded, a satisfied smile on her face. This thing has been placed on the sea for nearly 50 years, and it is still quite accurate. It should be maintained by Brooke from time to time. Just like his violin. After all, these musical instruments were left by his partners, and they were his only thoughts during these decades. Brooke. What's the matter? Turning her head, Sorata looked at Brooke, who had gradually stopped crying, and shouted. Come play a song. Congratulations on finding you, and congratulations on getting news from Laboon. Brooke wiped the tears off his face with his hand, took a deep look at Sorata, then opened his mouth and laughed loudly. Okay. Yo ho ho ho, ho ho. After speaking, he walked into the cabin on one side, and took out a black box from it after a while. Boom. Put it on the round table where the coffee mug was previously placed. He first tightened the silk scarf around his neck, straightened the hat on his head, put down his crutches, slowly opened the box, and took out a violin from inside. Then he held the violin in his left hand, put it on his shoulder, and turned to look Sorata. Mr. Sorata, what are we going to play? Everyone's eyes were on Sorata, and after he took the piano, if he wasn't covered in skeletons, he would be a gentleman and a musician at Brooke. Seeing that they were really not joking, they all walked to the middle of the deck, regardless of whether the ground was dirty. They all sat on the floor, looking at them expectantly. Seeing that the audience was ready, Sorata smiled slightly at Brooke. You can play this piece freely. I play Laboon. As he spoke, he pressed the keys. It was a little rusty in the first few seconds, but gradually I found the feeling and became proficient. Brooke looked at Sorata, listened to the music, and his eyes seemed to go back decades ago, back to West Blue, and back to the Twin Gorges at the entrance of the Grand Line. He knew what he was going to sing. Sorata's opening song, as if it was specially created for him and for Laboon, gave him an extremely familiar feeling. It was as if it had been engraved in his mind. Weird. Can you not be familiar with it? This song is one of Sorata's favorite songs in One Piece, except for the exclusive music, Dear Friends, and Binks Wine, on the Merry. A very small song that many people have never heard. It is called, Constraint No Cape, Promised Cape. Advertisement. During college, he often went to the piano room to play alone. Brooke looked at the sky. No matter how dark the sky was, it couldn't stop his sight at this moment. He put the bow on the strings, followed the rhythm of the Sorata piano, and played the first note, then opened his mouth and whispered. Can your eyes also see the beautiful Hanabi shining in the night sky of Shinshu? Woolencloth? Laboon. Since it is the music for Laboon, the lyrics should also belong to Laboon, so Brooke really sang his very familiar song just as Sorata imagined. I don't know if it's in his mind, or if he thought of it after meeting Sorata. It's really strange. I have a dream I can't forget. That time came before my eyes. There is a song that wants to convey. I just miss the old face. And Sorata followed Brooke, singing the laugh of the climax. Listening and listening, everyone joined in. In fact, everyone can sing the climax of this song. Even in death, there are people who want to meet. The original feeling of longing, accompanied by Master Koshiro, Kuina, and many friends in the dojo, has actually faded after so many years of erosion. In the face of the dangers of the Grand Line, although we have tried our best to overcome it, we only left the value of one person's life. I swear to the starry sky, and the promises made by men must be kept. Glancing at each other with Brooke, both of them smiled at the same time, seeing the yearning for the person they miss in each other's eyes. Especially when he grows up, as long as he doesn't think about it deliberately, it is actually very difficult to miss everything on the earth. One day we will meet again in the agreed strait. The singing continued. I want to see that happy face of yours. Yo ho 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 ho, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 Laboon. Yo ho 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 ho, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 Laboon. But Carter's vision brought his spirit back to earth, and brought back his longing for Fat Boy and the old Dean. Brooke misses Laboon and his dead partner, while Sorata misses Fatty and the old Dean. That's why he thought so much after seeing Brooke, thought of this piece, and wanted to play this piece with Brooke. After singing here, everyone can feel Brooke's longing for Laboon, so the mood will rise and fall along with his songs. Last time on the Island of Lights, Carter's illusion actually had an impact on Sorata, as can be seen from his meditations from time to time during this period. Chapter 256 Shadow. The song is over. That longing, like the fog that is everywhere in this sea area, is entwined in this sea area and will not disperse for a long time. Then, like the light on the lost road, it broke through the fog, crossed the space, and appeared on the Twin Gorge. Laboon, who was lying in the sea and basking in the sun, seemed to sense something, and roared to the sky. In this roar, although the thoughts are also conveyed, it is no longer sad, but full of hope. Crocus on the shore didn't know why Laboon suddenly yelled, but he could feel different emotions from Laboon's cry. Turning his head and looking in the direction of the Grand Line, Crocus smiled. Is that you, Mr. Sorata? Did you guys find Brooke? So good. The wind gradually picked up, blowing away the sadness that had been entangled in the Twin Gorges, blowing Crocus's hair and his old heart. Behind him, on the slate table, there was a stack of newspapers and a reward order, and a closer look revealed that they were all news and rewards from Sorata and others. It seems that the old man has been paying attention to the news of Sorata and others. Seeing everyone for a long time did not come back to their senses. Sorata also had to get up and left the piano. Instead of taking the lid off the piano, he intends to take the ancient piano aboard the Liberty. And he also heard his answer from Brooks singing. As he said in the song, he will definitely fulfill the promise of a man, so even if he is the only one left, if he can go out, he will continue to sail with the expectations of the entire team of the Rumba Pirates, and then circle the Grand Line to truly realize the oath with Laboon. So, Brook, come be my partner. What? The sudden invitation brought everyone back to their senses in an instant. They all stared at Sorata in surprise, and then seemed to be relieved. They always lacked a musician on board, didn't they? Ha ha. Then everyone stared at Brook expectantly. Advertisement, companion. Brook looked at Sorata and saw that he was smiling, not joking. And he seemed to feel that Sorata had made this decision for a long time. He was slightly taken aback, then put down the violin in his hand, closed the lid of the box containing the violin, and then turned his head to Sorata and said solemnly, "Thank you, Mr. Sorata, for the invitation, but I'm afraid I will disappoint you. I can't have S*X with you, of the ship." "Why?" Sorata looked at Brook, and before he could answer, she calmly asked, "Is it because of your shadow?" As he spoke, he looked down at Brook. "You knew already?" Brook glanced at his feet, then raised his head, and said seriously, "My shadow was taken away by a guy I first met a few years ago. Since then, I can no longer appear in the sun, because appearing as me at the time of your death, you don't want one of your companions to be unable to see the sun. The me at this time, it's your drag, hee." Sorata opened her mouth and chuckled, "Isn't it just a shadow? If you lose it, just go and get it back." There is really no shadow. At this moment, everyone gathered around, and they were all surprised when they saw that there was really no shadow under Brook's feet. But then quickly put away the surprise, just like what Sorata said, as long as it is artificial and the shadow is lost, it will be fine to get it back. "I can't get it back. I have been looking for the island that took my shadow and the person who took my shadow all these years, but after so long, there is no clue. And that guy is very powerful. I was no match at all at the time." Having said that, he paused slightly, glanced at everyone, and said seriously, "Although I don't know how strong you are, but judging by your age, you can't be that guy's opponent, so leave me alone." "How can this work? We promised Laboon that we will let you go back and meet it." "What will happen to Laboon if you die here?" Aluo looked at Brook, said seriously, and then his tone became relaxed. "Also, don't look down on us just because we are young. You must know that the reward for our entire team is more than 5 billion. Although he didn't want to tell outsiders about the bounty, but now Brook obviously didn't believe them, so he could only use the bounty to convince him. 5 billion. Sure enough, Brook was surprised when he heard the reward. Although his pupils were pitch black, everyone could still feel his shock. Yes. 5 billion. Speaking of which, Arlo pointed to Sorata and said, "Our captain, silver-haired Sorata, offered a reward of 2.5 billion berry, a man who made the world government and marine completely helpless. He just killed an admiral class in the world government not long ago, saying maybe someone who surpassed admiral." At this point, he paused slightly, remembering that Brook was from 50 years ago, and continued to him, "Admiral, you know. Advertisement, it is the representative of the highest combat power in marine. Sorata first defeated an admiral and led 5 vice-admirals, and then fought with Kuina." As he spoke, he pointed to Kuina and said proudly, "We defeated 2 ambushes set by Admiral with Kuina and killed 1. So smart." Brook kept scanning Sorata and Kuina's eyes. No matter how they looked at it, it was impossible for them to defeat Admiral. As a combatant, or vice-captain, of the famous Rumba Pirates 50 years ago, he still knew Admiral. "Although I haven't really seen a top-level powerhouse make a move, but if you can be the highest combat power in marine, even a fool can't confuse Admiral-level characters with ordinary people." "What?" At this moment, Sorata and Kuina turned their heads to look at the depths of the thick fog in the distance at the same time. A flash of lightning appeared in Kuina's eyes, and a red light flashed in Sorata's eyes. Then the two looked at each other, the corners of their mouths turned up, and there was a smile on their faces. "All right." Sorata turned to look at Brook, and said with a smile, "It's just a shadow, I'll get it back for you later." After he finished speaking, he glanced at the Liberty below, the blue-silver mist in his eyes turned slightly, and a cold light appeared. Then he retracted his gaze and looked in the direction he had glanced at just now. Seeing Sorata's appearance, everyone knew that something was coming, and seeing Sorata's appearance, it seemed to be a ghost island that had taken Brook's shadow, so they followed Sorata and looked into the depths of the dense fog in the distance. On the Liberty, in the cabin, a translucent ghost is freezing here. In the pupils that were originally devoid of any emotion, now there was a human panic. He saw me, that was. Familiar rooms, familiar beds, familiar girls in a castle on a fast-moving island. It's just that the girl at this time, instead of the previous calm, was full of panic. She opened her mouth wide and said loudly in horror, "Impossible, impossible, impossible." She said while shaking her head, Master Perona, what's wrong with you? What's impossible?" Beside the bed, a doll looked at the girl's frightened look and asked quickly. The sound of the doll woke the girl up and brought her back to her senses. She calmed down the spirit that was almost collapsed by Sorata's glance, and quickly floated out of the window, and floated towards the center of the castle, the highest castle. She wanted Moria to stop the ship quickly, because the person who came this time was not someone they could provoke. Ordinary pirates don't understand what kind of existence a pirate with a bounty of 2.5 billion is, but she grew up with Moria. How could she not know how terrifying the person who was offered a bounty of 2.5 billion by the world government is? 5th in the world. The first 4 are 4 emperors. Chapter 257 The True Face of Ghost Island, Moria's Pirates. But now I found out, it was too late. If she had prevented Sorata and Kuina from discovering the thriller bark earlier, they might be hiding in this sea of thick fog. It would take a while for Sorata to find them, but now. Let's go. Let's go straight there. Sorata withdrew his gaze and walked towards the Liberty first. Behind him, the piano seemed to be dragged by a hand, floating in the sky, silently following him. Everyone has long been familiar with Sorata's ability, so they also followed him to Liberty. But it was the first time for Brook to see Sorata's abilities, so a shocked expression appeared on his pale skull face. Brook, follow if you want to get back the shadow. As for whether you can get on my boat or be my partner, we will talk about it later. Just when Brook was in a daze, Sorata's voice came from Liberty. After hearing this, Brook was dazed for a moment, then picked up the violin case on the round table and his crutches, glanced at the ship again, at the many skeletons in the cabin, turned around and jumped onto the Liberty. The moment he jumped off, Brook set his eyes on Sorata and said embarrassedly, "Mr. Sorata, can you take my boat away? Although the boat is broken, my partners are still on it. I don't want to leave. Even if they want to leave, I have to find a place for them to bury themselves in peace." "Okay." Sorata nodded, then turned to look at Adao. "Definitely no problem." Adao made an "okay" gesture, and then said, "With the power of our ship, to pull this huge ship, as long as the electric system is used, there is no problem at all. It's fine." As Sorata thought, two huge iron chains rose from the cabins on both sides of the Liberty, suspended like a giant snake in the air, and then danced left and right to hook the bow of the giant sailing boat next to it. After finishing, Sorata withdrew her gaze, turned to look at Brook, and said with a light smile, "Don't worry now." Don't worry, Mr. Sorata, you are amazing." At this moment, Adao in the cab pressed the switch of the motor, and immediately the huge propeller behind the Liberty started to spin rapidly. While stirring the water, it also provided the forward momentum for the Liberty, allowing the Liberty to move forward quickly. Hulala! There was the sound of iron chains rubbing, and then the iron chains straightened, pulling the giant sailboat forward together. Advertisement. After a while, the people at the bow of the Liberty saw a long black shadow appearing in the thick fog ahead. The distance was close, and everyone saw that this black shadow turned out to be a moving island. What? Looking up, when I saw the sail that was so large that it covered the entire island, and saw the skull on it, I realized that the legendary Ghost Island turned out to be a ship. Walked to the teeth of the island like a huge mouth. Seeing that the island did not open its mouth, Sorata knew that the Moria guy had found them. Now that he knew who he was, it was obvious that the guy didn't want him to go to the island. "You won't let me go?" Staring at the huge tooth gate in front of him, a cold light flashed in Sorata's eyes. Dao Ming. The crisp sound of the knife, in the silent and dark sea under the thick fog, is particularly penetrating, as if resounding through the whole world. Accompanied by the cold blade light, two huge crescent-shaped silver-gray slashes buzzed, one left and one right, piercing through the air, spanning the space, and appearing in front of Juko instantly. When Juko didn't react at all, the slash made a pop sound, as if cutting on tofu, directly cutting through Juko's teeth. Boom! After the knife light passed, the middle part of the giant gate fell directly into the sea. Obviously, this gate cannot stop Sorata and the others. The Liberty continued to move forward, breaking through the giant gate and splashing waves, and stopped behind the giant gate, in a U-shaped harbor like a person choking on his mouth. "Moria, come out and meet me." Sorata is not King Luffy, he will not go slowly to find Moria, so he yelled as soon as the boat stopped. The sound was not loud, but it clearly spread throughout the entire island, and of course, it also reached the ears of Moria in the highest castle in the middle of the island, and his three subordinates. "It's coming, it's really coming." The little pink-haired girl, also known as Perona, looked at Moria with fear in her eyes. Perona, one of Moria's three monsters, the commander of animal zombies and scary zombies. Also known as Princess Mononoke. It is an ability user who eats the ghost fruit. It can separate its soul from the main body, but the main body will also become an inactive and unconscious body due to the loss of the soul. At this time, the main body is extremely vulnerable. Advertisement. When Sorata glanced at Liberty earlier, she spotted Perona's ghost. I don't know what her ghost is, but it can span such a long distance. In the original book, it seems that Luffy and others saw Moria's trapped treasure chest before they entered the Devil's Triangle. It's amazing that Perona's ghost can fly to such a long distance. Moreover, his ghost can also make the contacted person instantly lose their fighting power. If it hadn't been for meeting the nemesis, Usopp, in the desperate situation in the original book, I am afraid that Luffy and others would have to be completely wiped out here in Moria. However, it is also possible that the development of Perona fruit is not enough. The god-level fruit met someone who can develop it, and only showed the initial appearance of the fruit, just like Fox. Being able to make one's own body transparent, and making people and objects in contact with the body also transparent. A complete villain, 10 times death is not an exaggeration. If Perona develops the fruit well, maybe Luffy and others will really be wiped out. The pointed-nosed man in mesh clothes and small sunglasses is named Hogback. This guy is very horny, and he often runs to inspect goods in order to find his ideal bride. He once saved many patients with miraculous operations, and gained the reputation and status that a doctor should have. 10 years ago, the death of Shin Duoli made him devastated, and later he became Gecko Moria's companion on the condition of resurrecting Shin Duoli. Although this guy is not a commander, he can choose any zombie he wants from his master Moria to command. This guy is the commander of the island, zombie soldiers and zombie generals. The other two people standing beside Moria are the other two of the three monsters. In fact, this guy is a bad doctor who thinks money is better than saving lives. Another man in a black leather jacket with a lion-like face, long blonde hair, and a white hat is the last of the three monsters, Absalom. A transparent person who ate Sanji's most desired, transparent fruit. Although he resurrected Zinduoli with Zinduoli's body and the shadow obtained from Moria. But Shin Duoli at this time is no longer Shin Duoli in his memory, but a zombie, but he doesn't see it. This guy just likes Shin Duoli's appearance. He is essentially a villain, a pervert. It's not that maybe, it should be completely wiped out. Without the restrained Perona, none of Luffy and others can stop him unless Luffy awakens armament Haki. Chapter 258. If you see something bad is going on, run away. Master Moria, what should I do? Absalom also looked at the huge figure standing in the middle, with fear emerging from the depths of his pupils. 2.5 billion berry, the entire pirate group has a reward of more than 5 billion berry. In the first half of this grand line, who is the opponent of the silver-haired gang? Some time ago, I saw this guy kill K-Lock, who is also a Shichibukai. How can this not make him panic? If it is said that his master Moria can draw with Clockadar, he believes it, because he has never seen the picture of the top strongman making a move, but if his master Moria can kill Clockadar, it is impossible to kill him. Do not believe. You must know that Lock Doll is Logia. Logia, known as the strongest among the three series of fruits, is completely invincible. He couldn't think of any kind of powerful attack that could hurt Logia, let alone kill a Logia-capable person. This is why they were so panicked when they knew that the silver hair had arrived. They have never been to New World, except that Perona may be picked up by Moria from Wano-kuni. The other two are partners in the first half of Grand Line, the Paradise. And it is impossible for Moria to tell them about the New World, so they have no idea that this world has the power of Haki. They don't know, but Moria does. So for the arrival of silver hair, Moria is also flustered. You must know that he has long since lost the ambition he had when fighting Kaido for hegemony decades ago. He returned to the Grand Line from New World and hid in this dark triangle of the devil because his partners were all dead. Only after he died in the battle will he be allowed to hide. His ambition, his spirit, disappeared decades ago. The death of his companion was a huge blow to him, and even made him start to think that the absurd theory of, because you are alive, you will lose. That's why he goes around to snatch the shadows of people who enter this sea area, hoping that one day he can create a zombie army that is not afraid of pain and death at all, so that he can have the opportunity to seek revenge from Kaido. But this is just imagination. He has been in the New World, he is not ignorant of the power of Kaido, and it is not ignorant of the existence of Haki, and Wano-kuni is also rich in sea stone that restrains devil fruit. How could he avenge him? So this may be the reason why he is depressed and too lazy to practice Haki. But now people are calling to the door. Advertisement. It is impossible for him to escape with his men. Although he knew that Sorata was very powerful, strong enough to kill Logia's Clockadar, but the last trace of dignity in his heart did not allow him to escape. So he looked at the edge of the island in the distance. In that round body, Haki's violent side was revealed for the first time in front of the three subordinates. He straightened his back, stepped on the ground of the castle with both feet, and then rushed directly towards the wall in front of him. Boom! A hole was punched out of the thick wall of the castle by him, and his body was thrown down quickly, in the process of falling. A serious, yet somewhat gentle sharp voice entered the ears of Absalom and Perona. If you see something bad is going on, run away. After saying these words, his body fell under the castle with a bang, and amidst the loud noise, the whole island seemed to be trembling. Then he stared ahead, his pupils were solemn, and his own shadow split from under his body, and then got into another huge castle beside him. There is the strongest corpse he has found in these years, although it may not be finished, it doesn't matter so much now. Roar! As soon as the shadow entered the castle next to it, a sound resounded throughout the island, even far away from the island, a huge roar sounded like a roar from ancient times. Boom! The wall collapsed. A huge one, about the size of a castle, was covered in scars, and some of the scars had been stitched up, but more giant double-horned titans that hadn't been stitched up appeared beside Moria. Even Little Oz out? In the huge hole in the castle that was hit by Moria, the three of Perona stood there, looking anxiously at Moria below. No, I'm going to help. Saying that, Perona turned around, not to run away, but to find a safe place to put her body. After her soul leaves her body is very fragile, so every time she activates energy, she has to hide in a place where the enemy cannot find it. Among the three weirdos, she has been with Moria the longest. She has followed Moria since she was a child, and has always regarded him as her father, and she respects and loves Moria very much. So now when facing danger, how could she escape? I'll go too. Advertisement. Absalom glanced at Hobak. His face was more serious than ever before, and then the figure disappeared in the same place. It's not that he disappeared, but his fruit ability turned him into a transparent person. It can also be said to be invisible. Although Moria told them to play by ear and run away if they can't do anything, isn't it the most desperate time yet? Moria usually treats his subordinates really well, and Absalom also sincerely regards Moria as the most important captain, boss, and partner. So it is impossible to escape now. But Hobak is different. His relationship with Moria, although he is Moria's subordinate on the surface, but because of his special nature, they are completely cooperative. It's impossible to say how loyal he is to Moria. So when Moria left, she didn't say anything to him about running away. Because Moria also knows that when danger comes, this guy is definitely the first one to run. No, seeing that Absalom and Perona had left, Hobak's eyes lit up, and he glanced at Moria and little Ozzy who were fading away below, turned around, and walked into the castle. He really wanted to run away, not help Moria. Although his strength is rubbish, it does not prevent him from knowing the horror of silver hair. Due to his superb medical skills, he traveled to many places when he was young, even the New World. From a few words, even if he has never seen silver hair, he can still know how terrifying the silver-haired guy who can kill K-Lock doll is. This is not a loss of heart at all. Little Ozzy, even with the existence that Perona and Absalom can rival. So after no one was around, he turned around and ran away without hesitation. There is a boat behind the island. He is going to the center of the castle, takes his beloved woman, and flies away. But whether he can really escape depends on whether Sorata will let him go. Man, what a snobbish creature. Some people, when a disaster strikes, can help their partners regardless of life and death. And some people usually look like good partners, but when the disaster strikes, they fly separately when the disaster is imminent. In fact, there is nothing wrong with this choice, everyone has the right to choose. After all, people and people. The difference is still quite big. Chapter 259 Zombies and Ghosts. Mr. Sorata, the Moria you called just now, could it be the guy who cut off my shadow? As soon as he landed on the mossy rocks, Brooke couldn't wait to ask. Okay. Sorata nodded, turned her head to look at the countless deserted graves on the left and right, and smiled faintly when she heard the clicking sound coming from inside. This guy is a shadow fruit-capable user, able to cut off a person's shadow for his own use. Just as Sorata finished speaking, there was suddenly the sound of heavy objects hitting the coffin from the Wushuang desolate tomb on the left and right, and there were countless low-pitched roars from the tomb bag. Timid people who come here for the first time will be scared by this weird sound and dare not move forward. Except for Brooke, who didn't know why, looking at the grave bag with fear, Sorata and the others didn't change their expressions, and even showed interest. Come on. Looking at a tomb that was about to burst, Sorata turned to Brooke and said, look closely, you can see where your shadow has gone. As he spoke, he took the lead and headed towards the grave. As it approached, with a bang, a corpse with a rotting upper body and wrapped in bandages emerged from the grave bag. Zombie, 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 zombie. When Brooke saw the corpse, he took a step back subconsciously and roared loudly with a trembling tone. If it wasn't for his already pale face, he would definitely be pale at this moment. Snapped. At this moment, Awa slapped Brooke's shoulder with his big fat hand, pulling him forward. Haha. I said you be asterisk 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 D, aren't you a skeleton yourself? You're still afraid of this stuff? What? After hearing this, Brooke stopped screaming for an instant, and then showed a look of sudden realization. Yes. Am I not a skeleton? Why am I afraid of zombies? At this moment, Sorata had already fixed the zombie in front of her, and turned her head to motion for Brooke to come forward. Ahua pulled Brooke and quickly stepped forward, surrounded the zombie with everyone, his eyes lit up, and he started to appreciate it. People who don't know, think they have seen something amazing. Advertisement at this moment, more groundbreaking sounds sounded around, but no one paid attention to the surrounding sounds, and all looked at the zombies held by Sorata, waiting for Sorata's explanation. Without saying much, Sorata reached out and took out a packet of salt from the dimension bag. In a moment of thought, the salt bag opened automatically, and then a white ribbon composed of salt grains flew out of it, and quickly flew into the zombie's Zhong's mouth. As soon as the salt flew into the zombie's mouth, Sorata gave up the restriction on the zombie. The zombie opened its mouth and roared, then raised its head, and a black shadow emerged from his throat. Sorata reached out her hand, covered with the black armament hockey, and grabbed the black shadow. Boom! After losing its shadow, the zombie instantly collapsed to the ground as if it had lost all its power, splashing faint dust. Look! Turning to Brooke, Sorata held out her hand. Everyone looked surprised at the black shadow constantly twisting in Sorata's hand. This is the shadow, it's amazing. Ahua pushed his glasses, looked at the shadow, then glanced at the limp corpse on the ground, and said, so that fellow Moria took the shadow to create these zombies? But what's the use of these zombies? It's just a little better than ordinary people, and some rotten corpses are not as good as ordinary people. What he was talking about was the zombies surrounding everyone at the moment. Boom! Turning around and kicking a zombie walking behind him, Awa continued. This thing moves slowly, why don't they recruit the crew after making it? This guy is completely putting the cart before the horse. Let go of your hand. Let the shadow in your hand fly out of the island, and fly out of the island. Sorata doesn't know who this shadow is, and he can't distinguish between good and evil. After all, this thing is not a soul, so let it go. Raising his head, looking at the increasing number of zombies around him, Sorata chuckled. Actually, I can't say that. If this thing finds more corpses and shadows of strong people, it will still be very powerful. Speaking of this, he himself couldn't help laughing. Haha. Among ordinary people, he is still very powerful. After all, he is not afraid of pain or death, isn't he? As soon as the words fell, Sorata's eyes narrowed, and an outward thrust centered on the group of them, and went outward rapidly. With the sound of bang bang bang, the surrounding zombies were directly rushed out. Advertisement, come on. That Moria guy is coming, and Brooke, your shadow is coming too. Oh, my shadow? When Brooke heard Sorata's words, he turned his head suddenly, following Sorata's gaze, looking at the castle in the distance. Eyes looked forward. At this time, everyone could already hear the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground, and the sound of footsteps must be Moria. Just when everyone was about to act, they saw a large number of white ghosts suddenly appearing from their left. As the ghost flew, it let out a strange laugh, instantly attracted everyone's attention. Ghost, 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 ghost. Sorata and the others didn't move, but Brooke was obviously afraid of this thing, and his reaction was stronger than when he saw the zombie just now. He sat down on the ground and kept backing away, obviously terrified. Sorata glanced at Brooke, and a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. This guy is lonely and afraid, and always wants to find a sense of presence. He can sense that if Brooke wants to say how scared he is, it's not always true. There must be fear, but he definitely doesn't. Such an exaggeration. No one on their boat can accompany this guy crazy, don't know if he will still be on his boat. After all, the strength of their group is completely different from that of Wong Luffy and his group. Everyone's knowledge and the confidence to face anyone with the courage to go to sea are not found in other pirate groups. They are a group, as long as he does not show fear himself, his partners will not show fear. Because they believe that as long as there is Sorata, everything is trivial. And Sorata's performance along the way did not disappoint his partners. Pushing horizontally all the way gave them an infinite sense of security. He didn't know if it was right to do so, but he couldn't put his partners in danger, so he could only try to improve everyone's strength. When strength and self-confidence can match everyone's ambitions, all difficulties in this world will no longer exist in front of everyone. So if Brooke does get on their boat, he'll have to get used to it. Ha 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 ha. Ah Wah couldn't help laughing out loud when he saw Brooke's embarrassed look. I said, Brooke, have you really stayed here for 50 years? Aren't they just artificial ghosts? Are you so afraid? As he said that, he turned around, straightened his waist, and took a step forward, facing these ghosts alone. Look at me. Chapter 260. At this moment, these ghosts seemed to have sensed Ahua's provocation. One of them split out and flew directly towards Ah Wah. Ah Wah stretched out his hand and slapped the ghost with his palm, just like slapping a mosquito. Seeing Ah Wah coming forward alone, except for a strange smile on the corner of Sorata's mouth, no one reacted too much. Because everyone didn't feel the slightest danger from this white ghost. Even Kuina crossed her arms, squinted, and stared at Ah Wah with a smile on her face. What? No entity. Ah Wah was taken aback, and the hand that was shot stopped in the air. I saw his hand clapping on the ghost, as if clapping in the air. And the ghost also passed through Ahua's hand in an instant, then rushed towards his chest, passed through his body in an instant, and emerged from his back. Ah Wah stopped at the same place, and then his whole body seemed to lose his vitality in an instant. His body was trembling, and he knelt down on the ground with a bang. With his hands on the ground and his head lowered, he exuded an extremely negative aura, and even opened his mouth to say, I'm just a worm, a maggot, I really shouldn't be wasting air in this world. This kind of talk. Everyone looked at Ah Wah, the smiles on their faces froze, and then Chi-Chi looked up at the ghost in the sky. A trace of surprise flashed across their faces. What is this thing? To be able to subdue Ah Wah in an instant and make him say that kind of thing. Although this thing is not dangerous to everyone, it is better to give them a dangerous guy than to die in front of their partners. So when facing the ghost, after seeing Ah Hua's fate, everyone dared not go forward for a while. At this moment, Ah Wah woke up. After all, his strength is there, so even if he is penetrated by Perona's negative ghost, he can wake up quickly. Get up, or continue to lie on the ground. He was ashamed this time. Frozen, Ah Wah trembled all over, not from fear or excitement, but from anger. Advertisement. He knew all about the memory just now, and he could even imagine that in the future, these two guys, a Luo and a Dao, would laugh at him mercilessly for this matter. Damn, careless. Raising his head, a flash of anger flashed in Ahua's pupils, white hair instantly covered his body, he raised his head and roared, his body instantly turned into a red-eyed rabbit. With a kick of both legs on the ground, with a bang, the ground collapsed, and his body was like a sharp sword out of its sheath, heading towards the ghost in the sky that made him look ugly. The embarrassment has come out. What he can do now is to tear up the thing that made him embarrassing. Hee. The ghosts looked at Ah Wah, and all laughed and gathered towards him, as if they were not afraid of the violent aura emanating from Ahua's body after his transformation. However, Ah Wah who is prepared and Ah Wah who is not prepared are completely two people. The huge rabbit paws were instantly covered with black armament hockey. Looking at the surrounding ghosts, Ah Hua's body was hovering in the air, and the black rabbit paws slapped over without hesitation. Puff, the moment the ghost touched Ahua's palm, it was as if the water polo met a high-speed flying steel block, crazily twisting, deforming, squeezing, and then bursting directly. Afterwards, Ah Wah kept moving, as if he was really swat a fly. With a few slaps, he slapped away the remaining ghosts. After shooting the ghosts away, Ahua's eyes became even redder, and he stared at a figure hiding behind a tree in the distance. He couldn't see it on the ground, but now in the air, that ghost-like figure, in his eyes, was like a light in the dark night, which instantly attracted his hatred. Behind the tree. In the state of Perona's soul, she only dared to show her head and look out. After leaving the castle earlier, she quickly found a place where no one could find her, hid her body, and then her soul flew out of her body. Because she can fly, she came here one step ahead of Moria and met Sorata and others. She dare not go there, even though she is in the state of soul and is completely immune to the physical state, but because of the state of soul, her perception is much stronger than that of the body. She felt that Sorata and the others were like the sea, and he was a fallen leaf on the sea. Although Sorata and the others did not exude any aura, the power hidden deep in the soul made her dare not go forward one step. Even standing behind this tree, trembled slightly in the soul. Especially in the crowd in the distance, that blue-haired figure gave her the feeling that she was born to restrain her. She could feel a destructive force from her body, even if it didn't penetrate her body, but she didn't dare to look directly at it. On the contrary, the silver-haired figure who frightened him first, really looked like a mortal at this moment, showing no breath at all. But she didn't dare to treat him as a mortal. Up to now, she still remembered the pair of god-like eyes that she saw through the ghost earlier. At this moment, as if she had sensed something, a dangerous breath instantly filled her whole soul, making her whole body icy cold. Advertisement. He raised his head abruptly and looked towards the sky. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened wide, her throat seemed to be stuck by something, she couldn't make a sound, and horror even climbed up her entire face in an instant. What did she see? She saw that the fat figure that was instantly killed by her ghost just now turned into a huge rabbit, and her ghost was scattered with a few slaps. What kind of power is that? Looking at the ability shining black on Ahua's claws, Perona's pupils subconsciously contracted, and fear emerged from the depths of her heart. At this moment, Ahua's blood-red eyes looked over and met hers. Run! She felt Ahua's undisguised killing intent, as well as the coldness of his frozen soul. But, at this moment, she was like a little white rabbit meeting a prehistoric beast. She trembled all over, and her thinking slowed down with fear. She was in a ghost state, as if she had lost her strength at this moment, and she couldn't move at all. Whoosh! She was stunned. Ahua would not give her a chance to escape. Ahua's huge body stomped on the air and quickly moved towards Perona. With a bang, it landed in front of Perona's soul, making a huge hole in the ground. The huge force caused the surrounding gravel to fly around, and even made the ground here shake. It's you, it's you, it's you. Awa leaned over to stare at Perona, and opened his mouth, completely looking like a behemoth. In his blood-red eyes, there was a bloodthirsty red light. It's you, who made me make a fool of myself in front of my friends. Go to hell. The fist that was shining with black light, from top to bottom, went straight down. Compared with Awa at this time, Perona, who was about the same size as his fist, slammed down hard. If this blow is real, even if Perona is in the state of soul at this time, she might die. After all, her state at this time was bestowed by devil fruit, and her fruit is only a rudimentary now, and has not been developed much. How could it be possible to take over Ahua's fists that contain anger and are full of armament hockey? Chapter 261 Moria. But at this critical moment, a black shadow unknowingly appeared behind Perona's soul. Moria, who was still far away, seemed to be teleported. He suddenly switched positions with this black shadow, and appeared directly behind Perona, and then without stopping, as if he had been prepared, he stretched out his fist and punched Ahua's fist. What? Ahua looked at the tall and strange monster that suddenly appeared in front of him, much taller than his height at this time, and was a little startled, then changed the direction of his fist, and went to meet the fist that was dropped by the monster. Whoever you are, if you want to appease Laozi's anger, go to hell with me. Boom! When the two fists collided, there was a strong noise and impact. Hey, is this the strength? Awa spoke contemptuously, staring at the strange man who looked like a bat and looked like a big tumbler in front of him, wearing black leather armor and black gloves. A flash of understanding flashed in his eyes. You guy is Moria. I thought you were so good. It turns out that you are just a guy who is not useful. Little devil, don't be too rampant. When Laozi was hanging around in the sea, you were not born yet. Even so, Moria didn't really underestimate the guy in front of him. Staring at the layer of black energy covering the opponent's hand, his pupils shrank for a while. No wonder you can break Perona's ghost, armament hockey? I was not born when you were famous, but... Ahua's blood flow accelerated, pouring into his arm in an instant, causing his arm to swell in an instant. He stared at Moria's eyes, and said arrogantly, the old guy has been around for so long, only with this little strength, he only dares to hide here to make you a completely weak zombie. I think you should die early. As soon as the words fell, he exerted all his strength with his arms, and with a bang, he pressed against Moria's huge body and kept moving backwards. Can't stop. Moria stared at Ahua, feeling the great power coming from her fist, and frowned. This is still on the silver-haired boat, a completely unremarkable guy. If it were silver-haired, how powerful would it be? He couldn't imagine it at all. Advertisement boom. Ahua punched hard, and punched directly through Moria's body, but he was not happy about piercing Moria, but turned around suddenly, and punched behind him. It turned out that at some point, Moria had exchanged positions with a shadow behind Awa, and the one in front of her was just an afterimage left after the shadow disappeared. Once again piercing through the shadow behind him, Ahuahon looked around and shouted loudly, Dangtang Shichibukai, do you only dare to hide in the east? Little ghost, I will let you know today that even though I am old, I am not something that a kid like you can neglect, hee hee. At this moment, his shadow was in little Ozzy's body, so he couldn't use most of the moves, so he could only use Shadow Warrior, constantly changing positions, to chat with the guy in front of him. Boom, another punch shattered a shadow. Ahua's blood-red eyes gradually regained his composure. Although this guy is troublesome now, he seems to be delaying time. I'll see what you can come up with. In the distance, Perona's soul, as if it had found its backbone the moment Moria came out, instantly woke up from Ahua's beast-like deterrence, and fled to the distance in a hurry. Seeing that Moria had nothing to do with Ahua, she could only stand aside and worry, but there was no way. At this moment, she suddenly found that the surroundings were quiet, and the fighting figure of Ahua and Moria in the distance seemed to be a bubble, and there was no more sound. What happened? Perona's heart, which had just escaped from Ahua's fist, lifted up again in an instant. What are you thinking? Silently, a white figure appeared beside her with a lazy tone. The moment the sound appeared, the surrounding sounds appeared in Perona's soul again, but she didn't dare to move. That guy is here, that guy is here. Although she is in a soul state at this time, she feels that she is not standing on the ground, but standing in the dark starry sky. The guy next to him who didn't have any breath before is now the owner of this starry sky, and a single thought can crush her. Oh, are you here? Sorata's eyes moved away from Perona's body, and looked at the behemoth rushing towards Ahua quickly, and a decaying zombie full of sharp aura on the behemoth's shoulder. Ryoma. The deep voice made Perona beside him tremble. Advertisement as a swordsman. When seeing the legendary swordsman turned into a zombie in this way, to be honest, Sorata was still a little angry. Sorata, the sword on the waist of that silhouette on the Titan's shoulder, why do I feel that it looks like your Zon Kong? At this time, Kuina came over with the crowd, looked at the rotting corpse on Titan's shoulder, and asked, and this corpse, I don't feel like an ordinary person either. Ha ha. Sorata raised the corners of his mouth and chuckled, of course not an ordinary person. Both the knife and the corpse were stolen from Wanokuni by Moria. Wanokuni. Hearing that it came from Wanokuni, I deliberately became more interested. Then he seemed to think of something, a flash of thunder flashed in his eyes, and he said in a serious tone, it can't be the legendary, dragon-slaying sword hero Ryoma, and the famous sword, Autumn Water. Okay. Seeing Sorata nodding, the anger in Kuina's eyes became more intense, and tiny electric arcs appeared on her body. The moment the arc appeared, Perona trembled even more. She felt that he was not in the world at this moment, but in hell. Despair instantly filled her soul, completely robbing her of her ability to think. Bang bang bang. With the addition of Little Ozzy and zombies made of dragon horse corpses, Awa instantly fell into a disadvantage. Seeing the change in the battle situation, Aluo and Adao also quickly joined the battlefield. Although everyone usually has a posture of disobedience, when one of them encounters danger, the remaining two will not hesitate dash to help, and even help block deadly attacks. This is a partner, this is friendship. With the addition of Aluo and Adao, Moria, who was originally in the upper hand, turned around in an instant. Even with the help of Little Ozzy's huge body and the attack of Ryoma Zombie, it can't stop the tacit cooperation between the three of Ahua and their gradually deepening armament hockey. Let's talk about this Moria guy. The development of the fruit is actually not weak, it is these decades of lying flat that made his body completely useless. In terms of physical fitness, he can't compare with the three of Ahua now, so he can only rely on his fruit ability to Joe Zon. You must know that the three of Ahua have armament hockey, Aluo is even more knowledgeable, and Dark Hound. So this guy's defeat is only a matter of time. Chapter 262 Transparent Fruit. Brook watched the battle on the field, then looked at Sorata and the others with a calm face, and finally knew how powerful Sorata and the others were. Although Sorata didn't make a move, just because of that silent, one step, as if teleporting across space, it opened his eyes. As for Kuina, just now he felt the thunder aura emanating from Kuina. He, who was already cold and gloomy, could feel Kuina's strength even more. Hi, Brook. At this moment, Sorata suddenly turned his head to look at Brook, and then pointed to the dragon horse on the edge of the battle. Did you see that zombie? I see, what's the matter? Brook glanced at Ryoma and said doubtfully, there's a familiar aura. It's good to be familiar with it. Sorata picked up the wine gourd, raised his head and took a sip, and then said, go. That corpse is your shadow, go and get it back yourself. Yo ho ho ho. After hearing this, Brook's eyes lit up. He stared at the corpse of Ryoma in the distance and laughed, and he said how he felt a very familiar aura in this corpse. It turned out to be his shadow. At this moment, Ryoma also seemed to sense something, and looked at Brook instantly with blue eyes. The eyes of the two met in the air, as if swords were interlacing, and the sound of swords that only swordsmen could hear sounded in the air. That's right, Brook is actually a swordsman, and a very good one at that. Otherwise Moria wouldn't have stuffed his shadow into Ryoma's corpse. Yo ho ho ho. Laughing, Brook quickly rushed towards Ryoma, and Ryoma's bewildered eyes seemed to recover a sliver of clarity, as if he had sensed the aura of the same kind, and instantly gave up the battlefield and rushed towards Brook. Clang, clang. The crutches turned out to be not crutches, but a stick sword. The two rushed together and fought instantly. Sorata wasn't worried about Brook at all. Although Brook at this time is not as powerful as Zoro in the original book, with his characteristics of the fruit of the underworld and his sensitivity to the soul, he should be able to win the battle with his own shadow easily. Even if they can't win, aren't they still standing here? Brook, although his body became a skeleton, which gave him a body so light that he could run on the sea, but it also made his body lose the strength brought by his muscles. Advertisement therefore, he usually fights with superb swordsmanship, the speed endowed by his light body, and the cold air endowed by the fruit of the underworld. And the biggest disadvantage of losing the body is that this guy will never be able to awaken armament Haki. As for observation Haki, this guy hasn't awakened for 50 years, so it seems that he really doesn't have this talent. It's also possible that he didn't know the probability of Haki at all, so he didn't awaken. If Brook does get on his ship, he can focus on training his reflexes in the future to see if this guy can awaken observation Haki. After all, based on fruit alone, no matter how powerful he is, he can't become a top powerhouse. Moreover, his fruit is still a special fruit of the underworld, which is very effective for the soul, but for the entity, it can only use the cold air brought by the underworld. But if this guy can awaken the fruit, then I don't know what it will be like then. Become the real master of the underworld? Take the whole world to fight? If so, it's pretty scary to think about. After all, as long as it is a living thing, there is no one who is not afraid of death and hell. Shaking his head, Sorata withdrew his gaze from Brook, and his gaze fell on the main battlefield between the three of Ahua and Moria. I saw the huge little Oz not only had a lot of wounds on his body during this battle, one arm was even cut off by a Dao. Only a layer of skin remained, which fell aside, looking shocking. Also, at this time, the three of Ahua, even with the blessing of armament Haki alone, may not be the opponent of Moria at full strength, but when the three are combined, it is not as simple as 1+1. When they solved little Ozzy and Moria lost, it was an instant thing. What? At this moment, Sorata suddenly turned his head to look to the right of the battlefield. Others may not be able to see it, but in the eyes of the knowledgeable Sorata and Kuina, Absalom, who has become a transparent person and is creeping towards the battlefield, is like a light in the dark, extremely conspicuous. Judging from the direction this guy is moving, it is obvious that he is going to sneak attack on the edge of the battlefield and pose the greatest threat to Moria, Arlo, who keeps firing cold shots. What this guy eats is a transparent fruit, not an invisible fruit, but the sides of his body become transparent. Of course the eyes can't see, they are transparent people after all, but for people with keen perception or awakened knowledge, it is not difficult to find him. After all, it is impossible for a person's breath to disappear as he becomes transparent. If the breath disappears, it is not a transparent fruit, but an invisible fruit with space attributes. Advertisement. Unfortunately, he is not. So after he walked into Arlo's perception of danger, Arlo swept observation Haki over immediately and found him instantly. Turn around, aim, pull the trigger, all in one go. Come to attack me, aren't you courting death? Aluo looked at the void in front of him. Red light appeared in his eyes, and there was a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Snapped. Therefore, he could only helplessly, watching the bullets shining with pitch black luster like in slow motion, bit by bit, inch by inch, shot into his mind. Moria, who was fighting with Ahua, felt the familiar aura appearing and disappearing in an instant behind her, and quickly turned her head to glance. The bloodshot eyes filled the entire eyeball in an instant. Moria turned her head and punched Ahua flying, then raised her head, and let out a roar that resounded throughout the island. But his strength is too rubbish, even if he wakes up, he can't escape, this bullet is close at hand. Then the bullet expanded, and the fiery light filled his brain and burned his soul. A small mushroom cloud appeared in the void where Abrosam stood, and the fire engulfed his manifest body in an instant. Abrosam. Once again, he saw his companion die beside him. And this time it was weaker than last time. You must know that the silver-haired big boss standing by is like watching a play, and he didn't do anything. Although a little stronger than ordinary people, but in terms of strength, it can be called garbage. The pitch-black translucent bullet pierced the air, leaving a black light smaller than a hair in the air, which instantly appeared in front of Absalom's forehead. So when the bullet was about to hit his head, he was awakened by the stabbing pain between his brows that penetrated into his soul. Again, it was a momentary glimpse, as he saw only Absalom's body engulfed in flames. Boom, this series of actions was completed in an instant, and Abrosam was just an ordinary person who ate the transparent fruit. Chapter 263. It's over, Moria. At the back of the island, Hobak, who was about to board the ship, was holding the treasure he had brought out, followed by his beloved Shinduoli. Hearing Moria's roar as if he was cornered, they all stopped moving. Horror quickly appeared on Hobak's face, so fast. It seems that Moria's defeat is only a matter of time. He quickly moved the treasures to a small sailboat docked on the shore. These are the necessities for him to live a good life in the future, and he must not forget them. Shinduoli, what's wrong? At this moment, he noticed that Shinduoli suddenly stopped moving, as if he had thought of something. He didn't even move the treasure in his hand. He stepped forward and quickly hugged Shinduoli's body. Sure enough, the shadow in Shinduoli's body had disappeared. It seems that Moria has reached the point where she has to use her last resort. Turning around, Hobak quickly walked towards the boat. It's too dangerous. In just a short time, the silver-haired group has forced Moria into despair. He can't wait any longer. He wants to leave here immediately, because just now, a sense of ultimate danger suddenly appeared in his heart. For this premonition, he has great trust, because if it weren't for this early perception of danger, a person like him would have died 100 times a long time ago. How could he still live until now? So after feeling the danger, he left Moria without hesitation and ran away. At the edge of the island, he felt the danger again. He didn't even want the treasure, he just wanted to take Zindoli and leave here quickly. Okay. Hobak, who was holding Shin Duoli's body and was about to board the boat through the wooden bridge made of planks, suddenly sensed something, stopped in his tracks, and raised his head suddenly with a look of horror. In sight, a figure with silver hair fluttering in the wind was standing silently at the end of the board. And the distance between him and the boat is only a few steps at this moment, but for him, with this figure, these few steps are Tianya very close, and it is a shocking gap between life and death. He can't get over it. Looking at Hobak, a trace of disgust flashed in Sorata's eyes. For this guy, he really didn't want to waste any words. As he thought about it, Hobak's neck seemed to be pinched suddenly, making him involuntarily let go of Shin Duoli's body in his arms. Ka. No matter how hard he struggled, this invisible force was not something he could resist, and it was getting tighter and tighter, making him unable to breathe at all, and at the same time, his entire eyeballs protruded. Advertisement then, with a click, the neck was pinched into a thin line. Glancing at Hobak's corpse in disgust, Sorata didn't want to make this guy's corpse too happy, so on a whim, he threw his corpse into the sea. Those who play with corpses will fall into the abyss of the sea forever. Only the endless darkness and the belly of the fish are your destination. After dealing with Hobak, Sorata looked at Zindoli's corpse floating in the air, and sighed slightly. Then he took a step forward, and the figure disappeared, appearing on a mound of soil on the shore. Tap your toes on the ground. Boom. Like beating on a drum, the soil on the ground is like a drum surface, rippling for a while, and then directly splitting a crack from the middle. Then Sorata put Shin Duoli's body into this crack, surrounded by soil, without a grave. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and rest in peace. Poor woman. Turning around, Sorata's figure disappeared in place. Suddenly, a whirlwind blew past the place where Sorata buried Shin Duoli just now, and she was unwilling to leave here for a long time. If someone can draw this gust of wind in the form of a painting, they must be able to see the figure of a woman, facing the direction where Sorata disappeared, bowing and saluting, as if expressing gratitude. Then the wind also followed the bigger wind, disappeared here, and went where she should go. The strange silence has returned to this place, except for the sound of waves hitting the shore. Sorata, is this guy suddenly crazy? Sorata actually disappeared for only half a minute. It didn't take him much time to kill Hogback or bury Zindoli. Seeing Sorata coming back, Kuina quickly said to him, "This way of devouring the shadow recklessly, you don't need the three of Ahua to make a move. As long as you avoid him, this guy can blow himself up." What did Sorata do? Kuina knew, so she didn't ask, but looked at Moria in surprise. Advertisement. She could sense the huge energy in Moria's body at this time, but this guy's physique was too poor, which made him look like a fat man who had eaten too much, and it was difficult for him to walk. How could he fight? What? Sorata, who just came back, hadn't recovered much before she was suddenly targeted by a special malice. Does this guy think he didn't die fast enough? He raised his head and glanced at Ryoma and Brook, who had finished fighting. Sure enough, Brook defeated Ryoma. Even so, he was able to fight Brook for a short period of time. Although he was still defeated afterwards, with his remnants and a sliver of willpower in front of him, he was strong enough to fight Brook for so long. Sorata looked at the huge fist that was coming towards them, completely covering them in the shadows, stretched out her hand, wrapped her index finger around hockey like flowing water, and stepped forward a little. Because most pirates are selfish people, a group of pirates formed by selfish people, it is impossible for you to make them more loyal and united. It's over, Moria. Afterwards, he ignored the three of Ahua, but stepped forward and rushed towards Sorata. Boom. At this moment, Moria also looked at Sorata. No, she looked at Perona next to Sorata. He didn't make contact, but he easily blocked Moria's full-strength fist. Then his eyes moved to the right, and Sorata looked at Moria, who had completely changed. This guy is now like a large balloon. Although there is a lot of power in his body, it cannot be unified. With a blow, it is easy for this guy to spit out the swallowed shadow. Silver hair, let Perona go. I have to say that this guy is really kind to his subordinates, and his real subordinates can risk their lives for him, which is actually rare in the profession of pirates. The oncoming shockwave arrived in front of Sorata, as if it had encountered a sharp knife, and was cut directly, from both sides of him, rushing towards the rear, without lifting him up, not even the hair on his head. It's not that Ryoma is not strong enough. After all, he was a person hundreds of years ago, and his body has not completely decayed. It is because his body was buried in ice that he can maintain it until now. With a yell, he punched Sorata, so it's for Perona. All of them seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, and they all rushed fast. But against the wind, if you encounter danger, it means that disaster is imminent and you will fly separately. It's easy to talk about the wind, after all, it's good for you. Chapter 264 Moria's death, finished. Looking down at Sorata, who was blocking his full-strength punch with one finger, a trace of clarity flashed in Moria's crazy pupils, and then she turned her head to look at Perona, with a flash of apology and a trace of pity in her eyes. He really cherishes his partner very much, and it may be that he cherishes it too much, which makes him stop recruiting partners after his partner dies. In the past few decades, the only partner he has officially recruited is Absalom. Perona was picked up, and she has been raised as a daughter. She is a family member, not a subordinate. As for Hobak, he was completely his collaborator, not even a subordinate, let alone a partner. Do you want to leave a last word? Sorata glanced at Perona, then said to Moria, I'll give you time. Little ghost. Who do you think Lousy is? Putting away the last trace of human brilliance in her eyes, Moria stared down at Sorata, and said indifferently, even if you die, you have to die standing up. Who is he? He is the Gecko Moria who was able to compete for hegemony in Kaido, one of the New World and now one of the 4 emperors, decades ago. Even if he dies, he has to die with a backbone. He will not run away with his butt between his buttocks like other pirates, let alone beg for mercy, or burst into tears. Because this is his last dignity as a once strong man. Roar, looking up and roaring, the shadow under him was suddenly elongated by an inexplicable force, and even his real body became extremely tall in an instant. Then he lowered his head, clasped his hands together, and slammed the most peak punch in his life at this time towards Sorata. Boom, still those hands, or that finger, easily blocked the blow. If there is no last word, then go to die. Sorata looked at Moria, and the space field opened up instantly, wrapping Moria inside, and then the figure disappeared instantly, appearing on Moria's stomach, stretched out her hand, and contracted her 5 fingers. Punch. Boom. As if striking a bell, the loud sound resounded throughout the island, and the huge force instantly made Moria's stomach sag inward, and then made him tilt his head up and open his mouth. Advertisement. The countless shadows that he had swallowed into his body before, like countless black lights, kept coming out of his mouth, and then rushed to the sky, like countless meteors, rushing towards the surroundings of the island. Losing Moria's control, these shadows should go back to where they should go. Looking at Moria, who was controlled by him in the field, unable to move, and shrunk a lot because the shadow left, a red light flashed in Sorata's eyes. In his eyes, this guy is definitely not too evil, he can only be said to belong to a group of chaotic people. He hides here, lures countless people to come here, and takes away their shadows. Among these people, in fact, most of them are bloody pirates. And this guy is not as tyrannical as other pirates, he will attack civilians at every turn, but he is actually not bad. From the fact that he was able to adopt Perona. But these are not enough. Just playing with the dead, the countless civilians trapped in this sea area, and the merchant ships are enough to kill this guy, so he will not hold back from him. Stretching out his hand, Sorata's eyes flickered with nebula, his eyes froze, and then he squeezed his palm towards the middle. With the movement of Sorata's hand, the space around Moria suddenly collapsed, shrinking inward rapidly, and the pressure of Ultimate made his body creak. Pain. Ultimate's pain instantly filled Moria's body, causing him to open his mouth and keep screaming loudly. But due to the surrounding pressure and the isolation of the Sorata space domain, the outside world was silent. But from his distorted face, you can know his pain. And the surrounding space, even under compression, rattled. Never mind. Sorata thought for a while, let go of her hand, and loosened the space around her. It's better to let you die more happily. He has many ways to kill Moria, the most painful of which is to use the space field. In view of the friendship between this guy and his subordinates, let's give him a face. The sound of the sword, like frost on a winter night, filled the entire space in an instant, and the ultimate chill froze Moria's soul into space, allowing him to wake up for a moment. What followed was a light that illuminated his way to the underworld. It was as cold as a bright moon, but it carried a monstrous murderous intent and an unparalleled sharpness. With a puff, the light of the saber was like a silver thread, cutting directly across his neck and shattering his soul. Turning around, Sorata let go of Moria's grip. Advertisement. I saw that Moria's body seemed to have suddenly lost its strength, like a pool of soft flesh, or the corpse he had played with wantonly, with its head and body separated and falling downward. On the ground, it was as if someone had scratched the surface of the water with an ink pen, causing ripples in a deep black hole. The black mouth was like the gate of hell, swallowing the falling Moria's body in an instant, and then in a burst of rumbling, the earth, as if being rejuvenated by the healing hands, was repaired in an instant without any damage. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed it. Another 7 warlords of the sea was killed silently and buried in the soil below. Ding! Sorata withdrew her head down gaze, held a knife flower in her right hand, and sheathed the knife handsomely. End. Think how powerful Shichibukai is. Seeing the anticipation in Kuina's eyes, Sorata reached out and rubbed her head. Kuina glanced at the ground, pursed her mouth, turned around and took Sorata's hand, and said with a smile. This guy is not even as good as K-Lock. His body looks quite big, but his strength is actually very poor. Sorata looked at Kuina and smiled. New World. When they come to New World, where most people know hockey, and many people know hockey, they will know how high the sky is and how thick the ground is. Then he stepped out and appeared beside Kuina in an instant. Turning his head, he smiled gently at Kuina who was beside him. That's it. There was a look of anticipation in Kuina's eyes. Kuina thought for a while and nodded. That's right. Now that I think about it, this guy is indeed the well-deserved devil king of this sea area. Countless people who enter here are afraid of him. It seems that my vision is too high. Now that Marine and world government don't come to trouble them, ordinary pirates, even Shichibukai, can't arouse Kuina's interest at all. I just know, come on, sail across this sea, and you will arrive at the Sabaody archipelago. From there, you will turn over the red line, or walk 10,000 meters under the sea to the Fishmen Island, and you will arrive at New World. In the first half of the Grand Line, there really isn't anyone who can put pressure on them. Sorata reached out and pinched Kuina's nose, and said with a smile. Not everyone in this world can have the strength to look down on the sea at our age, but more people are blocked in the first half of the Grand Line. The most wonderful energy in the human body, hockey, is unknown. It must be bad for you, but for this sea area, for ordinary pirates, he is the real big devil. Chapter 265 The Legendary Sword. What about this woman? At this time, Perona looks young on the outside, but her real age is older than Sorata and others. If he remembered correctly, Perona should be over 20 years old now. She just lived in the Devil's Triangle all the time, and all the people she came into contact with were pirates, or all zombies, so she was just a bit small in character. In fact, she is a lonely little girl who lacks love since she was a child, has a pure personality, and is a little bit arrogant. Sorata turned to look at Perona with thoughtful eyes. Put, or just kill it. After a moment of contemplation, the blue pupils gradually turned cold. Choke. Sorata stared at Perona, who was stunned in place, and slowly drew Zon Kong. His impression of Perona in the original book is not bad, but this does not mean that Perona is a kind person. For so many years, growing up in this environment, it is impossible for her not to kill people, and it is impossible to only kill pirates. And she did it to them all. Although there is no threat to the group of them, they move when they move. It was good luck not to be killed by Wa before. As for now, let him do it. With the blade wrapped around Armament Hockey, the cold light of the frozen soul flashed across the dark island, and it slashed at Perona's soul without hesitation. Puff. The black-purple light cut straight across Perona's body, making her sluggish soul sober for a moment, and then quickly twisted and turned into light Madara, disappearing in place. Hey, still not dead? Sorata's eyes flashed red. Observation Hockey quickly swept across the entire thriller bark, and then looked up in one direction, revealing murderous intent in his eyes. I'll go back as soon as I go. You go to the boat and wait for me first. Murderous and introverted, he turned his head and smiled gently at Kuina. Sorata raised his footsteps, took a step forward, and his body disappeared in place. With a murderous intent, of course we will kill the grass and root it out. Kuina looked at the direction where Sorata disappeared, with pensive eyes, and then suddenly realized that he already knew what Sorata was going to do. At this moment, the ground around her suddenly trembled. A huge white figure appeared beside her. Where's that woman? Ahua did not release the fruit ability, and his blood-red eyes shot everywhere. Advertisement apparently, by now. He still wanted to get revenge on Perona for making him look bad in front of everyone. Died. Kuina withdrew her gaze, turned her head, and looked at Ahua calmly. Sorata went after her. Oh, hearing that Sorata was chasing after him, Ahua was stunned for a moment, then quickly put away the fruit ability and changed back to its original appearance. He pushed his glasses gracefully, and said in surprise, he survived in Sorata's hands. It didn't survive. The ghost formed by her soul should not be all of her soul, so after the death, the body did not die. Kuina explained slowly, then raised her leg and headed towards Liberty. Let's go. Let's go back to the boat and wait for Sorata. Oh, Ahua came back to his senses, glanced at the castle in the distance, and there was a trace of regret in his eyes. He didn't personally kill the woman who made him lose face. After hesitating for a moment, he looked back and turned to follow Kuina's pace. Hey, now that woman's death is a small problem. What he was about to face soon was the ruthless ridicule of Adao and his wife. Headache. Sure enough, before meeting Adao and the other two, he heard the laughter of those two guys in front of him from a distance. Ha 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 ha. I am a worm. Ah ha 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 ha. I'm a maggot. Ha 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 ha. I shouldn't live in this world. I'm so sorry. I live in this world and I'm wasting air. Ha 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 ha. Looking at the two of Adao, you said one sentence, and I said one sentence, mockingly uttering the very shameful words he said after he was hit by the ghost before. Ahua's obese body seemed to swell a circle, his face was flushed, his whole body was like a steamed crab, and a lot of white air came out of his whole body. With a trembling body, he raised his head and roared, you two guys really need to deal with it. As he said that, he lowered his head, his black and white pupils were bloodshot. Bend down slightly, step your left foot forward, and push your right foot behind you. Boom, the ground is sunken. And his body, like a large cannonball, quickly rushed towards the two laughing Aluo. Advertisement, ha ha, as if sensing something, the laughter stopped abruptly. Aluo and Adao turned their heads at the same time, looking at the rushing towards them. Awa, who was burning with anger, twisted his neck and loosened his fists. Then he went forward without hesitation. Exactly, I didn't have a good time with that Moria guy before. Bang 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 bang. The three of them collided in an instant, followed by dazzling punches and a whirlwind formed by the impact, rushing towards the surroundings non-stop. Yo ho ho ho. The impact of the three of Iowa awakened the happy Brook who had been standing there after regaining the shadow. He glanced at the three of Iowa, walked up to Kuina and asked in doubt, who are they? I haven't played enough, I have a lot of vitality left, and it will be fine in a while. Kuina withdrew her gaze, turned her head to look at Brook, and smiled slightly when she saw the shadow appearing under him. Congratulations, the shadow is back, now you can leave here and appear in the sun. Yo ho ho ho, Brook chuckled, obviously in a good mood. Let's go. Leave them alone, let's go back to the boat first. Okay. With a choking sound, he pulled out a section, and looked at the coldly shining blade of the sword in the dim environment. Kuina smiled slightly, that's right, although your sword is not as good as this one, it is not an ordinary sword either. Kuina held the handle of the knife in her left hand and slowly raised it. Kuina nodded, a memory flashed in her eyes, this knife. This knife is a legendary knife, and it fits you very well, there is no need to change to an unfamiliar knife, although this knife is very strong. Hearing this, the curiosity in Brooke's eyes grew even stronger. After all, it's your spoils, don't you use it yourself? Legend. I can't use this kind of knife, it's too heavy, and I have my own sword. Put it flat in front of your eyes, stretch out your right hand, stroke the blade slowly, feel the coldness coming from the knife, and smile slightly. Okay. Saying this, Brooke held up his crutch. Kuina took the knife and looked at Brooke with a flash of surprise in her eyes. Brooke nodded, then seemed to think of something, took out a knife from behind, and handed it to Kuina. This is the knife left by the zombie just now, take it here. Brooke laughed, then looked at the knife in Kuina's hand, and asked curiously, it seems that you know what this knife is, can you tell me? Although it is not confirmed whether the zombie is a legendary person, but this knife is a real legendary knife. She could see that Brooke was also a swordsman, and as long as he was a swordsman, no one would not want to own a famous sword. Chapter 266 Autumn Water behind the island, in a basement in an old castle. Ah, Perona held her head in her hands, curled up into a ball, and kept screaming. Lord Moria is dead, and so is Absalom. Fear, endless fear filled her heart. That flickering cold knife light shattered her soul, and even shattered her self-confident heart. Silently, Sorata's figure appeared in this room. Feel the terror emanating from her as you stare at Lola, who is screaming as her soul is torn apart. There was a moment of hesitation in Sorata's heart. But then he was quickly wiped out. No one in this world can pay for other people's lives, not even close relatives. He didn't plan to go into what Perona did before, it didn't make sense. But today she appeared on this island and made a move on them, so she should accept the consequences of the attack. Raising his head and staring at Perona, Sorata's eyes became extremely indifferent. As if sensing something, the screaming stopped abruptly, and Perona, who was trembling, stopped, and then the crisis of death made her suddenly raise her head, and met Sorata's blue eyes that seemed to freeze her soul. No time to scream, no time to fear, no time to even react. In a daze, the cold knife light, like a time span, like a gentle wind, brushed across Perona's neck in an instant, and brushed away only half of her soul. Heaviness. The heaviness of the soul, the heaviness of the body, the heaviness of the eyelids. The darkness that followed engulfed Perona's soul in an instant. Let the light in her eyes disappear in an instant. Boom, the low sound of falling to the ground was particularly ear-piercing in this basement. Looking at Perona, who looked like a broken porcelain doll on the bed, a trace of pity flashed in Sorata's eyes. Not to pity Perona, but to pity such a young life disappearing like this. If you really want to care about it, there is nothing wrong with Perona. She was an orphan since she was a child, and was picked up by Moria, and she has been growing up in the Thriller Bark, and has been growing up in the Devil's Triangle. Personality or something, it must be different from ordinary people. If you want to blame this world. He didn't know if Moria died, Perona would go crazy and fall into darkness completely. After all, she was not Robin. Sorata sighed slightly, sheathing the knife. Then he tore off the wine gourd, raised his head and took a sip. Advertisement looking down at Perona's body, in a thought, the bed carrying Perona's body was like a soft surface, wrapping her in it with a clicking sound. Then a hole opened in the ground, and the simple coffin slowly fell and disappeared into the crack. I'm getting more proficient, murder, burial, one-stop service. Hee. With a self-deprecating sound, the crack disappeared, and Sorata's figure also disappeared into this unknown underground space along with the laughter. What are you doing? Silently, Sorata's figure appeared next to Kuina. He first glanced at the three Ahuas who were colliding fiercely, and shook his head helplessly. Then he turned to look at Brooke, smiled and said, Congratulations, Brooke. Yo ho ho ho. Brooke is no longer fussed about the sudden appearance of Sorata. He laughs, we're talking about this knife. Knife? Sorata was stunned for a moment, then seemed to think of something, and looked up at Ryoma's corpse lying on the ground in the distance without any breath. Then he retracted his gaze and looked at the knife in Kuina's hand. It really is this knife. Even if he knew, he still pretended to be surprised. The moment Kuina appeared at Sorata, she looked at him. When she saw Sorata's pretended surprise, she pursed her lips slightly, and then showed a gentle smile in her eyes. No. You talked to Brooke? Okay. Accepting the knife that Kuina handed over, Sorata held a blade in his hand, and then waved it casually to the side. Puff. The invisible slash cut through the air, and then left a deep crack on the ground. Good knife. Brooke looked down at the crack in the ground, only feeling a toothache, even though he had only teeth left. It's really strong. It means that the sword is strong, and it is also that people are strong. You must know that he didn't sense any aura on Sorata just now, and Sorata didn't use any force, just waved lightly. It's actually possible to do this. Such a strong person has already exceeded his cognitive range. Brooke, Brooke. The continuous shouts woke up the dazed Brooke. He came back to his senses, looked up at Sorata, and laughed. Sorry, I didn't expect Mr. Sorata to be so powerful, I just laughed. Advertisement, ha ha. Sorata smiled lightly and then said, don't you want to know what this knife is? Okay. Brooke nodded, then turned his gaze to the knife in Sorata's hand. This knife. It is the Chu Shui, one of the 21 crafts of the Da Kuei knife, and it is a rare, black knife, in the world. Sorata raised the knife and said slowly, black knife? Brooke showed doubts on his face. I know the big fast knife is what the world calls famous weapons, but what is the black knife? The black knife is. Sorata looked at Brook, not knowing how to explain for a moment. At this time, Brook didn't know the existence of hockey, and of course he didn't know what the black knife was. And to explain Hey Dao to him, you must first explain what hockey is. So next, Sorata roughly explained to Brook what hockey is. So, before Ahua Sambu was on the fist, the power to smash the ghost was hockey. After listening to Sorata's explanation, Brook thought of Ahua's power to smash the ghost before, and he suddenly realized. Brook was at a loss for words. He realized that he asked a stupid question. If there are really many black knives, it is not uncommon in the world. You say it, is it rare in the world? In theory, any sword can be tempered into a black sword, but that's only in theory. But then under Ahua's slap, the ghost exploded instantly like a balloon. Putting down her hands, Sorata looked at Brook and asked back, you don't think that with hockey, you can forge a black knife? At first I thought it was Awa using some unknown power, but now that I think about it, it turned out to be hockey. Saying so, Sorata raised the knife. A stream of black hockey, from his arm, like a black snake, slowly wrapped around Kiyoshui's blade. Oh, Brook nodded, understanding now. Sorata smiled and explained, as far as I know, there are only 2 known black knives in this world, and one of them is the autumn water in front of us. In order for Brook to feel more, so his movements are very slow, the black knife is the weapon slash. After wrapping around hockey, after countless battles, it slowly absorbs hockey, making the whole knife slowly turn black, and thus it has a tougher and sharper blade, which forms the name of the knife. Yes, that's hockey. This one, when the ghost appeared earlier, he felt that the thing could not be attacked by ordinary power. But then came the next question. According to Mr. Sorata, many people in New World know hockey, so there are a lot of black knives in New World. Brook smiled awkwardly. Do the math. Then how do you say Kiyoshui is rare in the world? Chapter 267 Dragon Horse. Let's go. Sorata raised his legs and walked towards Ryoma's corpse. This corpse can't be left here. A few steps down, standing next to Ryoma's body, looking down at Ryoma's body, Ryoma, Sr. Is he really a Ryoma? Kuina walked up to Sorata, looked down at the ground as well, and said in surprise, it's really the legendary dragon-slaying swordsman, Swordmaster Ryoma. Okay. Sorata nodded. Isn't he at Wanokuni? Kuina then asked curiously, how did you come here? Decades ago Moria went to Wanokuni and fought the Kaido who stayed there, who is now one of the 4 emperors of the New World, 100 Beasts Kaido. That guy is so good, can he still fight the 4 emperors? Hearing this, Kuina was shocked again. After all, that guy was young too, wasn't he? Haha. Sorata laughed, and continued. After Moria was defeated, he ran to steal Ryoma's body and autumn water, and then brought them here, and took Brook's shadow to create this zombie. Oh, Kuina nodded. This guy's heart was broken by Kaido, so he set his sights on zombies. Well, you can say the same thing. This corpse, let's find a place to bury it. After all, he is also a senior. As for Kiyoshui. Raising the knife, Sorata thought for a moment. He thought of Zoro. Master Koshiro will not give such a small gift. As long as Zoro goes to sea, the master will definitely give him a good knife. Maybe it's the same sword as his Zonkong, although it is not as strong as Hidaoyi and Chu Shui, but it is not worse than the famous sword. That guy is a 3-sword style. With his strength, ordinary swords may not be able to bear it. He is now much stronger than in the original book. Do you want to leave it to him? He believes that Zoro will definitely come to the Grand Line, maybe in less than 2 years. Maybe, this guy is a guy who can get lost at any time without looking at him. Without Sokka, he might not be able to get along with East Blue. Although the strength is very strong, but by himself, he will definitely not be able to come to the Grand Line. Forget it, don't want to. Sorata put down her hand and put Kiyoshui into the dimensional bag. If you hear from this guy again in the future, send it to him. With his speed, it won't take much time to go back. Now in his dimensional bag, there are 2 knives, one is Kiyoshui just thrown in, and the other is dropped by the CP9 chief who killed a few days ago. Advertisement. What is this guy's name? He forgot. However, he did not forget the knife on his body. This knife was the second weapon he encountered that ate devil fruit. The front one is now Arlo's Dark Hound, the power of which surprised even him. But this knife that ate the elephant fruit didn't give him a strong feeling. This knife was originally an ordinary knife. Although it can be transformed into an elephant, it is not as sharp or tough as Zonkong, let alone Hidao Yuan. So he tried it afterwards, and threw it in the dimensional bag casually, so that he can take this knife out for research when he has time. See how objects eat devil fruit? He has so many devil fruits in his hands now, if they can be eaten by objects, wouldn't he become Noragami? Thinking about it, he was quite excited. However, ordinary fruits are useless if eaten by objects. Because objects cannot develop fruits, giving them to eat is equal to waste. It is also a kind of functional fruit such as door fruit, which can be eaten by objects. At that time, let the partners come out through the entire space door. When he has something to do and leaves, no one can hurt them. By the way, there is also time fruit, which is a god-level fruit. Eat the object, and then go to absorb a pirate's time. Time pauses, time speeds up, time goes back. Although it is not as powerful as human beings, they are all life-saving abilities, and they may be used at any time. Now that I think about it, that guy Carterus is really a big deal. With such a powerful ability, I didn't prepare in advance. Could it be that I haven't fought for decades and forgot? Or does he think he is really invincible? Taking Carter's out from the bottom of his heart, he taunted again, shook his head, and Sorata looked at Ryoma's body. Senior Ryoma, although you definitely want to go back to Wano-kuni, but the body is here after all, so I, the junior, can only bury you here. As for Kiyoshui, I will find him a master who will cherish him in the future. You just rest assured. As the voice fell, Sorata had a thought, and the ground around Ryoma's corpse suddenly boomed, and 4 walls rose up, and then wrapped Ryoma's corpse inside like a coffin. After all, this is a senior, and Sorata took his knife. Although he doesn't use it himself, he will give it to Zoro in the future. So I still have to accept his love. He didn't bury casually like others, but gave Ryoma's body a coffin. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a crack opened in the ground under the stone coffin, like the gate of hell, swallowing the coffin in an instant. Boom, the crack closes. Afterwards, the surrounding soil, like running water, kept pouring towards the middle, piled up where the coffin disappeared, and gradually became a tomb. Advertisement: a stone slab rises from the grave, the breeze blows, the stone sand flutters, and words gradually appear on the stone slab. The tomb of the great swordsman Ryoma. Sorata looked at the grave in front of him and nodded with satisfaction. Not to mention, he is really getting more and more proficient now. Kuina and Brook stood next to Sorata, from the beginning to the end, and then looked at Sorata with strange faces. See what I do? Sorata gave Kuina and Brook a strange look. Hee. Kuina withdrew her gaze, pursed her lips and smiled slightly. Nothing? Yo ho ho ho, Brook laughed. Mr. Sorata, this ability is really convenient. Yo ho ho ho. He didn't know how to describe Sorata's ability, so he could only say it was convenient. Haha. It's really convenient. Sorata clapped her hands, picked up the wine gourd on her waist, pried open the stopper with her thumb, and stretched out her hand, with the mouth of the gourd facing down. The clear wine, like a silver thread, slowly fell to the ground. And the 3 of Ahua were also stopped by Sorata on the way back. Yo ho 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 ho, eat. Mr. Sorata, please allow me to eat more. Don't look at me as a skeleton, I also want to eat. Yo ho ho ho. Apart from my body being different from other people, I actually eat and eat, lads, all of which are the same as ordinary humans. Let's go. Go back first, rest, have a full meal, and then set off. Oh, so you still have to shit. After all, if you want to eat, you have to rely on Awa, right? Ha ha. Gugu. Kuina took Sorata's hand and looked at him with a smile. Sorata, don't you think it's inappropriate to ask these questions? Although he was very shy in front of everyone today, he still had to cook. Then he bowed, stood up straight, withdrew his hand, and raised the wine gourd. On the way, they reunited with Robin and Indigo, and headed for the Liberty together. It's really uncomfortable to stay in this ghost place. Brook laughed and followed. Senior Longma, rest in peace. Take a few swigs. Then he let out a breath of alcohol, hung the wine gourd back to his waist, turned around, and glanced at the 3 Ahuas who were still fighting. The corners of their mouths curved upwards, and a smile appeared on their faces. Chapter 268 continued to set off with the promise, Brook joins. After a long lost, truly delicious meal, Sorata and Brook returned to the huge, battered schooner being towed by the Liberty. Brook asked Sorata to help him move his companion's bones to the thriller bark and bury them in the ground. Sorata agreed. To be honest, the Rumba pirates are the first pirates he has encountered since he went to sea. In the true sense, they can be called adventurers. Their ideal is very simple, but it makes him very admired. Make a crying child laugh through tears. Simple, unpretentious, but full of ideals for laughter. Just like Brook's character, even after nearly 50 years of loneliness, his heart is still bright. Even if he becomes a skeleton, he is still alive and full of laughter. Island. On a high ground stands a tomb made of stones, and in front of the tomb is a tombstone engraved with names. Brook's partner, the Rumba pirates, are buried here. Captain, don't worry, I'm still alive, and today I heard from Laboon. Brook sat in front of the tombstone, bowed his head and said, Laboon is healthy, but sometimes he misses us a lot, just like we miss him. Having said that, he paused slightly and then smiled. Captain, and everyone, I decided to carry your last wishes and promises to Laboon and continue this unfinished journey. Although I know that the next voyage will be extremely difficult, I still want to complete it. At this moment, he seemed to see the figure of the captain and his companions again. They were happy that he was alive and heard the news about Laboon, but they were also concerned about his next voyage. As if sensing the concern of the captain and his companions, Brook smiled slightly and continued, Let it go, I've decided. I decided to join the gang that brought me news of Laboon. I'll tell you don't look at them as young brats, they are much younger than when we went to sea, but their strength. Having said that, he shook his head and exclaimed, It really surprised me. Yo ho 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 ho, although neither their captain, Mr. Sorata, nor the vice captain, Ms. Kuina, have ever done much fighting, but the unintentional sharpness that was revealed, I feel like the sky could be torn apart. This kind of strong, I think I will follow them, and I will be able to complete the agreement with Laboon. And I feel like they're not the same as normal pirates. He touched his chin and thought for a while, his eyes lit up. I feel that they give me the same feeling as our Rumba pirates. They are all people with dreams, and they are not bad people, at least after getting in touch with them, they don't have the malice that bad guys should have. So, Captain, friends, bless me. Wish us a smooth circle around the Grand Line and complete the promise to Laboon. Oh, by the way, Mr. Sorata's dream seems to be around the Grand Line, but their dream is even bigger. They want to travel around the world. This dream is really. Advertisement, it's exciting. On a cliff in the distance, Sorata leaned back against the trunk of a dead tree on the cliff, looking at the sea hidden in the thick fog in the distance. While in a daze. From Brooke's attitude, he could sense that he shouldn't resist joining them, so with Brooke, he had nothing to struggle with. Even if he didn't join them in the end, it didn't matter. What he was thinking about was the 3 huge black shadows that towered above the sky and ground that he saw before entering here. How come you can't see anything in this thick fog? Strangeness. The dense fog here is only in this area, and according to historical investigations, the appearance of the dense fog has not been investigated since the present, and it may have been produced during the blank 100 years. And at a glance here, it is clear that it is not produced normally. It must have been made by something, or someone, or a monster. Forget it, what about him? That thing won't appear in this world, it should be projected from another world. Sorata shook his head, held up the wine gourd, and took a sip. Moreover, the feeling that thing gave him was far less dangerous than the demon behind the weird door, let alone the huge eyes of that indescribable thing. So even if he came to this world across borders, he would be about the same as the peak powerhouse in this world. Not to mention him, even the peak powerhouses in this world can handle it, so he doesn't have to worry about it here at all. Tread. The sound of leather shoes stepping on the slate, without turning around, Sorata knew who was coming. Decided. Okay. Brooke appeared from behind the tree, stood on the edge of the cliff, looked at the sea in the distance, and said with a smile. Mr. Sorata, I have decided to continue sailing. I want to fulfill the promise I made to Laboon with my partners, so I decided to join you. Haha. Welcome to the Freedom Adventure Group, Brooke. Sorata stood up, stretched out her hand to Brooke, with a smile on her face. You will definitely complete the agreement with Laboon as you wish. Okay. Brooke nodded, reached out his hand, and shook Sorata's hand. I believe in you, Mr. Captain. Haha. Call me Sorata from now on. That's what the fellows on the boat call me. Letting go, Sorata laughed, raised the wine gourd, and took a big gulp. Yes, Mr. Sorata. Yo ho ho ho, advertisement. Brooke also smiled, and then asked, by the way, Mr. Sorata, why are we called the Free Adventure Group? Isn't it the Pirates? It's the Pirate Group, and it's also the Adventure Group. Sorata put down the wine gourd and said with a smile, the Pirate Group was given by the world government and Marine. We call ourselves the Adventure Group. You will understand later. And also, what? Sorata tilted her head to look at Brooke, and opened her mouth, revealing her clean white fang teeth. I really hate real pirates. Hate? Real pirates? Brooke stared at Sorata for a moment, then seemed to understand something, and nodded to express his understanding. He didn't say anything, and didn't ask further questions. As Sorata said, after getting along for a long time, you will naturally know who Sorata and his team are, what dreams their team has, and what ideals their partners have. Also like what he said with his partners, although they have not been together for a short time, he can fully feel the kindness radiated from Sorata and others towards him. I can also feel that the group of them behaves completely differently from ordinary pirates. That's totally enough, isn't it? Go back to the boat. Let everyone know that Brooke joined. After hearing the news, everyone showed excited expressions and expressed a strong welcome to Brooke. Then they had a little party aboard the Liberty for Brooke's joining. After all, I had just eaten earlier, and this banquet is not mainly about eating, but about communicating with each other, so that Brooke can integrate into them more quickly. I don't know if it's his age or Brooke's personality that makes it easy for him to get along with everyone. The way he got on the boat was different from Indigo and Robin. He is the partner that Sorata invited for the first time in a real sense. His boarding brought more laughter and, of course, music to the boat. Before there was such a thing as music, it seemed that sailing was the same thing, but with Brooke's music, the sea seemed to become interesting in an instant, instead of being boring. This is the charm of music, and after having Brooke, it's like igniting Sorata's musical soul. Sorata can also play 1 or 2 pieces from time to time, 1 or 2 pieces of music that everyone has never heard before, but they're definitely good. Let everyone have more laughter and less boredom in the next voyage. Of course, I am also looking forward to more adventures and more fulfilling voyages in the future. Chapter 269. Leave it to them to have a headache. Naval Headquarters, Maryford, Gran. If you can't get in touch, forget it. In the marshal's office, Sengoku sat on the desk at the top, crossed his hands on the desk, put his chin on the back of his hand, looked at a woman standing beside the sofa, constantly flicking the dial button of the phone bug. Marine said calmly. The female Marine, that is, Gran, wears the epaulets of Major Marine on her shoulders and the Marine Justice cape. She has long black hair and a low ponytail behind her. On her beautiful cheeks, she wears a pair of black round myopia glasses. Let the heroic she have a touch of female intellectual beauty. She put down the microphone of the phone bug, stood up straight, stretched out her hand and pushed the mirror frame in front of her face, then turned to Sengoku and said, Mr. Sengoku, I'm afraid, just as you guessed, Moria should have suffered an accident. Okay. Sengoku nodded, put his hands down, and sat up straight. We should know when the silver-haired gang enters the Devil's Triangle. I just didn't expect this guy to act so fast, and Moria was killed by this guy before he could tell Moria to escape. And from Silverhair's attitude towards pirates, it can be concluded that Moriya's gang should all be dead. Gran looked at Sengoku, thinking of the strength of the silver-haired gang, and said with a serious face, "Then Mr. Sengoku, what should we do next?" "Report it to the world government. Although it hasn't been confirmed yet, it's almost confirmed. As for the silver-haired group, didn't the world government make any orders?" Having said that, Sengoku's eyes showed a gleam. "Leave it to them to have a headache." "Yes, Mr. Sengoku." Gran gave Sengoku a military salute loudly, then bent down and picked up the phone bug who had just called Moriya on the coffee table, turned around and left the marshal's office. She's a member of the Marine Intelligence Section, and she's the one who contacts the world government and Shichibukai. As for Shichibukai's disappearance, since Sengoku has come to a conclusion, and she really can't get through the phone, it can only be reported to the world government. As members of the intelligence department, apart from the marshal and admiral, there are probably only a small number of people in their department in Marine, who know the horror of the silver-haired gang best. Take the naval battle outside the capital of Seven Waters. Before the news of the pirate, Shears, who escaped from death came out, Marine actually knew the specific news of that battle. There are monitoring of various seabirds, and after the incident, the nearby Marines received news, and the pirates who went to clean up the mess and rescued got the news from them. After all, the Pirate Alliance waited for Sorata and others for a few days outside the capital of Seven Waters. Advertisement such a huge force, of course Marine knew about it. It's just that Sorata and others are in the capital of Seven Waters, and Marine dare not go there. Afraid that Sorata will catch them all together with the pirates. Thunderfruit. Since Kuzan came back, he only told Sengoku about Kuina's information, so in Marine, the current information about Sorata's gang is still in Alabasta. You must know that there was no Thunderfruit in Kuina at that time. And the strength that Kuina showed in this battle, even if they just heard about it, they can imagine how devastating it is. After all, it is an alliance composed of nearly 20 pirate groups. There are more than 100 criminals offering bounties alone, and the bounties add up to more than 6 billion. You must know that the pirate who can sail to the capital of Seven Waters is no longer a novice who just entered the Grand Line. To get here, he has some skills. After all, he arrived alive from the pursuit of thousands of pirates in Marine, here. However, such a force, a pirate alliance with more than 1,000 people and a bounty of more than 6 billion, in Kuina's hands, is like a toy, and it didn't take long to end the battle. When Marine rushed to the scene, the tragedy was like a tsunami and a hurricane. There were not many pirates left, and the sea was full of charred corpses. It was scary to watch. Even if they didn't report it afterwards, the intelligence department also raised the level of danger for Kuina a lot. No wonder some time ago, Kuina was inexplicably added so many bounties. The world government should have known that Kuina got the Thunderfruit. After returning to intelligence, Gran reported Moriya's death to the world government and then ignored it. After all, Shichibukai is directly under the jurisdiction of the world government. It has nothing to do with the Marine Marshal's office. After Gran led the order to go out, Sengoku had been leaning on the chair in a daze. Last time it was Kei Lakadar, this time it was Moriya. It seems that except for the Hawkeye guy, the silver hair killed all the Shichibukai he met. Bartholomew Big Bear is doing research on a special island in the world government, and it's hard for outsiders to find, so don't worry about it. The Nine Snakes Island, where Empress Boya Hancock is located in a windless area, and she rarely shows up at ordinary times, so there should be no danger. Then there is Strait Jinbei, by the Fishmen Island, followed by Heavenly Yaksha Don Quixote Doflamingo, by New World de Reese Rosa. Advertisement with Jinbei's character, and the character that the silver-haired gang has always shown. As long as Jinbei doesn't provoke them, there shouldn't be much danger. But Doflamingo is probably in danger, should I remind him? However, this is a decision made by the world government after careful consideration. Even if he is a marshal, he cannot object, let alone he was an admiral more than 10 years ago, so he cannot object. After all, Rogers B******************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** sea to run wild and lose its balance. On the one hand, it is to balance the sea, and on the other hand, of course, it also wants these guys to be used by the world government. Due to the substantial strengthening of the pirate side, Marine is gradually unable to take care of it. The four seas are okay to say, but as more and more pirates enter the Grand Line, the pressure on Marine is also increasing. This is why Shichibukai came into being. Appear. Because this system is denying Marine's achievements, and also reminding the world of Marine's incompetence, actually relying on pirates to check and balance pirates. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of the World Summit that ended not long ago, the King of Alabasta, Neferutali Cobra, and after Cobra received news from Alabasta during the meeting, in the subsequent meeting, furious about the Shichibukai system. Thinking of the power of world government's secret research, he couldn't help looking forward to it. In fact, he didn't have much opinion on the appearance of Shichibukai. After all, Shichibukai really helped the world government and Marine, stabilize the sea under certain conditions, and gave the world government time. Some things he did not know until he became a marshal. And he also heard that Cobra proposed to discuss abolishing the Shichibukai system in the next session. They joined Shichibukai, each with their own goals. Sengoku leaned forward, put his hands on the table again, resting his head on the back of his hands, thinking. After 4 years, the world government should not use Shichibukai. To be honest, although Shichibukai has played a role in stabilizing the sea, Marine actually hates this system from top to bottom. Yes, it is delaying time. The world government needs to find a new force to calm the sea if it wants to balance the sea. For example, that B********* DK Lock doll almost succeeded in stealing the country by using the name of Shichibukai. But these guys are a group of free, lawless, and free people. How could they be used by the world government? Although I don't know what it is, but as a weapon to replace Shichibukai and balance the power of the sea, it is impossible to be weaker than the current Shichibukai. Chapter 270. But oh my god, always unsatisfactory. Sorata, there is a boat ahead. On the bow of the Liberty, Sorata was lying on a deck chair with her eyes closed. Hearing Arlo's shout from the observation deck above, he opened his eyes. A red light appeared in the eyes, and the color of knowledge swept across the entire sea in an instant, then closed his eyes and said, "Get rid of it." At this time, they are still in the Devil's Triangle. After Brooke boarded the boat yesterday, everyone chatted for a long time. Seeing that it was getting dark, they stayed on the thriller bark all night and only set off this morning. This is the third pirate ship they met today, all damned. He didn't say hello either, and every time he glanced at what he saw, Arlo on the mast settled the battle with a few shots. After all, they were just some small shrimps, and it wasn't worth their trouble. During the period, they also met a merchant ship, but they left silently without disturbing them. After Moria took away the shadow, he would often drive people out of his ship, let them return to the original ship, and then let these people whose shadow he took away be left to fend for themselves in the Devil's Triangle. He wouldn't be kind enough to support these guys. And these people whose shadows were taken away by him, like Brooke, dare not leave here, so they can only float in this sea area, waiting for death and decay. Boom. 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 4 shots in a row. The pirate ship in the distance was invisible, and only a black shadow was exposed, but Arlo pierced the ship's plank and blew up the cabin. The pirates above either jumped into the sea, or waited to sink into the sea with the ship, or waited to be swallowed by the flames of the explosion. Choose one of the 3, in fact, no matter how you choose, you will die. It's just a late death and an early death. Even the optimal solution of jumping into the sea is actually just waiting for death. In this Devil's Triangle, if you can survive after falling into the water, the chances are no less than finding a needle in a haystack, and winning the first prize in the lottery. These guys didn't give the people they killed hope to choose life, and since they were met by Sorata and others, Sorata and the others didn't give them hope either. In fact, it gave hope. After all, jumping into the sea, there is still a chance of 1 in hundreds of millions to survive, although the chance is a bit small. After all, there is still hope of life, isn't it? Advertisement. Haha. Arlo withdrew the gun, blew on the muzzle, then inserted the dark hound back into his waist, stretched out his hand to wipe Shamat's hair, turned his head and smiled at Brooke, who was looking at him in surprise. How about Brooke? I am amazing. Amazing. Yo ho 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 ho. Brooke came back to his senses and gave Arlo a thumbs up. Then he glanced at Darkhound, who was pinned to his waist by Arlo, and laughed. Allo, this gun is a special gun. This is the 3rd pirate ship they have encountered. Arlo has shot 3 times, each time killing a ship with a few shots. This kind of power is completely beyond his cognition. He knew that Sorata and his gang were very powerful, but after all, whether it was in the Rumba Pirates or in the Devil's Triangle, the most powerful person he had ever seen was actually Moria. As for the strong, in fact, like most pirates, he only thinks that he is really strong, but there is no clear probability of where the strong is and how much stronger than himself. But since he boarded the Liberty and joined the Freedom Adventure Group, he knew. Let's not talk about Sorata and Kuina. He hasn't really fought yet, but just the fact that Sorata is exposed makes him completely treat Sorata as a god. It's Arlo, who is a lookout, a navigator, and a sniper. His strength has completely exceeded his imagination. It turns out that Arlo's strength was not fully displayed in the battle against Moria. Above this sea is the time for him to show his true strength. Okay. Arlo put down his hand, pulled out the dark hound, stroked it and said with a smile. This gun is a special gun in the shape of a sausage that has eaten the dog fruit. It can shoot bullets like cannonballs. Oh, Brooke nodded, suddenly realizing. He said how a small gun could fire such a powerful bullet, which was even bigger than a real cannonball. It turned out to be the gun that ate devil fruit. Amazing. The first time I've ever seen an object that ate devil fruit. Okay. Arlo looked at Dark Hound. A flash of memory flashed in his eyes, and then said, this technique of making objects eat devil fruit, according to Sorata, is a scientist from the world government, and it is said that he has 500 years of knowledge beyond this world. Dr. Vegapunk made it. Is it the world government? Brooke looked at Alo's hand, the muzzle turned into a dog's head, and licked the dark hound in Alo's hand for a while, and said in surprise, so there should be more weapons like this in world government. Do not know. Advertisement. Arlo put down his hand, let the dark hound change back into the gun form, put it back into his waist, and then said, anyway, this gun is the first weapon we have encountered to eat devil fruit since we went to sea. However, Sorata said that ordinary objects are not very useful even if they eat devil fruit. Dark Hound is just a special object, which happens to be combined with devil fruit to create a special gun suitable for gunners. Other objects eat devil fruit. Not as strong as Dark Hound. Okay. Brooke nodded, expressing his understanding, then turned his head and glanced at the staggered pirate ship that was braving the fire and screaming from the pirates. An inexplicable brilliance flashed in his eyes. Staying on the Liberty, he felt an unprecedented sense of security. Is it strength? No, it was the incomparable confidence brought to him by the crowd, the confidence that they would be able to deal with it as if the sky were falling. It seems that if I want to really integrate into this team, I really need to improve my self-confidence. Yo ho ho ho, ha 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 ha. As the waves slapping on the bow of the Liberty became more and more rapid, and as the hull of the Liberty gradually shook, everyone on board knew that they should leave this sea area soon. The Liberty didn't stop at all because of the sudden appearance of the pirate ship. They had the record pointer of the island ahead, so even in this fog, they would not lose their way. Allo, it looks like a big storm ahead, should we move forward? Always unsatisfactory. This could not help but make everyone, because of the fog and low hearts, gradually become active. Brooke looked at Arlo, felt the confidence in his tone and body, and laughed too. As the fog ahead gradually dissipated, what greeted Liberty was not blue sky and white clouds, nor sunshine, let alone the sun, but pitch blackness, torrential rain like the sky, violent hurricanes, and the sea surface that was constantly stirring like a washing machine. But this day, there was also a look of anticipation on their faces. Walk. Arlo just replied to Brooke's words, this storm is nothing, if you want to stop the Liberty, go 10 times more. Lazy, with a firm voice came up from the bow. Arlo didn't speak, but lowered his head and shouted toward the bow, Sorata, move forward. Having said so much, it is actually still strength. Looking forward to seeing the sun again, seeing the sun, seeing the blue sky and white clouds, seeing the island, and seeing the people. Chapter 271. So sleeping is definitely not an easy task for him. Facing the waves, Liberty pierced fiercely like a sharp knife. Then, with the tacit cooperation of Adao and Aluo, they rode the wind and waves, allowing Brooke to see the arrogance of the real top navigator in the top boat without fear of the sea. It also let him see that Sorata and others are not afraid of the sea and the true confidence of the wind and waves. Even if the waves are tens of meters high, even if the hurricane is Uzumaki-like, but under the light of swords and thunder flying out from the bow of the Liberty, it is like a door to welcome everyone. It was easily cut by the knife light, allowing the freedom to pass easily. This scene, the scene of manpower defeating natural disasters, once made Brooke, who had just boarded the ship, think that he had come to the age of mythology. In the storm, his shocking laughter was left behind. Of course, it also allowed him to fully understand what kind of terrible guys Sorata and his gang are. Yo ho ho ho, it's finally out. Looking at the golden sun appearing in the sky, behind him is the dark and violent storm area. Brooke stood on the swaying bow, his white skeleton hand was holding on to the guardrail, his body swayed up and down with the waves. It's been a long, long time, he hasn't felt the breath of the real sea for a long time. In the dark Devil's Triangle, even the waves seem too calm. Just like the darkness there, it makes people unable to have any passion. Because it was all covered by thick fog, in the sky, black and white seagulls surrounded the edge of the hurricane, like brave warriors, rushing into the waves created by the hurricane from time to time, pulling out long sea fish. Under the envious eyes of other seagulls who were afraid of the waves, they raised their heads and swallowed it in one gulp, and let out a triumphant cry. How wonderful it all is. Listening to the surrounding sounds, even if it was noisy, in Brooke's ears at this moment, it was tantamount to fairy music. Until this moment, I really broke through the fog, saw the sun, saw other lives, and felt the warmth. He really felt that he was still alive. Liberty fast forward. Facing the sunset and facing the hurricane, it is like a boat of life, crossing the dark storm and rushing towards the light. Departing early in the morning, when orange clouds appeared on the horizon, the Liberty really broke out of the Devil's Triangle. It wasn't until it was so far away from the hurricane area that it could no longer feel the sound of the hurricane behind it and the violent waves, that the Liberty stopped on a calm sea. Advertisement: this sea area is very calm, which can be described as calm and calm. Just like the previous hurricane, it sucked all the wind in the vicinity, so that there was no wind in the vicinity. That's why there was a rare sea area in the Grand Line where everyone could rest for a while. Putting up the sails, Arlo jumped off the mast and lay down on the lawn in the middle of the deck, tired but not tired. Even after excitement, there is always a vacuum period, and he is in this vacuum period at this time. At this moment, with a creak, Iowa, who was wearing a chef's uniform and a high chef's hat, came out of the kitchen holding a tray. He walked past Arlo, kicked Arlo, put down a glass of juice, and walked to the bow. At this time, there are 3 people sitting on the bow, namely Sorata, Kuina and Robin. So he put down 3 glasses of juice, straightened up, and walked over to Brooke. Brooke, I know you like coffee, so I made you a cup of coffee. Looking at Iowa, who was smiling and looking at him, Brooke was taken aback for a moment, then quickly came back to his senses, lowered his head, and looked at the coffee cup on the tray, which was similar to the cup he used all the time, and the coffee cup was steaming coffee. He stretched out his hand, picked up the cup, brought it to his mouth, and took a small sip. Thank you, Awa. Don't be so polite. You be *********, D, we're partners. Yo ho ho ho, Brooke smiled. At this moment, Adao's voice came from behind. Awa, where's mine? Ahua turned around and said as he walked, didn't you see that I was delivering it? What's the rush? Walking to Adao, Awa handed him the tray. Here, take it. Just send it to Indigo. Really, that guy is really focused enough. He won't be on the thriller bark again, collecting go to something. The storm and the rain couldn't stop him. As he spoke, he shook his head and walked towards the kitchen. By the way, call him too. I'll come up for dinner later. I'm going to cook. Brooke watched all of this, holding a cup of coffee with a gentle smile on his face. At this time, he also completely relaxed, first glanced at the sunset in the distance, then turned his eyes and scanned the entire ship. He took a step, walked down the bow slowly, walked to the lawn in the middle of the ship, put down the coffee cup, then sat down, leaned his back on the largest mast in the middle, raised his head and fell asleep. Hearing the sound of the waves hitting the hull, his heart gradually sank into darkness, but at the end of the darkness at this time, it was no longer the same loneliness, but there was light and warmth. It's been many years, no, it should be decades, and he hasn't slept so leisurely. Hey, Brooke, how long are you going to sleep? Get up and see the island. It's Shaw Island, with a beach. When a person is drifting on the sea, he will also see the figure of his long-missed companion and Laboon in his dreams. However, when he jumped up happily to take a look, he realized that there was only the cruel reality of despair and loneliness. So sleeping is definitely not an easy task for him. Advertisement, but now, as long as he listens. Puff, breath, breath, breath. It was Arlo's panting voice. Indigo, drink a glass of juice to refresh yourself first. It was Adau's voice. Cal Kale, it's Adau, put it aside, I'll be done soon. It was Dr. Indigo's voice. Hula hula, it was Mr. Sorata turning the pages of the book. Robin, take a look, isn't this hairpin pretty? It's really good looking, and it matches you very well. Yes, this is the voice of Robin and Kuina. Gurgle gurgle gurgle, boom 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 boom. This is the sound of Awa cooking in the kitchen. At this moment, he felt very clearly that beside him, he was no longer alone, and his partners were all by his side. Although now he is dead with only a pair of bones left. But he still feels that he can live, which is great. After squinting for a while, the bubble on Brooke's nose burst and he woke up slowly. Then he picked up the coffee at the side, took a sip, put down the coffee, and took out his violin case from the side. Open. He took out the piano, put it on his shoulder, and played the music. At this moment, everyone on the boat involuntarily stopped their movements at the same time, and then all of them had gentle smiles on their faces. Then just do whatever you need to do. But at this time, no matter their mood or actions, they seemed to be brisk and relaxed a lot following Brooke's piano sound. Chapter 272 IM. Red line. Sanctuary Mariejoy. In the deepest part of the palace complex is a garden full of flowers. This place is called Between Flowers, and even celestial dragons are not allowed to come here. In a palace deep among the flowers at this time, the 5 elders, the pinnacle of world government power, are kneeling on the ground. At this time, they lost their usual arrogance and didn't even dare to raise their heads. If Marine, other celestial dragons, and people from the CP organization saw this scene, they would definitely think it was a hallucination. If it is not an illusion, who, what force, what thing can make himself the identity of the world's creator god? In celestial dragons, the 5 old men at the top all kneel down together. In front of the 5 elders, there is a long 3-way upward staircase, and at the end of the staircase is a platform full of sword blades. Up the platform is another platform, and then there are stairs that seem to lead straight to the sky. After that, there is a huge vacant throne. The armrests of the throne are gold statues of 2 majestic lion heads, and the back is a huge flag pattern representing the world government. On top of it, a map that seems to be the Grand Line can be vaguely seen. At this time, on the throne that had been vacant all along, a figure slowly sat down. The figure is completely shrouded in a pitch-black robe, with a crown with 4 towering spikes on its head. Because the light in the room was too dark, only a black shadow could be seen, and it was impossible to see what the person on the throne looked like. However, no one has ever made the 5 elders kneel down, and it can be known that this person is probably the real master of the world government, in the true sense. Sure enough, the moment the figure sat down, the 5 elders kneeling on the ground lowered their heads even lower, and said in unison, "5 elders, come and see you." The figure raised its head, enveloped in black robes, a pair of slender red eyes with pupils like Uzumaki, calmly staring at the 5 elders below. What's up? He couldn't tell the difference between men and women, as if he hadn't spoken for a long time. A slightly paused, hoarse voice resounded throughout the palace. Usually it was nothing, the 5 elders would not come to disturb him, but as long as they came, there must be something they couldn't handle. So the figure was also very straightforward, and asked directly. The figure spoke, although the voice was calm, but it carried an incomparable aura, which was not voluntary, but natural, as if it had always been like this. Although the strength of this momentum came from the outside, it seemed to resound in the soul. The kneeling body of 5 elders, whose strength is unknown but definitely not low, trembled slightly and became more respectful. The bald 5 elders holding the sword did not look up, but lowered his head and respectfully said, "Master, I am, another very powerful guy has appeared in the sea during this time." Seeing that no one spoke to him, he paused for a moment, and continued. "This guy is not like an ordinary pirate, but he seems to hate the world government very much. He can let Marine go, but as long as it is someone sent by the world government, none of them came back. And that guy." After a moment of hesitation, he continued. "That guy killed Carterus, killed 2 Shichibukai, and has completely affected the balance of the sea." They were still hesitating whether to come to CIM. But when they heard the news of Moria's death, they couldn't sit still. If 2 Shichibukai die at once, the tacit balance built between the pirates and Marine and Shichibukai for more than 10 years is likely to be broken again. This is not what they want to see. Shichibukai was established in the first place to deal with the increasingly rampant era of big pirates. Although these Shichibukai are not the strongest, they can deter them regardless of their reputation or strength. Every year, countless pirates swarm into the Grand Line like locusts. Advertisement especially K-Lock Doll and Moria who stayed in the first half. Once they died, the relatively peaceful first half of the Grand Line went completely berserk. The countless pirates at the bottom will be like sharks smelling blood, desperate to commit all kinds of crimes for fame and wealth. This will greatly increase the pressure on the marine, and indirectly the pressure on the world government. And choosing a new Shichibukai is not an easy task. Some time ago, I went to New World, and was defeated by Whitebeard, and became Whitebeard's son. Fire Fist Ace, who became the second captain of the Whitebeard pirates, was a very good candidate. But he refused, and the pirate that emerged during this time, the one with strength, is the silver-haired Sorata. But it doesn't take much to know that silver hair can be a Shichibukai. And his strength is not at the same level as Shichibukai. As for the other pirates, if they are strong enough, they have already gone to New World. If they are not strong enough, even if he is allowed to sit in the position of Shichibukai, he will not be able to hold it. Don't look at Moria as if she is at the bottom of Shichibukai. But it also depends on who you compare with. If his strength is not compared with the strong, if he is placed in the first half of the Grand Line, in the Paradise, then he is a bug and a representative of terror. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many pirates who would never leave the Devil's Triangle every year. Otherwise, Thriller Bark would not become the legendary, real Ghost Island. Just Perona alone can wipe out most of the pirates in this paradise. Therefore, the selection of Shichibukai cannot be done by just anyone. Carteris. Whispers, voices without a trace of emotion resounded through the palace. Carteris. Repeat it again, this time with a little surprise in your voice. Apparently the Shadow Man, also known as, I Am, remembered who Carteris was. Of all the people he had met in his long life, Carteris should have left a picture in his memory. Although they have only met once, but he knew that Carteris was not a waste. He knew about Shichibukai, but he didn't take it seriously. An ant-like existence can be destroyed at will, so no one would take it seriously. But Carteris is different. Although he may be an ant here, it is enough that this ant can bite him. And the pirate who could kill Carteris, of course, also reflected in his heart at this time. What's the name of this pirate, and what ability does it have that can make you come to me? If it was just strength, 5 elders certainly wouldn't come to him. He still knew this. His name is Sorata. There is no trace of him in the past. He appeared in East Blue after he was 5 years old and was adopted by the master of a dojo in East Blue. Another mustache, 5 elders, said, I went to sea half a year ago, and I should be almost 18 now. 18 years old? In Im's calm pupils, there was finally a fluctuation. He is not surprised by the strong. In his long journey of life, he has seen a lot of strong. Anyway, no matter how strong he was just a bigger ant in front of him. Advertisement, but the 18-year-old is a strong man, and he is a strong man who can kill Carteris. That got him a little interested. Okay, mustache 5 elders nodded, and continued. It is indeed 18 years old. This guy has all the conqueror's hockey, and he is a very powerful swordsman. Having said that, he paused slightly, and a trace of solemnity flashed in the depths of his eyes, and these are not the abilities that this guy can make us helpless. Oh, I am now interested. What is that? According to the news from Marine that Carteris died last time, this guy should not be a demon fruit power, but he can use the ability of space to move in space anytime, anywhere, just like eating and drinking water. That's why we can't do anything about him, and it's also why we came to you, my lord. Spatial movement? Not demon fruit power? Well, that's a special race. The interest in Im's eyes became more intense. This was the first time he showed interest in something in front of the 5 elders in hundreds of years. Devil fruit, in the final analysis, is to borrow the power of others. For this kind of powerhouse, even if the god-level Nika fruit known as the Drum of Liberation appears again, he will not have much interest in it. Because he was able to defeat the Nika fruit ability user 800 years ago, and today, 800 years ago, he can defeat it again. Although for the sake of eternal life and some reasons, he couldn't leave this palace, but as the person closest to God in this world, ordinary things can't interest him. And from the mouth of 5 elders, I know that a special race that can use space to move at will has appeared in this world. Although it is only one person now, it also makes him interested. With the emergence of interest, it is a monstrous murderous intent. He does not allow anything in this world that could threaten him. For example, the Lunalia tribe who used to live on the Red Line, this tribe is a group of people with special abilities. But now this world can no longer find the figure of this family, it should have been exterminated. There was a shudder in the soul of the 5 elders. Although the voice was just a single word, it was like a giant hand lifting the sky, pushing away the haze in 5 elders' hearts and making them smile. It is good. Although I am interested in the special race of Sorata, it is just a little interest. After speaking, the 5 elders all headed to the bottom, waiting for I Am to give them an answer. Tell me, what do you want? Only then would he give Sorata a high look. The sword-holding bald 5 elders who was the first to speak made his final request. I beg Lord I Am, let the silver-haired lamp, which has seriously threatened the balance of the world and the world government, disappear from history. Silver hair, wait to receive the punishment from heaven. True punishment of God. There was no sound, the palace was surprisingly quiet at this moment. Although they wanted Sorata's ability, but they couldn't grasp it, they had to let him die. It was as if he sensed Im's killing intent. For these special races, there is nothing that can restrain them from using their abilities, and he is all malicious in killing them. Im spoke again, and calmness was restored in his voice and eyes. If one day Sorata can stand on the red line, come to the Holy Land Marijoy, and come before him. And the killing intent was like a swift wind, it came and went faster, and didn't stay here for too long. M thought for a while before speaking. Chapter 273 Golden Egg. Sorata didn't know that the biggest boss in the world, at the request of the 5 old men 5 elders, looked at him from the long years. He also needs to be punished by turning off the lights. Sorata is now lying on the beach of a small island, drinking fruit juice leisurely and basking in the sun. It was already dusk when I rushed out of the hurricane area outside the Devil's Triangle last night. Seeing that the sea was calm, they parked the boat in that area and rested all night. It's noon the next day. Not long after they set off from that sea area this morning, they saw this small island with a very beautiful scenery. Behind the small island, there are more small islands, which can't be seen at a glance. From the looks of it, this area should be an archipelago. No wonder they came out of the Devil's Triangle and saw so many seabirds. In the primeval forest not far behind the beach, there is a towering cliff that seems to have been cut open by someone. In the middle of the cliff, a sky-high waterfall poured down like an upside-down Milky Way, and the rumbling sound spread throughout the island. On the cliffs on both sides of the cliff, countless seabirds are coming in and out of their nests. Looking in from the beach, the cliff shrouded in mist hangs a huge colorful rainbow in the sun, just like a fairyland on earth, too beautiful to behold. Sorata, let's go on an adventure. Wearing adventure suits, ropes hanging around their waists, and cowboy hats on their heads, the 3 of them came down from the Liberty, which was stranded on the beach in the distance. Passing by Sorata's parasol, I greeted him, and rushed into the virgin forest behind the beach with a smile. Wait for me, yo-ho-ho-ho. Behind them, Brooke also changed his gentleman's attire and put on a denim suit similar to that of Iowa and the others. Mr. Sorata, I'm going to play with Awa and the others too. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho. Passing by Sorata, he also greeted Sorata, and couldn't wait to follow Ahua and the others into the jungle. Their laughter can be heard from afar. Shaking his head, Sorata withdrew his hand, glanced at Indigo lying next to him, and said with a smile, Indigo, why don't you go in and play? Forget it. Calcalcal. Indigo took a sip of the juice, turned his head and smiled at Sorata. I'm getting old, I don't want to move anymore. Sorata knew what was going on when he saw the dark circles on Indigo's face. This guy has been in his lab since Thriller Bark, and he doesn't know what he's researching? Advertisement. It must be that some new infectious disease was discovered in Moria's lair. A large number of corpses have been stored there all year round, and it has been in a dark and humid environment, so it is understandable that the upgraded virus will breed. No, Indigo left the infirmary today, and the first thing he did was to sterilize everyone, the Liberty, and then let everyone take his newly researched medicine. Although everyone didn't feel any discomfort, they didn't reject Indigo's kindness. In fact, with their physical fitness at this time, most diseases in this world, even poisons, have no effect on them. After all, their bodies at this time are no longer comparable to ordinary people. Since coming to this world, Sorata has never been sick again, and he doesn't even remember what sickness is. At this moment, the sunlight in front of him was suddenly blocked by someone. Looking up, Kuina was standing in front of him, wearing a bikini suit, revealing white and smooth thighs like suet jade. Sorata said softly, What's wrong? Sorata, let's go and play in the water with me. Playing with water. Sorata paused. What a distant word. But when he saw the bright smile on Kuina's face and looking at him expectantly, he lifted the blanket covering his body and stood up. Let's go. Seeing Sorata stand up, Kuina took his hand, turned around and pulled him quickly into the sea. With Sorata around, she is not afraid of seawater. In the distance, Robin, who was wearing a purple bikini with a swimming ring hanging around his waist, saw Kuina pull Sorata over, not paying attention to the fact that he had just left Alabasta, and his pretty face, which was gradually turning white, also showed a smile. If the 2 landlubbers want to play in the water, they have to find someone to watch them, and the toolman Sorata is the best choice. Calcalcal, Indigo, looking at the 3 people playing in the water by the beach, laughed, It's nice to be young. Shaking his head, he raised the fruit cup and took a sip, then put down the fruit cup. He also lifted the blanket and rushed towards the seawater. When you come to the beach, how can you not play in the water? Don't look at his age, just think that his heart is also getting old. Advertisement. In the forest, the 3 of Ahua are competing who can hunt the biggest prey. No weapons allowed, only fists. Fortunately, it is not an ancient island like Lil Garden, so the animals on the island are not as exaggerated as Lil Garden. 2 hours later, each of them dragged a huge animal that no one had ever seen before out of the forest. Even Brooke, with a clutch of eggs, was racing towards the beach. In the sky behind him, 2 big birds were croaking and chasing him. And he was running and laughing. When he saw the 3 of Ahua through the jungle, he laughed and shouted for help. Haha, Brooke, you are too useless. How are you going to dig out the bird's nest? Awa patted his belly and laughed loudly. It happens that there is still a shortage of bird meat. Arlo threw away the cowboy hat on his head, stretched out his hand to wipe it on his head, and straightened his killer hairstyle that was crushed by the hat. Then he took out the dark hound, took 2 shots without aiming, and let him follow behind Brooke. The two big birds shut their mouths. With its huge body, without the buoyancy provided by its wings, due to its inertia, the big bird still rushed out of the jungle, passed by Brook, and plowed a long gully on the sand, spreading all the way to Arlo's feet. Yo ho ho ho, Brook ran over quickly, first thanked Aluo, then kicked the dead bird, and said with a big smile, I told you not to chase after me, didn't I just take some of your eggs? It's all right now, even you guys are planted here, and you're going to be our food, yo ho ho ho. As he spoke, he raised his head, looked at Ahua, and opened the clothes rolled up on his stomach. Ahua, look at this egg, isn't it beautiful? The first time I saw it, I felt that it must be a rare thing. After hearing Brook's words, the three of Ahua quickly stretched out their heads and looked into his open clothes. They saw a dozen or so fist-sized, golden yellow bodies shining golden halos in the sun, just like gold in a dream. Golden egg. Everyone swallowed in unison. Because this golden egg didn't know what was going on, but it exuded a fragrance that no one had ever smelled before. This fragrance seems to have turned into a real dish, so that those who smell it can't help but arouse their appetite. Nice one. The three of them spoke together, and then all stared at the golden egg with bright eyes. Yo ho ho ho, it looks like a really good thing. Seeing everyone's reaction, Brook laughed too. Chapter 274 Unknown Enemy. There are the giant beast hunted by the three of Ahua, as well as the two big birds brought out by Brook and killed by Aluo, and the bird eggs he took out. Everyone held a banquet on the beach. After all, it has been more than a week since they sailed from the capital of Seven Waters. For a week, though, the food is still the same. But frozen food, where's the food that hunts on the spot delicious? Not to mention the golden egg that Brook found. So in this banquet, everyone had a rare experience of complete relaxation that is rarely seen on the Grand Line. And with the addition of Brook, his music, and his bad jokes, the party of their group was completely complete, with more laughter than ever before. After drinking and eating, Sorata moved down to the piano and joined Brook on Bink's Wine. This cheerful music, with the laughter of the crowd, lasted until the sun set in the west, the full moon rose in the east, and continued until the sky was full of stars, illuminating the entire sea. By this time, everyone was lying on the beach again, admiring the brilliant starry sky for a while, and then boarded the Liberty one after another, and went to sleep. This night, everyone fell asleep with a smile on their faces. The feeling of having a companion by his side kept the smile on Brook's face unstoppable until he fell asleep. He cherishes this hard-won partner again, and is extremely grateful to God for caring for him so much. Just when he was about to despair, he sent Sorata and his group to his side. And brought him the news of Laboon, and also let Sorata invite him on board. If he used to complain about fate for giving him such a miserable life, but after boarding the Liberty, his complaints have completely disappeared. At this moment, he felt that he was the one favored by fate, otherwise why would he be given so many surprises one after another? Laboon, wait for me to complete the agreement. After I complete the agreement around the Grand Line, I will slowly tell you the story of what happened along the way. The first half was very exciting. We went to various islands, including Sky Island. Although we were buried in the Devil's Triangle, I believe that following Mr. Sorata and the others, there will be no less exciting than before. No, it should be more exciting. So, wait for me, give me some more time, I will definitely come back to meet you and complete our agreement. Advertisement. In his sleep, Brook saw Laboon again and the companions of the Rumba Pirates. This time, he was no longer alone, and beside him, he had new partners, Sorata and others. All this made the companions of the Rumba Pirates show their sincere joy for him, and it also made him have a gentle smile on his face even when he fell asleep. It's good to be alive, glad again that he's still alive. Only when he is alive can he meet Sorata and others, set sail again, feel the greatness of life, cherish the beauty of life more, and fulfill the agreement he made with Laboon. On the beach, only Sorata and Kuina are still here. Looking at the cute Kuina with her head bit by bit, Sorata put his arms around her waist, and hugged her tightly in his arms. If you're sleepy, go to sleep, what are you doing here with me? What? Kuina rubbed her head in Sorata's arms, didn't speak, let out a breath, gradually narrowed her eyes, the corners of her mouth turned up, and there was a smile on her face that never faded. You? Sorata looked at Kuina's pretty face flushed under the firelight, smiled softly, and then relaxed her body, allowing Kuina to sleep more comfortably. He raised his head, looked at the bright moon and the stars in the sky, and was slightly lost in thought. To be honest, he hasn't been this relaxed and happy for a long time. Their team has indeed become more energetic with the addition of Brook. This guy is a living treasure. After a short time on board, he has become a very good friend with everyone on board. And he is not shy at all, and he is very measured when joking. After knowing the relationship between Kuina and him, he never made dirty jokes with Kuina again, only in front of Robin. It has to be said that this guy is worthy of being a human spirit who lived alone in the mist for 50 years. Very measured. What? At this moment, Sorata suddenly found that the moon in the sky had changed. Being very sensitive to space, he found that this very ordinary island had changed. It seems to be dangerous. Advertisement. Looking at the full moon in the sky gradually filled with blood, Sorata's eyes flickered coldly. He didn't expect that here, they would meet people who were not afraid of death. Marine, world government, or a pirate, or a bounty hunter. Sasha. On the quiet island, suddenly there was a lot of sound of falling leaves caused by something going through the woods. A red light appeared in the fundus of the eye and then quickly disappeared. Shaking his head, Sorata put his left hand behind his head, and then fell backwards on the beach, squinting at the full moon in the sky, which was getting redder and redder, and listening to the rustling sounds getting closer behind him. The corner of his mouth curled up. A cold smile. It's either God level or God level, and now there are 3 God level fruits in his dimensional bag that are useless. Ignoring the gradually changing full moon in the sky and the rustling sound from the forest, Sorata lowered her head and said softly to Kuina, "Don't catch a cold, it will be bad. After all, the temperature difference between day and night on the beach is still quite high." Big. Seeing that Kuina was gone, the tenderness in Sorata's blue eyes disappeared, replaced by indifference, even colder than the beach in the dark night, and of course, banter is indispensable. He didn't take the initiative to attack him, since he was here to trouble him and take his head. If he didn't have to look for it, that guy would come out by himself. Without waiting for Sorata to reply, she turned into lightning and disappeared in the same place. "I just don't know, this guy has been hiding on this island, or he saw their boat and came here temporarily." Kuina looked at Sorata, looked at his eyes brighter than the starry sky, and smiled softly. "I don't know if it's his good luck or what, but the demon fruit power he met so far seems to be very powerful, guys. Now that you're awake, go sleep on the boat." Then he raised his head from Sorata's arms, sat up straight, stretched his hands high. "And the person who came this time, although he hasn't met yet, but from the point of view of being able to create a domain that covers the entire island, this guy's fruit cannot be weak." As if sensing something, Kuina in Sorata's arms slowly opened her eyes with trembling eyelashes. Then he turned his head and smiled at Sorata. "Okay. You also go to bed early, and you have to leave early tomorrow morning." With Sorata here, she doesn't have to care about their safety at all, but her sensitivity to danger is involuntary, so she opens her eyes. Interesting, actually another domain ability user. Except for the door fruit and the time fruit, he plans to put it into the item, and the other fruits may only stay inside and become moldy. Chapter 275 Blood Moon, Eyes. Take the wine gourd that was placed on the sand, lift it up and dump it in the air. Under the blood moon, the wine seemed to be imprinted with uneasy red, shining with a cool light, and slowly flowed into Sorata's mouth. Throat swelled, Sorata took a few swigs, put down the wine gourd, his eyes were pensive. Where is this guy? He hasn't found out where this guy is until now. As early as the moment the space changed, his observation hockey swept across the entire island. Except for countless animals and a group of things that kept rushing towards him, he didn't find any other suspicious auras. Weird. Forget it, what should appear will eventually appear. Kill this group of things that keep coming towards him, and that guy will come out naturally. No longer thinking about it so much, Sorata simply closed the observation hockey covering the entire island, squinted her eyes, and admired the unique blood-red starry sky. The rustling behind him was getting closer. After a while, Sorata could even hear a violent gasp. Whoosh whoosh. Those monsters rushed out of the woods, their blood-red eyes became even more blood-red under the light of the blood moon, and they rushed towards Sorata without stopping at all. Obviously, their target was Sorata from the beginning. The black shadow blocked the moonlight, and also allowed Sorata, who was lying down, to see clearly what the thing above was. It turned out to be a bat, an extra-large bat. The bat opened its mouth wide, its sharp teeth gleaming coldly under the moonlight, like the blade of a sharp sword, and there was no trace of extra emotion in its blood-red pupils. Only madness enough to tear apart anything that stands in their way. Sorata's eyes were fixed, and she stood up with seemingly slow but fast movements. Here comes the sword. I saw Zon Kong quietly stuck on the beach beside him, trembling. The blade came out of its sheath with a clank. A cold light flashed across the air, and landed in Sorata's bluffing right hand. He bent his 5 fingers, grasped the handle of the knife firmly, and swung it upwards. The cold knife light instantly chopped off the bat that swooped down towards him above his head. With a puff, the light of the knife easily cut across the bat's body, and he turned sideways, avoiding the bat's fall, turning into 2 bodies, and the blood sprayed from it. Then he raised his head and looked at the countless bats that covered the moonlight and completely plunged the place he was standing into darkness. In the blue pupils, the nebula turned, and a domineering aura radiated from him to the surroundings. The space seemed to vibrate, causing ripples like water waves. Advertisement, but these bats seemed to have no sense of awe at all. Their bodies only paused for a moment in the ripples, and then with red eyes, they quickly swooped towards Sorata. Sorata paused. These guys aren't afraid of Conqueror's hockey? Really powerful, it's getting more interesting. Retracting the Conqueror's hockey, turning his right wrist, Sorata stepped forward and slashed through a swooping bat. Then he turned sideways and stabbed another bat into the brain. Then there seemed to be countless figures of him. In the light of the sword, bats were like moths, jumping at Sorata's light without fear. It is fire, but it is life that is paid. Even if they died, the madness and blood in the eyes of these guys did not weaken in the slightest. Looking at the bat corpses piled up on the ground, Sorata looked at the jungle inside the beach for the first time. Because he heard more rustling. Withdrawing his gaze, swiping his knife, and slashing across the body of the last bat, Sorata stood where he was, raised his head, and looked at the full moon in the sky that had completely turned blood-colored. Is this thing doing something wrong? He could feel that these animals had turned into heartless monsters. They have no idea what fear is. Puff, swipe your right hand to the right, swinging bloodline off the knife. Then with a thought, The knife stuck in the sand in the distance flew over and hung on his left waist automatically. Ding! He put the knife back into its sheath, then bent his body slightly and leaned forward, as if Ei drew his knife. He raised his head and stared at the blood moon in the sky. Since it hasn't appeared yet, and it can't be found, let's smash the full moon first. Jung. The clear knife sound resounded throughout the beach, and then seemed to be blocked by something, and could only spread around Sorata, but not out. The partners are all asleep, and Sorata certainly doesn't want to disturb them. Whether he killed the bat before or drew the knife now, he kept his voice within his space and didn't let it out. Advertisement following the sound of the sword, a huge crescent-shaped silver-gray slash appeared. The slash was against the light, like teleportation, cutting through the air, and flying to the sky in an instant, as if it was really going to slash the moon. As time passed, Zon Zon landed on a layer of space that shrouded the island, and then the entire sky rippled. It was as if a stone had suddenly fallen on a calm lake. And chopping as that stone. There was no earth-shattering loud noise, nor overwhelming coercion. Slashing on the moon, just like Kyoka Suigetsu, suddenly disappeared into the ripples of the moon. Sorata looked at the moon in the sky, and at the ripples that gradually subsided. The expression on his face changed and became serious. Not broken. He felt no danger. Is that guy mixed with animals? Then it appeared directly at the place where the previous slash was cut. Even if you use the space domain, you can't stop it, and you still have to wake up your partners when the time comes. What is this thing? Feeling the runaway animals on the island, Sorata knew she couldn't wait any longer. To be able to block, no, to absorb the power of his slash, this guy shouldn't be avoiding him. These guys are not afraid of Conqueror's Haki. He really wants to kill. When will he have to kill? You must know that with his current strength, the slash that contains armament Haki is not something ordinary people can block. Even the elite vice admiral in Marine, it will take a lot of effort to block it. He touched it upwards, as if he had touched the real moon, and then a red breath, like flowing water, quickly wrapped around his arm. This is what he does not allow. If someone looked up from the ground, what kind of blood moon is this? It's simply a monstrous eye. Black gradually appeared around. A blacker than this night. And until now, he has not felt any human breath. Cold, crazy, and cold, this is the breath he feels. Looking at the blood moon, Sorata sheathed the knife, and the figure gradually disappeared in place. But no matter how hard the red breath was, it couldn't get into his arm, and could only keep spreading around, wrapping Sorata's whole body in a short while. Then the blood moon seemed to come to life instantly. Chapter 276 Brother More with the appearance of the eyes. Like an unfolding scroll, more details emerged from the void. First the nose, then the other eye, then the sharp teeth full of cold light and the wide open mouth. At first glance, it looks like the countless dead bats on the ground. It's just that this one is countless times bigger than the bats on the ground. A strong wind appeared. The bat flapped its wings, blood red, replacing the pupils of the moon, staring at Sorata, who was completely wrapped in red energy. The corners of his ferocious mouth gradually turned up, and a rampant smile appeared on his ugly face. On his shoulders sat a short, small man. The man looked at Sorata, laughed and said, "Silver-haired Sorata, the world's 5th highest bounty criminal with a bounty of 2.5 billion. Ah ha 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 ha, so what, it's not caught by us yet." There was a burst of pride in his eyes as he spoke. They are the Moore brothers, the world-famous bounty hunters. Eldest brother, Moore Kongda, also known as the Giant Bat, ate devil fruit, the demon fruit power in the form of Zone Phantom Beast God of Calamity. The scarlet enchantment covering the island is one of his abilities. This ability can turn other emotions in the hearts of animals into madness, so the animals that Sorata meets will not be afraid of his Conqueror's Haki. As for why he is in the form of a bat, we can only ask the real god of disaster. And why can't Sorata sense where this guy is? The first Sorata has no mental power. And this guy's second ability is to be invisible, not transparent in the general sense, but truly invisible. The body, breath, and even the soul, all external manifestations, are all invisible. And without the breath, without the soul wave, Sorata has no mental power, and it is only a ghost if he can find it. And what was it that blocked Sorata's slash? That would be about another of them. The second brother, Moore Steel Cylinder, is a Paramecia fruit absorber who can absorb any type of attack and send it to another space. It can be said that he is completely immune to type attacks. But there is a disadvantage, that is, it can only absorb frontal damage. But with his elder brother and the cooperation of the two brothers, there are really few people in this world who can escape from their hands. But this person does not include Sorata in front of him. Have you laughed enough? Boom, the space outside Sorata's body swelled for a while, instantly tearing the red energy surrounding him. Advertisement: this red energy can really control many people when they are not prepared, but it is a pity that they met him. The disappearance came to an abrupt end. Looking at Sorata, who was intact and suspended in the air, Brother Moore's pupils contracted for a while. The sneak attack failed to catch the guy in front of them. They knew that if they fought head-on, it would be even more impossible to catch them, so the moment they saw Sorata appear from the red energy, the eldest brother Moore Gangda flapped his wings, turned around instantly, and flew into the distance. And Moore Steel Cylinder was also on Moore Gangda's back, facing Sorata, raising his hands in front of him. This is the prerequisite for his ability to activate. Looking at these two guys who didn't appear in the original book, Sorata's eyes flashed with curiosity. Originally, he thought that the guy who could block his slash should be a very powerful person. But the moment these two guys showed their figures, he knew he was thinking wrong. No wonder I didn't feel any danger. It turns out that these two guys all rely on their inexplicable fruit abilities to get close to him. Interesting. Whether it's the ability to block his slash, or the ability to be above him, he can't sense it, the ability to be completely invisible, or the bloody, space barrier that can cover the entire island, and the ability to wrap around him. The blood-red energy of the body is actually very interesting and powerful. If these two guys have a deeper development of the fruit and a stronger body, if they are thrown into the new world, they will be very strong guys. However, since they came in front of him recklessly and attacked him, their journey and life can only come to an end here. Boom. Taking a step forward, Sorata stepped on the void, causing ripples, and then his body disappeared in place, appearing directly in front of the giant bat. When the bat saw Sorata, two streaks of blood-red energy instantly shot out from its blood-red eyes, and rushed towards Sorata. Looking at the red beam of light like a laser, red light appeared in Sorata's eyes, and he shook his body slightly. The red beam of light rubbed against his body and shot towards the sea below. Then it shot through the surface of the sea silently and disappeared into the depths of the sea. Looking down at the body, looking at the sea surface that was pierced by the blood-red beam of energy and thus could not heal for a long time, Sorata's eyes flashed with wonder. Another fruit that is very strong in every aspect. One thing is not good, it is too ugly. Looking up at the bat that turned around and fled in another direction, Sorata put on a sneer and murderous intent in his eyes. Jung. Cut the air out of the sheath. The cold light of the knife, in this dark night, just like the moonlight, is like a galaxy, slashing towards the bat quickly. Puff, advertisement. There was still no sound, and I saw more steel cylinder holding his hands up, blocking the front of the slash. The slash hit the void in front of more steel cylinder's hands, causing a burst of ripples, which were then directly absorbed by the ripples. Absorb the attack? Sorata looked at more steel cylinder, a flash of memory appeared in his eyes. He remembered that a few months ago, on Ore Island, there was a guy with CP0, who had the ability to reflect fruit, and it was said that he could reflect all damage. But that guy, I'm afraid he has completely become a dead bone now. Can it really absorb any attack? Click, lightning, purple-red lightning, continuously spread from Sorata's body to the surroundings. At this moment, it seemed that the entire sky was darkened. Haki, who is purple-black with purple-red arcs from time to time, quickly wraps around Sorata's arm to Zon Kong's blade. Then Sorata raised the knife and swung it at the Moore brothers. This knife, you block it and see. Click, he turned around and looked at the gradually quiet forest in the distance. With one step, his figure disappeared under the moonlight. This time there was a sound, but under the control of the shirtless man above the bat, wearing only a pair of floral shorts and slippers on his feet, the silver-haired man did not spread the sound at all. After that, the slash continued to advance amidst the panic of Moore Gasket. I saw the ripples in front of him that blocked countless attacks for him, as if he had reached the upper limit of his endurance. Under the purple-black slash, there were continuous crackling sounds, like the sound of a broken mirror. Sheath the knife. The purple-black slash smashed the ripples that stood in front of him and claimed to be able to absorb all attacks, and moved forward without hesitation, easily slashing through the body of Moore Steel Cylinder, and under him, the body of his elder brother Moore Gangda body. Sorata looked at the two brothers who were crushed into powder and fluttering in the wind in his spatial domain. The emotions in his eyes calmed down. Ding, ripples completely shattered. In fact, from the appearance of Sorata to their death, it was only a few seconds. And these few seconds, the two brothers Moore couldn't cross it, the monstrous gap between life and death. Then, there was a click. At the same time, the bodies of the two brothers were also frozen in the air. After all, the world still depends on strength. As if the real space was shattered, the slash of the purple-black entangled electric arc cut through the space, and instantly appeared in front of the rippling space in front of Moore Steel Cylinder. Boom, of course, the hearts and souls of the two Moore brothers were also broken at the same time. If the strength is not enough, it will be like the countless dead souls under his knife, and they will not even be able to leave their names. Chapter 277 Attention from New World. The world will never stop running because of the absence of anyone, let alone an unknown person who did not appear in the original book. So when Sorata woke up early in the morning, he had completely forgotten what happened last night. If it weren't for the addition of two fruits he didn't know in the dimension bag, he wouldn't remember the two people last night. Strange to say. He killed so many bats on the beach last night, but he didn't see any of them when he got up this morning. Even the blood seemed to be absorbed by the island, not a single drop remained. This is the evolutionary ability of nature. No matter who it is, even if it is a god, as long as it dies, it is just a piece of meat in the mouth of other animals. After eating breakfast, it was equivalent to taking a day off and having a good night's sleep. Everyone set off again in good spirits. What interesting things will be waiting for them next? Stay tuned. New World. Uncharted Waters. A huge sailboat like a real beluga whale, with a small beluga-style sailboat that is a few times smaller and looks the same, is constantly sailing towards an unknown place. The huge ship is like the king of this sea area, oppressing the sea, so that the waves are no longer rough, but extraordinarily calm. On the ship, on the deck designed like a gladiatorial arena, sat a tall and strong man on the innermost side. Although an infusion tube was inserted in his arm, it did not affect his haki at all. At this time, the man had already lost his usual haki, and was carefully reaching out to touch the wine jar beside him. Boom, just when the man's hand was about to touch the wine jar, an arm that seemed small compared to the man's arm stretched out and slapped the wine jar. Father, how many times have I told you that, given your physical condition, it's best not to drink alcohol during the infusion? Looking up, the hand holding the wine jar turned out to be a man with pineapple hair on his head. The man stared helplessly at the tall and strong hockey man. Really, how many times do you have to say it before you will listen? These two people are Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world at this time, and his son, the captain of Whitebeard's first team, who is also the ship's doctor and chief steward, Marco, who has the title of Phoenix. Gu la 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 la. Whitebeard stared at Marco, slowly withdrew his hand, opened his mouth and laughed loudly. Marco, I just want to have a sip of wine. Do you need to guard me like this? It's okay if Whitebeard didn't say anything, but when he said it, Marco seemed to think of something, and said loudly to Whitebeard, Did you have a drink? Every time is a big altar. Advertisement. Whitebeard looked away sheepishly. He knew that the eldest son who had been with him the longest was not easy to fool, so he hurriedly changed the subject. Oh, by the way, Marco, what has Ace been doing lately? Ace? Sure enough, Marco was attracted by Whitebeard's words. He lowered his head and thought for a while, then said, It seems that I want to go to that silver-haired one-on-one, and see why that guy offers so much more reward than him. Oh, silver hair? Whitebeard thought for a while, and then asked, I remember that guy only offered a reward of 1.5 billion a while ago? Okay. Marco nodded, then pondered for a moment, wondering. I don't know what that guy has done recently. The bounty has skyrocketed by 1 billion, even the blue-haired little girl who is with him has increased by 1 billion. These two brats have a combined reward of 4.5 billion. Having said that, he looked up at Whitebeard and said with a smile, If it goes up again, their reward will be higher than yours, Dad. Oh, more than me. Whitebeard was taken aback for a moment, then laughed loudly, and then there was a gleam of light in his eyes. It should be what the world government did to them, and it didn't want the world to know about it. Then the world government failed, so I had to add a bounty to the silver-haired gang to increase their value in the eyes of other pirates, and let the pirates find trouble with them. Isn't that what the world government has been doing? Gu la 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 la. Marco looked at the laughing Whitebeard, and there was a smile on the corner of his mouth. With the urine of the world government, what Dad said should be right. But thinking of Ace, he showed a trace of worry again. Father, it will be fine for Ace to go to the silver-haired one-on-one. What can happen? The laughter stopped abruptly. Whitebeard lowered his head, looked at Marco Hockey and said, Son of lousy, no matter how powerful that silver-haired Brad is, he shouldn't be much better than Ace. Then he changed his voice and said relaxedly, Judging from the personality that the silver-haired kid has always shown, he is obviously not an evil pirate. Ace is only here to compete with him. If he can win against Ace, he probably won't hurt Ace's life. Marco thought for a while, and felt that what his father said made sense, so he couldn't help but nodded. Okay. At this moment, he froze in place, and saw the wine jar under him appearing in Whitebeard's hands at some point. Advertisement. Whitebeard found out that Marco had found him, and he didn't hide it, so he quickly raised the wine jar and kept pouring it into his mouth. Goo. It's like pouring, not drinking. Okay. Seeing that it was of no avail, Marco had no choice but to stop Whitebeard, who was drinking with a loud voice. Really, I let you get away with it again if you didn't pay attention. Stop quickly, I won't snatch you. Drink slowly, drink slowly. Hearing Marco's voice, Whitebeard stopped immediately, swallowed the wine in his mouth, grabbed the edge of the wine jar, put down the jar, and looked down at Marco with a hint of complacency in his eyes. Fight wits and courage with me, you are still a little tender, son. Although he thought so in his heart, the wine jar was placed on the other side of his body, far away from Marco. Marco looks at Whitebeard, a smile playing in the back of his pupils. In fact, with the strength of his knowledge, it is impossible for even a strong man like Whitebeard to take away the wine jar under his hands. This is just a little fun for the two of them. If the time came when he couldn't even drink alcohol, how could he, as the ship's chief steward and ship doctor, let the wine appear on the deck and in front of his father? Whitebeard raised the wine jar, touched it with the raised wine jar in the hands of Marco, who was sitting on the ground, then raised his head and took a sip. He is very clear about his body. In fact, he is no longer at the peak. Especially in recent years, with the increase of age, the hidden wounds left in the body in youth suddenly popped up. Especially his shock fruit. Shock fruit is really strong. It claims to be able to destroy the world, and it can really destroy the world, but the prerequisite is that you have an invincible body that can withstand shocks. Due to the frequent use of shock fruit, his body has long been left with many hidden injuries from countless shocks. When he was young, he could not take these dark wounds seriously, but when he got old, his body functions gradually failed to compare with when he was young, and that was a different situation. He could feel that his strength was declining year by year. But no matter how he slipped, he was also the number one Whitebeard in the world, and the common father of their Whitebeard pirates. Looking at the sea in the distance, a hint of hockey rises from Bai-Hai's body. Although he and Marco didn't seem to care about Ace's challenge to Silverhair, they both knew that given the importance world government attached to Silverhair, and the fact that Silverhair could leave wounds on Kizaru, Silverhair's strength must be at the moment Ace above. Even though Ace is already very strong at his age. But strong is strong, and he will not assume that other people are like him just because he is weak. So the next Moby DK still involuntarily headed towards New World to the Fishman Island, the sea area close to the red line. Before receiving news from Ace, I'm afraid the Moby DK will be wandering in that sea area. Chapter 278 Potter Cast D Ace. Getting famous is such a hassle sometimes. Suddenly it feels like the whole world is your enemy. This is not. In a sea area, not long after leaving the previous resort island, Sorata and the others met other pirate ships. This group of pirates was the same as other pirates. When they saw their ship, they didn't run away immediately. Instead, they turned around and ran towards them as if they had been given blood. Then, as expected, he was shot into the sea by Arlo. In the first half of the Grand Line, such lifeless pirates are everywhere. These guys have to enter the new world, and only after being baptized by the real strong will they learn to be in awe. I ignored the nameless pirate group that was engulfed by the fire, and ignored the screaming and countless diving pirates. The Liberty directly passed them, facing the rising sun, and quickly moved forward. Destination: Sabodi Archipelago. Sabodi Archipelago, the first half of the Grand Line, the last island of the park. After that, there will be a battle for hegemony, the new world ruled by the 4 emperors. In that sea area, the marine and world government no longer have the advantage of dominating the world, and the chaos there will surpass this paradise too much. Countless pirates for fame and fortune gathered in that sea area to compete for the highest throne unique to that pirate after the big waves washed the sand. However, decades later, New World gave birth to 4 emperors, but never gave birth to a true One Piece who overwhelmed the sea. Who will be next? Let's wait and see. The Fishmen Island. The only way for pirates to go back and forth between New World and Paradise. The island is 10,000 meters below the sea, and Sky Island is 2 extremes. Although there are 2 extremes geographically, the only thing in common is that both places are among the top few beautiful places in the world of One Piece. Above this is the red line that spans the entire Grand Line and encircles the entire world. And directly above the Fishmen Island, there stands the most powerful base camp in the world at this time, Holy Land Marijoy. This is the base of the world government, the office of the 5 elders, the supreme leader in charge of the world government, and the residence of the celestial dragons. Advertisement also known as Pengu City. This is also the second way to enter from New World and the park. But to pass here, you have to give up the pirate ship first. On this condition, pirates cannot pass. Besides, there are still many interrogations on it. Therefore, people who lived here were nobles, large merchant ships, marines, and people from countries that joined the world government. Of course, Shichibukai can also pass here, back to the Fishmen Island. At this time, the Fishmen Island covers the whole of the Fishmen Island, inside the huge double-layer semicircular bubble film shield, facing the exit of the paradise. Ace, are you really going to fight that guy one-on-one? The person who spoke was a whale shark. He has storm-like eyebrows and sideburns, a hairstyle of dingbai, a short thick black beard on his chin, and a lightning-like scar at the corner of his left eye. The sun logo of the pirates, wearing a patterned yukata and clogs. He is one of the current Shichibukai, Sea Strait Jinbei, the captain of the Sun Pirates at this time, and the boss of Murloc Street. Ha ha ha, I said Jinbei, I'm not going to take that guy's head, I'm just going to compete with him. Opposite Jinbei, stood a shirtless man with the word, ASCE, tattooed on his left arm, where the S was a cross. The man wears an orange cowboy hat with, smile, and, sad, badges on the brim of the cowboy hat, and a skull brand tied to the end of the hat rope. And around his neck was a red necklace like a prayer bead. The man put his index finger on the front of the cowboy hat, raised his head, and smiled at Jinbei. That guy is also from my hometown, East Blue. Anyway, there is nothing to do in New World these days. It's quite boring. I just want to see it. How could this fellow be offered such a high reward? Ha 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 ha. The man is the Whitebeard Pirates, the captain of the second team, and Potter Cast D Ace, with the title of Fire Fist. Bounty: 550 million berry. Looking at the laughing Ace, Jinbei shrugged helplessly. Although I don't know why the silver-haired bounty skyrocketed so much, they must have done something that caused the world government a headache, so you should be careful. Although they are going to compete, no one knows who they are. Okay, I know. Ace put down his hand, put his hand on Jinbei's shoulder, and turned his head to look at him. I said, Jinbei, when did you become such a mother-in-law? Am I the mother-in-law? Jinbei glanced at Ace. I'm concerned about my friends. If something happens to you in the park, the Whitebeard Pirates will definitely not ignore it. You have to understand this. Advertisement. Speaking of Whitebeard, Ace's face instantly became serious. He let go of his hand, and his eyes became more serious. Don't worry, it's just to have a look, just to learn from each other, nothing will happen. Taking a step forward, looking at the small sailboat coated in front of him, Ace's tone became brisk again. Jinbei, I'll go first. If you're lucky, you might meet the silver-haired gang when you go up. Okay. Jinbei looked at Ace, and nodded to the mermaid guard on the side. Then looked at Ace again. Good luck then. Haha, I must be far away. As he spoke, Ace turned his head and smiled at Jinbei, then turned and walked onto the sailboat. Whether going to the surface of the sea or going down to the deep sea, all ships must be coated with a transparent film. This kind of film is done by a professional coater. Whether it is the island above or the Fishmen Island below, there are a large number of such coaters. Strange to say, this kind of membrane is not known what material it is. Looking at a thin layer, it can withstand the pressure of tens of thousands of meters of deep sea, which is really amazing. The guard opened the first door, allowing Ace's boat to enter the aisle between the two shields of the Fishman Island. Then close the first door, and then open the outermost door to let the sea water pour into the pipe, so that the boat inside can get out. Slide the boat out of the pipe. Ride up the upwelling current. Ace's boat gradually disappeared from Jinbei's sight. Looking away, Jinbei nodded to the guard next to him, turned around and walked towards the Murloc Street in the distance. Although he was a little worried about Ace, he couldn't leave the Fishman Island for too long, and because of Ace's insistence, he didn't go up with him. In the era of the Great Pirate, countless pirates flooded into the Grand Line, and countless pirates reached the New World through the Fishman Island. As one of the only passages between the New World and the Paradise, the Fishman Island is located in a very special geographical location, and the world aristocrats, celestial dragons, like Murloc slaves very much, which leads to pirates coming here every year, and there are so many human traffickers. When he first joined Shichibukai, he wanted to use the power of marine and world government to protect the Fishman Island. However, due to the long-term hatred between Murlocs and humans, marine can only protect outside, and cannot come to the Fishman Island. Although this blocked some pirates and human traffickers, it couldn't stop those really vicious pirates who were out of profit. If it weren't for Whitebeard's later claim that this place was his territory, countless pirates in this era of great piracy would have devoured the Fishman Island in an instant, turning it into a paradise for human traffickers, a hell for Murlocs and mermaids. So he couldn't be more grateful to Whitebeard. Last year, he met Ace, and in order to protect Whitebeard, he fought with Ace for 5 days and 5 nights, and in the following days, Ace failed to challenge Whitebeard and became the captain of Whitebeard's second team, and then they became friends again, so you will be so concerned about Ace. Hope everything is okay. Chapter 279 Sabodi Archipelago. Boom. Help, help. Shaking his head, he killed another pirate ship that came up to seek death. Aluo blew on the gun, put away the gun handsomely, turned around and leaned against the railing of the bow, and looked at the man lying on the deck chair reading a book. Sorata. Sorata, don't these guys have any brains? Their strength is far different from ours. Why do you want to come up and seek death like moths to a flame? Putting down the book, Sorata looked up at Aluo, and said with a faint smile, the world is big and vast enough, but the dissemination of news can only rely on newspapers and other people's word of mouth. So many people actually live in their own cognition, in the world. In addition, whether it is the world government or the news agencies of this world, the reports will only say that so-and-so is strong, but they will not say where he is strong. This has led to the fact that people in this world do not come from newspapers, but from their own personal experience. Speaking of this, he paused for a moment, and then said, this has led to the fact that most people's cognitive ceiling has not improved. Only after experiencing it will they realize the gap between themselves and the strong. This is also the reason why most of the pirates are arrogant people, because in their cognition, they are the strongest. And the pirates who can sail here, to this sea area that is only a short voyage away from New World, will even have the idea that Lousy is the best in the world, because they came here from countless pirates, surfing the sands with great waves. People. Oh, Aluo nodded, so that's the case. I'm just talking about these guys. Why do they all look arrogant, as if they are the center of the universe and no one is afraid of them? No, Awa suddenly thought of something, looked up at Sorata, isn't there still a bounty? A bounty. Sorata took the juice on the coffee table next to him, took a sip, and then said with a smile. Do you think this thing can really stop those arrogant people? You want to know what they went to sea for? Isn't it fame and fortune? And our heads are not the name and profit. Putting down the juice, Sorata looked at Aluo who lowered his head in thought, and said with a smile, got it. Oh. Nodding his head, Aluo straightened up, the doubts in his eyes disappeared, understood. Snapped, at this moment, a big slap was suddenly slapped on Aluo's shoulder from beside him. Ahua turned around, pushed the frame, and laughed at Aluo. I have to ask Sorata such a simple question. I have figured it out a long time ago. You are really stupid. Want to fight? Slapping Ahua's hand away, Aluo slowly turned around, staring at Ahua with anger in his eyes. Advertisement as if Ahua couldn't feel Aluo's anger, he said contemptuously. Come on, anyway, I haven't done anything for a long time. Watching you fight pirates makes my hands itchy. As he said that, his eyes met Aluo's. In an instant, the surrounding air suddenly froze, and there seemed to be a flash of lightning between their eyes. Whoa. Yet this is not their lightning. As if they sensed something, the two put away their aura at the same time, turned their heads and carefully glanced at Kuina, who was sitting cross-legged on a soft cushion beside him, who was practicing. Seeing more cyan electric arcs on her body than before, he quickly retracted his gaze, looked at each other, and turned his head to look at the two sides at the same time. Sorata glanced at the two of them, shook her head, put down her cup, picked up the book and continued to read. After Robin boarded the boat, he spent most of his time reading the books Robin brought. He doesn't like history books. Although they are books for understanding the world, they are of no use to him, so he spends most of his time reading novels. Yo ho ho ho, Mr. Sorata, the island, see the island. On the observation deck, Brooke put down the binoculars in his hand, leaned on the guardrail, and shouted down to the bow of the ship. After Brooke got on the boat, he spent most of his time with other people on the boat. Maybe he was lonely for a long time. He always wants to help. But he can't cook, and he often breaks the dishes even when washing dishes, so Ahua usually doesn't let him help, and Atao basically has nothing to do with him, so he doesn't want him either. As for Indigo, forget this. While Indigo was interested in Brooke's skeletal body, he hadn't yet thought of experimenting with his companion's body, so Brooke couldn't be of much help. As for Sorata, Kuina, and Robin, the three of them are the most idle people on board. Sorata only eats and drinks books, Robin reads, and Kuina practices, so Brooke can't help with anything. And among them, only Aluo can help with his work, so when he is bored, he always goes to the observation deck to take over Aluo's work. On the one hand, he really wants to do something for everyone, and on the other hand, he has been in the Devil's Triangle for too long, so he is full of freshness to this world, especially the world under the sun, as if he can't get enough of it. Oh, I see. Sorata put down the book, turned her head and stretched out her hand, and made an, okay, gesture to Brooke on the observation deck. Where is the island? Hearing Brooke's voice, Arlo quickly turned his head and looked forward, looking for a while before he saw it. It's really an island, because the distance is too far, only a black spot can be seen, and this black spot cannot be seen unless you look carefully. Coupled with the ups and downs of the sea surface, the black spots look looming. Of course, Brooke standing on a high place, holding a telescope, should be able to see clearly. Advertisement, Brooke, is it the Sabodi Archipelago? Ahua turned around and looked at the observation deck. I don't know, I haven't been to Sabodi Archipelago, but judging by the size of the island, it should be. Oh, hearing that it was Sabodi Archipelago, everyone became excited. Even Kuina, who was practicing, put away the electric current in her body, opened her eyes, an electric arc flashed in her eyes, and then stood up. In the anticipation of everyone, Liberty moved forward gradually. And the surrounding ships gradually increased, and they, like the Liberty, were like confluent rivers heading towards the island ahead. And in these ships, they also saw other pirate groups, but these pirate groups didn't know what happened. They were no longer like the pirate groups they met before, they were like predators when they saw them the same, quickly rushed towards them. On the contrary, it seemed that they were afraid of them. When they saw their flags, they automatically turned and stayed away from them. This made his hands hold the handle of Darkhound's gun, and Awa, who was about to shoot, couldn't help showing a puzzled expression. What's wrong with these guys? Do you understand? Although he knew in his heart that what Awa said was right, the words that came out of his mouth were arguing. I'm really looking forward to it. The first half of the Grand Line, the last island in the park, what is waiting for them? Ha ha. Retracting the Darkhound, he tilted his head to look at Sorata. What else could it be? Afraid of us, and idiots, it is impossible to sail here alive. Aluo frowned and stared at Awa, you don't need to teach me. He straightened his glasses, with an inscrutable look on his face, and then looked at Aluo with a condescending look. We have killed so many pirates, there will always be a few who survived by chance, and those who understand if our people dare to go up to die, they're real idiots. Awa chuckled, with an expression of not caring about you, and then turned his head to look at the gradually clear island in front of him. And at this moment, a large number of seagulls gradually appeared in the sky, moving forward with the boat. Before Sorata replied, Awa spoke up first. The island in front is where they temporarily rest. Chapter 280. The Bar on Island 13 Sabodi Archipelago. The entire island is made up of many big trees, the ground is the roots, and bubbles will emerge from the ground. Therefore, it is also called Soap Bubble Islands. This is the island directly ruled by the celestial dragons and the closest island to the Holy Land Marijoy. There are often celestial dragons coming down from Marijoy to play and buy slaves. So here is the world's largest slave auction house with the most sound service. Human traffickers from all over the world gather here, so that celestial dragons can buy slaves of most races in the world here. Of course, it also includes the mermaid on the Fishman Island in the deep sea 10,000 meters below. At this time, on the edge of Island 13, the Liberty was gradually approaching. Since the island is directly ruled by celestial dragons, there is a marine base on the island. Although there are not two powerful generals, there are still a lot of troops. Moreover, it is very close to naval headquarters, and marine support is always available at any time. Therefore, although there are many pirates here, they generally do not dock in real ports. Only pirates who are going to New World will drive the boat into the location designated by the coder after going to the island to find the coder. As the boat gradually stopped, everyone looked at the island with bubbles constantly rising from the ground in the distance, and their eyes were full of excitement. Let's go. Sorata stood at the bow of the boat, glanced at everyone, then took a step forward, jumped off the bow, and set foot on the land beside the island. It's a bit soft, completely different from normal land. Sorata looked down at the lawn under her feet, stepped on it hard, and enlightenment flashed in her eyes. It is not so much the earth, the lawn, but the moss. Raising his head, looking at the giant tree in the distance, whose canopy covered the entire area, a trace of curiosity flashed in Sorata's eyes. As far as he knows, the entire Sabodi Archipelago is actually the root of a tree. The tree in front of me grew from the roots of that tree. There are 79 such trees on the Sabodi Archipelago. There is a number on each tree, and people call the group of 79 islands the Sabodi Archipelago. The world's largest mangrove, Alcium mangrove. Although I haven't seen the real appearance of the world's largest mangrove tree, the huge Sabodi Archipelago can be formed from the rhizome alone, so you can know how big the tree is. I don't know if this tree grows on the Red Line, or where. Advertisement: it is said to be near naval headquarters. You can check it out when you're bored. In a magical world, such a big tree might have become fine. Ha ha. Shaking his head, Shaking off the daydreaming in his mind, he turned around and saw that his companions had all landed on the island. Sorata stretched out her hand, her palm facing the Liberty, and the nebula turned rapidly in her blue pupils. I saw the extremely huge Liberty in front of everyone, as if being sucked into the space-time channel. Amidst the buzzing sound, it rapidly became smaller and smaller with the distorted space. In the end, it turned into a small toy, floating above Sorata's palm. Except for Kuina, everyone including the three of Ahua stared at Sorata's hand in shock, staring at the small Liberty in his hand. Is this the Liberty? Wow, Sorata, what kind of ability is this? Yo ho 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 ho, it's really amazing, calcal. Turning his head, he looked at the small number of Liberty in his hand, and looked at the crowd quickly. The corners of Sorata's mouth raised, and he said with a faint smile, "This is the same as the battlefield of the gods. I just put the Liberty into my domain and narrowed down the space." Oh, Ahua and the others who knew about the battlefield of the gods looked enlightened, while Brook, who didn't know, was full of doubts. As if sensing Brook's doubts, Sorata turned to Brook and explained, "Don't think too much, you just need to know that this is one of my abilities, and you will know what it is in the future." Yo-ho-ho-ho, got it, Mr. Sorata. Brook put away the doubt in his eyes and smiled at Sorata. Although he was only a skeleton, he was still very emotional. Looking back, Sorata's 5 fingers contracted, and the Liberty in his hand gradually became smaller as his fingers contracted, until it finally became a small glass ball as if it was sealed in amber. Sorata closed her hand, threw the glass ball containing Liberty into the dimensional bag, turned around and looked into the distance and said with a smile, "Let's go. Take a good look around this beautiful island. Then I'll go ahead, you first or me first, haha." As soon as Sorata finished speaking, the three of Ahua couldn't wait to move forward. Looking at the backs of the three of Ahua, Sorata shook his head and followed. Then there's Kuina and Robin, and then there's Indigo and Brook. Sorata, there is 13 written on this tree. Is this island divided into many pieces by this tree? Advertisement. Ahua looked at the huge figures on the trunk of the giant tree, pushed the frame, and turned to look at Sorata. Okay. Sorata nodded. Sabodi Archipelago is an archipelago bounded by such trees. 13. Looking at the numbers on the giant tree, Sorata's eyes flashed a trace of doubt, as if he had seen it before, and then looked around, when he saw the grass in the distance, and which house built on the high ground far away from the grass. As if thinking of something, the doubts in his eyes disappeared, and there was a hint of understanding on his face. So it's here. Everyone looked at Sorata. A series of question marks appeared in their minds. Sorata, do you know this place? Okay. At this moment, the door of the bar was pushed open forcefully. Then, as if he hadn't noticed anything, he continued to smoke gracefully. The one who was sitting at the bar and smoking a cigarette looked very young, but there were probably women over 60 years old. Well, the age of the woman is a mystery, and slowly stopped smoking. Creak. A handsome guy stood at the gate of the bar with his friends. Sorata nodded, then shook her head again. I'm not sure either, let's go. The whole person looks very fashionable. Go and have a look, and you'll know. It really is here. A few burly men who didn't look good at first glance were drinking. Looking at the layout of the room, one can tell at a glance that this is a bar. The woman has short black hair in a mushroom shape, her bangs cover her eyebrows, her sides are turned up, she wears a string of golden necklaces around her neck, she wears a red t-shirt with a spider pattern on her body, and she wears a shapewear vest. The handsome man raised his head, with pale blue pupils. He met the eyes of the woman whose age was unknown at the bar, and smiled faintly. She took a deep breath of the cigarette, with the cigarette in her right hand hanging gracefully on the right, her left hand hugged her chest, and the palm of her hand supported the arm of her right hand. An inexplicable smile. After finishing speaking, he walked towards the remote house not far away behind the tree. At this time, it was in the house built on the high ground. Everyone glanced at the numbers on the tree, looked away, and hurriedly followed.